When Leo sees the flash, he realizes that his life has changed forever. Now the sword belonged only to him, because today he became the messenger of the gods. It's always scary at first, but over time he'll get used to it. It only remains to be seen whether he considers himself worthy of this. By hesitating for another second, the guy risks turning the gods' mercy into wrath. The hour had come when his fate depended only on his choice. The voice that showed him the way to this place had been haunting Leo for a long time. This voice came from the holy sword that appeared in front of him. Power had to be earned honestly, otherwise there was no point in possessing it. Today he made the right choice, and tomorrow he will be able to see for himself. The next day, sword sparring took place on the training field. Of course, these were just wooden training swords, but even with such a weapon you could show what you were capable of in a real fight. The guy couldn't handle his opponent and was left without a weapon. For the umpteenth time, the sword fell onto the sand of the platform, leaving him with bare hands. Leo hated it when his opponents took the fight so lightly. In this Imperial Academy, no one dared to challenge Arthur. It's clear why he did this, because the leader would not cripple a weak student. But Leo was ready to do anything to prove the upstart wrong. He gripped the hilt of his sword tightly again for another lunge. If someone tried to humiliate him, he would soon regret it. However, in this pair, he was second, because Arthur parried every blow. It was unlikely that Leo enjoyed losing to this arrogant student every time, and yet luck was on Arthur's side again. Today Leo lost the fight and returned empty-handed. One can only sympathize with him. 3 years have passed since he was transferred to this academy. It seemed like he could never surpass Arthur, no matter how hard he trained. Arthur was different from his rival in every way. His look, manners, and personality itself seemed to belong to a hero from a fairy tale. Arthur should have moved up to the elite class a long time ago, but for some reason he got stuck here. At that moment, the guy extended his hand to him, as if there had been no fight. He smiled sweetly at the man he had just recently defeated on the training ground. If he weren't here, Leo could calmly collect his thoughts. But this scoundrel behaved as if he had long been accustomed to winning. Suddenly, a female voice was heard in the distance. Turning his head, Leo realized that he would have to justify himself. He knew that no one but this girl could get in here. Standing up abruptly, he demands that Arthur not come near him with his nonsense. Leo didn't want to talk to anyone anymore. But Kloe, who had already heard everything, asked him to repeat what he had said. In the heat of the fight with Arthur, he had already managed to say all sorts of nasty things to him. Arthur decided that he had managed to surprise this girl with his brilliant victory. But she was not interested in Arthur, but in Leo's injured finger. Leo jerks his hand away and asks to be left alone. Don't poke your nose into other people's business unless you're asked to. Leo didn't ask Kloe for help because he was sure he could handle it just fine on his own. With these words, he quickly left the training ground. However, his training was not yet over. After today's defeat, he had to get back to his old ways. When he failed to win, he returned to grueling training. If he gives up, he will forever be remembered as a loser. If he had Arthur's talent, he would definitely be able to prove himself. As luck would have it, the wooden training sword broke again. The training ended a few minutes after it began. Looking at this piece of debris, Leo realized that he had no useful skills. There were many obstacles in this world that could not be overcome by desire and effort alone. He completely forgot that his opponent was celebrating his birthday today. The boy threw away the broken sword, wanting to forget this nightmare at least for a while. Time after time, he suffered the humiliation of meeting a real opponent. He wasted 3 years of his life just to lose a training fight again. Another day wasted, damn it. At that moment, the guy couldn't take it anymore and tears started flowing from his eyes. All that was left next to him was that damn disc above his head. His patience ran out, and he began to blame God himself for his troubles. Was his efforts not enough for the gods to support him? Of course, no one answered him. But the next second, a bright light flashed in the sky. From the heavens, as if hearing his prayers, a huge fireball flew towards him. Meanwhile, in the house where the boy's birthday was being celebrated, everyone had already searched for him. Leo was neither in the dorm nor at the training ground where he often went. Arthur didn't care. He would have had a great time with Kloe if she hadn't suddenly turned away. Sir Gilbert noticed that the girl's behavior was refusing him. Arthur asked not to call him by his title, so that the guests would not hear. Gilbert was sure that a man of noble blood should excel in everything. Today, the heir to the Imperial family has come of age. The era of the current emperor was coming to an end, and a new era would soon begin. When everyone mourns the Holy Emperor, a new ruler will ascend the throne. Arthur always thought his family's expectations were too high, but he will only find out about this next year, when the main event in his life takes place. He knew that Kloe had long since reached the 4th level of magic and had a special gift. Leo also possessed superhuman strength, and such people would be useful to him in the future. These were wise words for the future ruler. Gilbert knew about the prophecy that was soon to come true. When the chosen one of heaven grows up, a sword will descend upon him that can destroy any evil. That night the old man turned out to be right, because Leo saw it with his own eyes for the first time. At first he refused to believe it, deciding that it was just an optical illusion. But didn't he hear a voice coming from far away? Wait, can swords talk? It was a special sword, imbued with holy power and many abilities. Leo himself summoned this sword when he cursed the heavens. Since he thinks the gods are unfair, he has a great chance to prove them wrong. In this life, some get everything, while others just watch other people's happiness. Leo was one of those people who had to achieve everything through hard work. Even this cannot disturb the world balance established over centuries. Those who do not make efforts have no right to blame everything on fate and the heavenly lords. Only those who have worked truly hard deserve this right. The gods always thought that the guy was too brazen in showing his displeasure to them. I wonder what he will say about this now. Will he be able to gather his strength and prove his worth to this bastard? It was clear from the guy's expression that you shouldn't speak to him in that tone, no matter who you were. He believes that he deserves better, and is ready to prove it with his perseverance and training. Then it was worth moving from words to deeds and taking this sword. The talking sword really wanted him to take it for himself. But is it possible to take this relic if you were unable to win even in a regular training match? Life was too unfair to the guy. Day after day, he honed his skills in complete solitude. Now he was not alone here. The sword seemed to be looking at him, and instead of eyes, it had a glowing crystal. Leo was never a coward. He spent his whole life trying to prove that he was capable of more, but reality is cruel. Leo had no intention of throwing away all his hard work. The time has come when you can actually show your determination by accepting this challenge of fate. Opportunities should be equal for everyone, especially for the most persistent. It's hard to argue with that. But the soulless piece of iron didn't care about human feelings. A bright white glow flashed behind him. The sword called him a warrior, as if he really were a real fighter. If everything that was said was true, it was worth getting closer to him. The sword continued to shine as if it didn't want to belong to anyone at all. Can't you turn off this light for just a second? The guy hears that he is the one who deserves to be called a real hero. If he doesn't do it now, there may not be another chance. This was his reward, which Leo had earned since childhood, and so it was time to take it. It has happened. Grabbing the handle of the magic blade, the boy himself changed his appearance. Now in his hands was the Holy Emperor's sword, which would guide the light into a new era. He must defeat evil with this sword, enlisting the support of the gods. Watching this from above, the gods understood that this could end badly. It was impossible to break the prophecy and give the holy sword to a simple warrior. This guy, despite his talent, did not meet their requirements at all. There was no need to worry. They will be able to watch it from the sky, so why not try it? The next day, the guy wakes up in his bed, trying to remember yesterday. Was it really just a dream? He rises and sees that same sword in the distance. Yes, that sword from his dream was now quite real. This means that the gods really did give him a sacred relic. But he shouldn't have thought that by using this sword, he would instantly become better than others. Now he must pass the tests prepared by the sword itself. Inside the blade was the very spirit that spoke to him. It was his voice that the boy heard that night when he first grabbed the handle. Now he has to sacrifice those who are dear to him. Leo chose this thorny path himself to become special, but this was his chance and it couldn't be missed. The spirit was still looking closely at his new student. Closing his eyes, he realizes that there is a lot of work ahead. It's great that the guy agreed. Right now, his first test was about to begin, and this spirit was determined. First, it was necessary to know his previous level in order to move on to the next one. Life has been turned upside down, but some familiar things remain. He was still forced to spend all his time on the training ground. Only now, instead of a coach, there was this blue flying ball next to him. In his hands, he held the very sword that had given him divine power. It's just a pity that he never used it. There was one way to quickly master this sword. To do this, you need to hide the sword, preferably in the body of the young man himself. The artifact could remain undetected even when the boy carried it with him. Yes, now it will be in his hand. At any moment, he will be able to take the sword out of his hand when he needs it. But what if he starts tossing and turning in his sleep with a sword in his hand? This question was completely out of place. The spirit did not like such jokes, and reminded that from this day on, the young man's rest would end. But Leo had to disappoint his new coach. It is unlikely that he will be able to become the same fighter as the ancient warriors. The spirit reminded him that he had to try his best because his dream was at stake. The result will depend not only on him, but also on the training regime. He had nothing to lose anyway, so it was worth a try. We decided to start with simple techniques. Looking ahead, Leo seemed to be looking at the world anew. The power that his sword gave him surpassed any other. Each blow was 10 times more powerful than the last. It's strange that the wooden sword could withstand such blows. So when can I start training with real weapons? He already felt that strength was overflowing from within him, and he didn't want to waste time. His physical abilities, growing with each passing minute, gave him confidence that now everything would be different. Stop, not so fast. Another second and he risked losing the gift from heaven. There was nothing funny about the fact that the sword could not withstand the pressure with which the young man set about the matter. And indeed, after the next blow, the wooden sword shattered into small pieces. Didn't he himself notice that inner strength while he held that wooden sword in his hands? The spirit couldn't even imagine that Leo's level was already equal to the bearer of the aura. If he continues to fight like this, he will never learn anything. He was still very immature, so the spirit volunteered to personally teach this young man. He had a good grasp of the basics of swordsmanship, and all that was left was to perfect them. Teach him to wield a sword without using his hands. The body is the foundation of martial arts. If you constantly train your body, you can achieve a completely different result. To begin with, you will have to run in the mornings until your endurance becomes perfect. This was the only way to guarantee the success of future training. The spirit saw how easily this young man copes with the task. He had been a great runner before, but he had never been able to stand on one hand. It was hard to understand why he learned so quickly, but it was a good sign. Looking down on him, the deity understood that everything was going according to plan. Soon this empty cup will be filled to the brim. It was necessary to impart to him all the basics of fencing and sword fighting techniques, so that he would become invincible. But we cannot allow his successor to become just a simple sword master. The Demon King was very strong. The decision had been made, so all that was left was to wait. Now Leo already regrets that he didn't get enough sleep last night. The mentor would have watched him with both eyes if he had two. Leo should not arouse suspicion among teachers and attract unnecessary attention to himself. This means you will have to go to classes with all your might and complete your homework on time. It is important that he does not miss a word of the training he receives at the academy. The spirit has a great idea of where to start learning. No, it's not about fencing or endurance. This is about the kind of attentiveness that any warrior must have. At the top of this pyramid is always mindfulness, with endurance and courage on the steps below. And you don't need to look like that. Of course, power is very important, and the spirit does not deny this at all. But the other three qualities, brought to perfection, can be even more important than strength. Being mindful in the future will give this guy an advantage that his rivals don't have. He had never heard of such training before, and considered it to be just boring. Now he was about to see how useless his own eyes had been. If he is ready to look at the world in a new way, he should start right now. This academy will remember for a long time the one who studied with them. Leo was always considered a simple student who hid behind the last desk. But now, together with the heavenly teacher, he will be able to reveal his talents. All you had to do was look ahead and focus on the teacher at the board. If he can register every movement ahead, his focus will be under control. In front of the board stood the teacher, who was the main object of his attention. It was necessary to remember the teacher's movements, keeping them in memory for at least 10 seconds. In his hands was a pointer, which the man waved in different directions. Now the guy had to close his eyes and remember everything he saw. Leo tries to concentrate. Now we need to say how many lines were written on the board. But the spirit himself asked to look not at the board, but at the teacher. Damn it, that spirit had tricked him again. Apart from the old man himself, nothing else came to mind. It was in vain that he looked at this teacher for 10 seconds and did not pay attention to the board. But the spirit saw everything perfectly. Leo looked only at what he considered important, losing sight of the main thing. Vision must be used differently to see the full scope of events. Few people know how to use the full review. Now he needs to concentrate on his entire field of vision, capturing the full picture. You need to relax your eyes. It sounds absurd, but training in the Holy Sword was truly different from any other. Now there was no turning back, so the guy decided to try again. However, at this moment a completely different object comes into his field of vision. It seems he started looking in the wrong direction again. It was already getting dark. After today's training, my eyes hurt as if they were ready to pop out of their sockets. My head was also splitting as if it was about to explode. The tired eyes were caused by dryness because Leo was straining them more than usual. By the way, headaches can be different and worse when the whole body consists of only the head. The spirit explains that today, his student has awakened in himself a previously inaccessible ability. Small consolation. It would have been better if he had explained how to use the divine power that he himself possessed. But very soon every student at the academy will learn about his new level. The next task was to count the candles in the wall candlestick. Before he could start counting, the spirit gave him a new task. Already at the house, the spirit again told him to count the windows with burning lights. At the beginning of training, it was difficult to remember so much information. Now I just wanted to relax. Yes, just to sleep. Leo ran into his wide, soft bed, hoping that the spirit would at least leave him alone for a little while. It was not bad for a first time, although it could have been better. It's okay to take a short break, right? Another month of such suffering and the guy himself will give up his sword. The spirit reminded that these efforts will bring many victories in the future. It was just the beginning, and this was far from the limit of the training difficulty. Repetition of training had its advantages, but the main problem was different. The only way to win was to make intensive training a part of your life. All this time, the spirit studied the weaknesses of his disciple. One of his main weaknesses was visible in his gaze. Bones and muscles develop differently in each person. The basis of learning is to use strengths and work on weaknesses. Leo's strengths were his constant training and excellent swordsmanship. But the main weakness was his form, which was stagnant and did not improve. His weakness was his lack of physical and mental flexibility. Fencing has always been considered the best way to wield a sword. This is what had to be done. But this was only a theory, and it was necessary to prepare for brutal practice. Yeah, that's interesting. The spirit didn't like it when someone looked away. We must face the truth and not forget our shameful defeats. Leo is a difficult guy, but without endurance, he will remain a nobody. The spirit will train him until he can defeat his opponent. These are the very words that should have been said first. Can he really defeat him? Well, that's what we were talking about. If he does everything he is told, everything will work out. He became too cheerful. Well, I would like to know about the next training sessions. No matter what the training is, any miscalculation on his part will be met with harsh punishment. There was no such agreement. I didn't want to bother him with trifles, but this would be a great incentive for the guy. Leo's psyche was fine, but in addition to that, he needed to train his will. I had to agree with this boring flying ball. Finally, he will be able to raise his power to unprecedented heights. How about trying it right now? He shouldn't have said that. Within 5 seconds, he collapsed onto his bed with his entire body. This was his first use of power, so he couldn't control it. But there was no need to worry, because with each new mistake, the strength would only grow. Well, it's time to move on to new training, and not waste time on useless rest. Moreover, morning has already arrived. While the others were going about their business, this guy was spending his time differently. Attention training was the most difficult for him, but he had to try. His physical progress was noticeable immediately, although he had already been able to perform various tricks. They approached the dormitory, where the next task has already been prepared for Leo. You need to immediately answer how many pigeons were sitting on the window. The guy turns out to be smarter, answering that there was not a single dove on the window, but only a crow. Finally, for the first time, he heard the spirit praise him for his attentiveness, because it was a trick question. Today, he is allowed to take a short break after long and grueling training. At this moment, the same academy student who was his main rival approaches him. It's unlikely that Leo wanted to see him here. The two haven't seen each other for a long time, and now it's clear why Leo dislikes him so much. The boys hadn't seen each other since Leo's last training fight with Arthur. This afternoon, we need to gather in the hall, and that is why Arthur was asked to go and get Leo. Arthur thought that Leo would probably be here. A month has passed since the last fight, and Leo still hasn't wanted to have a repeat fight. Looking at his face now, Leo felt like something had changed in his opponent. Much has changed in Arthur's life, too. Is he kidding? If he wants to fight right now, his sweet smile will quickly disappear from his face. At the same time, we can remind him of all the stupid things he did. But Leo had slightly different plans. Coming closer to him, Leo declares that he knows the main reason for their meeting, and it is time to end this conversation. It had been a long time since Arthur had said anything like this, but today he really wanted to talk about everything. This little rascal thinks too much of himself. Well, why not? He sits down next to him, pretending to be just tired. In fact, these two should have had a conversation about something a long time ago. It was rumored that Arthur was a difficult student, and that his lineage went back to the Emperor himself. But these were just stupid gossip. It doesn't seem like Arthur is trying to hide it, although Leo might be able to keep it a secret. Arthur spoke quite seriously, because he had had to hide his true identity for many years. That makes it even more interesting. Leo pretends not to care about Arthur's personal life and his secret family tree, although he understood that Arthur agreed to the duel only because his opponent was from a simple family. It makes sense when you want to hide your true origins. But now this time has passed, and it is worth stopping being afraid of yourself. Suddenly, here Leo finally loses his temper, declaring that he hasn't yet managed to take revenge on him. If Leo insists on a duel, Arthur is ready to fight him again, but only with wooden wedges. But Arthur saved the main thing he forgot to mention for last. He declares that if victory is his, Leo will be obliged to become his vassal. Right now he is challenging him as if he is confident of his victory. But where is the guarantee that Arthur will keep his promise? Every time Arthur spoke as if he was giving a compliment, although in fact he was only insulting his interlocutors. He declares that he will be on Leo's side, even though they have always been considered sworn rivals. Well, that's an unusual move. It turns out that if he loses, he will become his watchdog forever. Leo had a better idea, because he himself dreamed of becoming the master of the defeated Arthur. He was ready to let off steam right now if the fight started. Too early, too early. Arthur is ready to do anything, except pass on secret skills and ancestral fencing techniques. He suggests choosing the date of the battle himself and reporting it a little later. Arthur is confident that he will easily win the duel, and asks not to delay it. Even if Leo really trained a lot, his talent is still not enough to win. Finally, this moment has come. Now the young man is ready to take on the challenge again, but this time he will have divine power, although this did not add courage to Leo himself. This reaction might come as a surprise. He angrily accuses Leo of acting like a complete coward. Just now he was determined to win, and now he decided to give up. However, this was not at all the case, and it was worth listening to him to the end. Training a month ago seemed very difficult to him, but today he felt that he had become much stronger. It will be interesting to see what he comes up with this time. No one knows about it yet, but Leo's confidence has noticeably increased. Spiritual power is completely different from physical power, and the spirit could help to reveal it. By the way, just recently he wanted to pass an endurance test. The spirit decides to at least take a look at how it all ends. He is confident that this time he will have something to see. I hope he doesn't start panicking again. Great start to the day. It's time to head to the training ground. The instructor had already gathered all the students and ordered them to line up. Last year he placed 9th in the endurance competition. But thanks to his preparation, today he will be able to win the Champions Cup. Leo confides that Arthur was the best at it. It is immediately obvious that he trains a lot and can become a worthy opponent. The distance was short, as only 2 laps had to be run. The last record belonged to Arthur, who ran them in 1 minute and 20 seconds. He won't know his result today until he tries. He should trust the spirit that with its help, he will surpass himself. Soon all the participants line up at the start. Get ready. A second later, the boys rush forward. The rest of the weaklings can only watch this from afar. This guy is going to have to get used to Leo's new behavior. From the first seconds he breaks ahead, leaving everyone else behind. Never in his life had he outscored his opponents by such a margin. I wonder if Arthur can catch up with him. At this speed, there is no point in counting the seconds, because Leo has already won the competition. He runs 2 laps in 1 minute and 29 seconds. The instructor finds it hard to believe, but is forced to trust his own eyes. He decides to check if he really learned to use the aura. He grabs his hand tightly. This is how they test the use of magical aura. In just a month, Leo had changed so much that it felt like a whole year had passed. However, the guy only trained the basics, which is why his performance improved so quickly. He believes that it is the basic training that truly develops abilities. Although everyone understands that the reason is not only in intensive training. From afar, Arthur watches his young rival closely. There's something clearly wrong with this guy. Only this funny blue ball knows the main secret of his student. The question is, where does a real warrior get his physical strength? Of course, it's not just about muscles. Most physical training methods are aimed at increasing muscle mass. However, this is only half the way to maximum results. Physical strength does not depend on appearance due to differences in muscle nerves. In fact, muscle density is determined from birth. This is why the spirit trains Leo's muscular nerves. I wonder how developed his nervous system is. Suddenly he realized that the spirit had planned these punishments from the very beginning. Only by passing the tests could he obtain the desired effect. In a couple of months he achieved what he had been working towards for 10 years, and the pain from the torn nerves was not in vain. It would have been worth mentioning this a little earlier, instead of making a big secret out of it. But then the guy would have given up training. Attentiveness in training was the key to today's victory. If Leo had known about this at the very beginning, his attentiveness would have been worse, although some doubted it. Still, it was worth thanking the spirit for his cunning approach. He only did what he had to. He did what any wise coach in his position would have done. Only the spirit knew that this guy was never actually a holy sword. He was a part of the soul of the hero Rodrigo, and now appeared in the guise of a spirit to revive his work. Meanwhile, endurance training continues. No one doubted that Arthur would outpace his rivals. Today he broke his record from last year. In the eyes of both guys, there was only determination and the desire to be first. In the end, he was unable to beat Arthur, finishing second. He understands perfectly well that his time has not yet come. Arthur remained in first place, although Leo noticeably increased his speed. The power of the Holy Sword will still manifest itself, and then they will try again. Training is over for today. Sprawled out on the bed, he thought about tomorrow. They have almost perfected their technique. Therefore the spirit asked the disciple not to hurry. It would have been better if he had just taught Leo how to fence. No, it's too early to think about it. First, he needs to learn to use the aura to surpass himself. He behaves too predictably in fights, and his movements are easily read by his opponent. The spirit explains that one must first learn to use one's strengths. A sword forged through long efforts could help with this. He was very strong and contained divine power within himself, granting incredible strength. So far, Leo's physical skills have been growing gradually, but soon this process will accelerate. There is something else. The guy will need combat experience in case the enemies turn out to be stronger. The guy reminds that ordinary students study at the academy, and there are no bandits among them. But besides street thugs, there are other students who will do. Walking down the corridor, he suddenly hears a loud voice from afar. 3 guys are already waiting for him on the landing. A serious conversation is planned. Leo immediately notices the distinctive markings on the school uniform. These guys were elite class students, but where did he manage to cross their path? One of them accuses Leo of cheating, because he should not have taken second place. If they are unhappy with something, they need to go to the supervisor. There's no point in wasting his time on empty talk, especially with these 3. Many students agreed with Leo, but a couple more of these jokes could lead to a real fight. There was no point in arguing with them now. Getting involved with 3 elite students at once was too much of a risk. Another young nobleman appears next to them. It's become too noisy here. The guy slowly walks down the stairs to sort things out himself. All students in this academy have equal rights, and there is no need to break traditions. So Edward personally makes sure that commoners are allowed to stand out at least a little. Today was just such a case. He just wanted to make a dramatic entrance. Until today, Edward was in second place after Arthur. He must have been very angry to lose his place on the podium. He takes advantage of his status and confidently looks every student in the eye. Extending his hand in friendship, he apologizes for the behavior of his comrades. Edward suggests following his advice, and then there will be no problems. Leo suggests that we first voice at least one normal piece of advice, instead of this chatter. Yes, that was a cheeky answer. The nobleman proposes to hold a one-on-one competition under the supervision of an instructor. What other individual competitions are we talking about? The offer was quite tempting. This is clearly an unfair accusation against Leo. The fact that he does not use his aura speaks of his weakness against those who do. He understands that he cannot simply ignore an offer from such an elite student as Edward. Everyone will consider him a deceiver who ran away with his tail between his legs at the most difficult moment. Edward must be secretly hoping to somehow harm his rival. Perhaps Arthur was involved in this, and it was he who persuaded Edward to take such a step. Arthur could have helped and just gotten Leo out of this mess. He remains on the sidelines. This is no longer funny, because help from an opponent is no different from humiliation and shame. And yet he agrees. It's curious that he accepted the offer so quickly. The instructor will probably be surprised that this competition took place at all, and will want to see it in person. Leo demands that he swear that after victory, he will not doubt his abilities. This was the only and main condition of the competition. If the instructor himself agrees to be an observer, none of the students will be able to cheat. After thinking for a moment, Edward agrees. He wants to embarrass Leo right in front of all the students. After a short time, he returns to the room. The guy got off easy and the spirit considers it just luck. Leo asks about his chances against Edward. But it's not that simple. It would be better to actually show what Leo didn't know until that day. The offer is tempting, and the guy can't wait to find out what it is. This is perhaps the easiest way to get answers to your questions. Suddenly, a blue screen appears in front of your eyes, with which you can monitor your progress. Now he can see his level and the sword skills he already has. He sees that Edward's skills are much weaker than he thought. If he is the second son of a count, then it is not surprising, because they often use potions to increase strength. Since childhood, he developed his strength solely through persistent training. Even if Leo took a lot of the potion right now, he wouldn't be able to feel its full power immediately. A physical ability that can be developed without an aura, only available at level 99. But with its help, he will be able to reach this level much faster. The need for persistent training has not been cancelled. Only through his own efforts will he be able to overcome the obstacle that has hindered him all his life. Even without an aura, he will become strong if he truly wants to. This way he will be able to give a full response to these idiots. It turns out that he shouldn't worry about his physical abilities, but should focus on his studies. No, there was no talk about that. From now on, it's time to climb up, not slide down, as it always has been. He couldn't lose to upstarts like Edward. The day was just beginning, and the most important things were yet to come. Leo walked slowly down the academy corridor, and by chance I bumped into my instructor. The instructor already knew about the upcoming competition, and was preparing to judge fairly. This guy has changed a lot in a month, as if he had been hiding his true skills all this time. The instructor warns that any reckless action will permanently exclude Leo from the list of participants. Leo couldn't understand why he was suspected of fraud. In response, the instructor simply waves his hand and advises him to think with his head before doing anything. Then he suddenly announces that he expects Leo to defeat this bunch of pathetic bastards. These words inspire Leo even more and give him confidence. Following his instructor, he soon finds himself on the playground. Today, there are many spectators gathered here, eager to see a spectacular fight. His future opponent was already there. Henry couldn't stand upstarts who thought too much of themselves. He claims that he sees in front of him only a small bug, which he will crush in a second. In response to this, Leo asks to start the competition as soon as possible. There was no point in waiting, so the instructor asked the participants to prepare for battle. In his presence, they will have to fight for their honor and the honor of their families. This commoner is counting on victory, but he will soon have to pay for his insolence. Too bold a statement for such a weakling. Suddenly, the instructor asks what Leo wants to achieve in this match. Realizing that this was a simple test, he gives the signal to begin. Now both participants had to demonstrate their fighting technique with wooden swords. Only the instructor could determine the winner, although the support of the spectators was also very important. Before the match begins, Spirit offers to look at Henry's abilities. But Leo no longer cared how strong he was, because he saw in front of him only Edward's pawn. Without wasting a second, Leo rushes forward. Henry asked for trouble. As long as he is so confident in himself, it will be all the more interesting to see what happens to him in a minute. It uses a diagonal cut aimed at the lower left side. Thanks to training, he could control every move of his opponent. The sword was almost on his head. A second later, he touched the tips of his hair. But that was not the end. The boy quickly found himself behind Henry. Even the instructor didn't expect to see such a quick reaction. The students knew that Leo had excellent training, but now he was acting like a real pro. This is exactly what was being discussed at the very beginning, when Henry was pretending to be a brave man. This guy only showed half of his abilities, but this was enough for him to collapse with his entire body onto the stone platform of the hall. Hey, is that all he can do? Struggling to his feet, Henry declares that his opponent was simply lucky. He demands to take a stance and continue sparring. However, the instructor reminds that according to the rules of the fight, victory is awarded to Leo. This may come as a surprise to many, but the competition had just begun because Henry had not yet demonstrated his basic technique. He decides to become much more serious and not let such offensive attacks pass by anymore. Although the spirit knows how to answer this arrogant disciple. He advises Leo not to end the fight with one blow. Today's battle was Leo's first ever battle against a person with an aura. If he wants to know the enemy's strength level, he only needs to give a sign to the spirit. Without wasting any time, Henry attacks first again, deciding to try his luck once more. His speed was unexpected. Leo notices that Henry's movements have become different. Previously, his arms, legs, and pupils moved slowly, but now they sped up. And he is smart. Now that Leo has noticed these changes, he needs to figure out how to respond to them. Delay could cost the guy too much if he continues to just watch. You need to not only observe, but also dodge and attack back. In this attack, Henry uses aura, although his movements are still predictable. He demands that these childish games be stopped, and that people stop avoiding his attacks. Now it's not worth just trying to attack him, because Leo doesn't have enough experience for that yet. Even if he enhanced his physical abilities with aura, he still has limitations. These limitations can be identified by some details. Opened. After taking a hard hit, Henry realizes he made a mistake again. But this mistake could easily cost him victory in the competition. He grabs the place where the strongest blow fell. Although the guy still believes that one such blow will not be enough for the opponent to win, he shouldn't have spoken about it so confidently. This bold statement was immediately followed by a series of powerful blows to the body. A final blow to the head cut short his angry tirade. Raising his hands, Henry begs for mercy and decides to surrender. There is no longer any reason to continue this circus, and the instructor loudly announces the winner of the match. Luckily for many students, it is Leo who emerges victorious. The same cannot be said about Edward, whose face showed nothing but hatred. The main topic of conversation this evening was the guy's victory. The students couldn't even imagine that Leo would be able to perform so well after so many defeats. That victory was only the first, and then he managed to defeat several more students. Only Edward remained in the way, since his main pawn had already been knocked off the board. He remained in this mood for a long time, hoping that the victories would continue. Even with the aura, these students seemed too boring to him. Finally, Edward himself will show what he is capable of and fight him. Before the match begins, the spirit warns that one must be vigilant and not lose control of oneself. This was very important now, and it was not worth acting too self-confident in front of the public. The spirit was entirely right, although the mood was determined. The instructor explains that victory is only awarded in a fair fight, and that cheating will not work. Edward's aura was the most suspicious of all, and it was difficult to understand how it manifested itself. He admits that he did not expect to see such a weak fighter in the final. Which of them is weak still needs to be tested. Leo states that he sees only one weak opponent in front of him. It would be better if he didn't say such impudent words. Kloe realizes that with this phrase he made his opponent even more angry. Now his physical abilities were higher, but Edward's aura was quite strong. If he wraps his sword in aura properly, it will be dangerous to block his attacks. This is why he decides to avoid direct attacks. Let's start. The very first attack almost cost the guy too much. Edward managed to wound his opponent, but for him it was only a scratch. And yet the fight began so aggressively, as if everything was at stake. It was not an easy attack. It could only be done with the help of aura. The basic attack was too fast, which meant Edward was a direct descendant of nobility. If this is the case, then another technique should be used. Suddenly he reports that Leo's previous opponents were too weak. Losing to such a commoner would be worse than any disgrace, and Edward simply could not allow it. He declares that he will forgive Leo for his words once he gives him a good beating today. Edward didn't have time to finish his threats before his opponent's wooden sword was very close. Not wanting to listen to this nonsense, the guy rushes into the attack. Dust whirlwinds immediately gather around them, and it begins to resemble the real finale. Leo manages to leave a scar in the same place on his cheek, tying the score in the match. He's just mocking Edward and fueling his rage even more. But if he decided that Leo had shown all his skills, he was very much mistaken. By the way, what other shameful skills were we talking about? With his last words, he managed to hurt the pride of even the heavenly spirit. That dog just yelped that his technique was disgraceful, and he would soon regret it. This approach was very useful, and now the help of the spirit would not hurt. They say that even rivers and mountains change in 10 years. But 300 years later, some brats dare to insult him so easily. Leo notices how sinister the aura of this celestial spirit actually was. He demands that Leo take an even closer look at this young brat across from him. Before the match is over, the teeth on his face should fly out one by one. If he understood everything correctly, he should simply fulfill this small request of the spirit. 1 or 2 teeth will not be enough. You need to knock out as many of these extra growths in his mouth as possible. Then it will be much more difficult for Henry to speak of the shameful skills that the spirit taught his student. Leo didn't mind. A second later, he was again next to his opponent, but his strength for the fight had noticeably increased. Damn it, he was really hitting him hard from all sides. Students noticed that such blows are capable of moving even the strongest fighter. Leo used his main skill, although Edward's balance was still not broken. At this rate, he risks knocking him down prematurely. But how is this possible without the help of aura? If this is really the case, then this stubborn fellow will be able to defeat the nobleman. This is just the beginning. He became stronger with each fight because he carefully observed and memorized the movements of his opponents. The spirit gave him a skill that helped him predict the enemy's movements in advance. If he could strengthen this skill, he would easily defeat Arthur himself. We need to move even faster. Full view and breadth of perception guarantee victory, and any blow will become predictable for him. At some point, he catches Edward in a mistake, just like he did in the duel with Henry. This had the desired effect, as with one blow he managed to throw the guy aside. It worked. This guy turned out to be much stronger, and all this time he was lying that he couldn't use aura. Until now, the instructor had not felt Leo's aura, and did not believe that he was capable of fighting on equal terms with Edward. They had to make some changes to their training. But these changes are unlikely to please the scoundrel who stood opposite Edward. The secret skill that Leo had suspected at the beginning was about to burst out from his opponent's body. He couldn't attack back without knowing what exactly Edward wanted to surprise him with. The guy decided to simply follow his movements, using his ability of heightened attention. But it was too late to think, because the opponent was heading in his direction. Leo realized that he would have to try hard. At the last second, he managed to tilt his body to the side, letting the attack pass him by. It felt like time slowed down and every blow was visible a second before the attack began. But the first attack was just a trap and the guy stupidly fell for it. Even when Leo dodges, his opponent manages to send another blow at him. If he dodges again, he risks getting hit in the side and ending the match with broken ribs. You can try to track his sword using a new observation method, but there was simply no time for long observations. Losing was not an option, and Leo had to do everything he could to prevent that. In order to finish the duel, he had to remember everything that the Heavenly Spirit had warned him about. Within a second, he was high in the air, leaving his opponent beneath him. Looking up, Edward realized that swinging his sword in the air was useless. He was damn right, because the next blow came down on him from above. It was very painful. A little more, and he would have definitely broken his left shoulder, and maybe he already has. His left arm was broken, and the boy felt his strength slowly leaving him. The injury to his arm was nothing compared to the shock Edward experienced. If both his arms were intact, he would have definitely hit the forehead. His sword's durability had already reached its limit, which meant all that was left was to break that damn sword. From the very beginning, Leo had been a huge irritant to Edward, and now it was time to pay him back. The very next second his scream suddenly stopped. You shouldn't underestimate your opponent, who is capable of a lot even without an aura. He himself asked for such a tough fight, and he had only himself to blame for it. Leo's blow was so powerful that it instantly put an end to the fight. None of the spectators doubted who the instructor would award the victory in the match. Leo was the winner, and only he was worthy of the applause from the stands. Soon the stadium was empty and the voices in the stands died down. Excellent work for a disciple of the Heavenly Spirit, especially since the spirit had long looked askance at this upstart. I wonder if his character will change after this fight, or will he remain as arrogant? Today's fight managed to impress even the spirit. It's time to move on and learn the acceleration method in the next workout. What is he talking about? After all, he had already accelerated so much that he was able to quickly knock out several of Edward's teeth. Holding his shoulder, the boy understood that this was a small price to pay for his success. The acceleration method that the spirit spoke of could help avoid this in the future. This skill not only increased physical strength, but also provided certain knowledge. When people find themselves in emergency situations, they use reflex movements. Professional fencers know how to move faster than others. Leo always thought they were just using aura, didn't he? He was partly right, but if a guy only trains aura, his body won't be able to withstand strong blows. After studying the aura, he will be able to use the acceleration method. Then Leo will be able to repeat this spectacular jump without limitation. Today's jump was successful only because he overcame his instinctive limits. Without aura, with just physical training, he would have achieved this only after 10 years. The spirit warned that aura should be used for the entire body, and not just for the legs at the moment of jumping. He hoped that from this day on, the boy would start to take training more seriously. The training started earlier than he thought. The guy immediately felt a sharp pain that paralyzed his legs. It was the same muscle pain that the spirit had spoken of. Before using the acceleration method, he needs to know himself better. Only by going through pain will he gain the advantage he has always dreamed of. Soon they found themselves in the hostel. Rumors about Leo's recent victory were already circulating everywhere. Many girls wanted to get to know the new champion better. It was worth keeping away from the local guys. Not only did he defeat a highborn student, but he also caught him using potions. It was only thanks to potions that these losers managed to defeat their opponents. Leo also had his own little secret that followed him everywhere. Leo wondered if Kloe would change her attitude towards him. Today she approached Leo herself, and it seemed that the girl had something to tell him. She no longer hid her intentions. She had wanted to talk to him for a long time, and today was a great day for it. The guy decided to speak first and asked why she was skipping classes. Kloe didn't even think about skipping class. It was just that the alchemy teacher fell ill. It's clear that she's not telling us something. Leo has changed a lot lately and seems to be avoiding Kloe. He challenged all the elite students, something he had never done before. What is she getting at? He really took up a dangerous challenge. It's just a pity that she hadn't noticed his courage before. They talked so easily and naturally, as if they had known each other all their lives. But the guy understood that her desire to talk appeared only after his victory. It was about her attitude towards Leo. She considered him the weakest. But now he has gotten rid of his feelings of inferiority, and will no longer allow anyone to consider him a weakling. His will became as strong as the grip on his sword. Everything changed after meeting the spirit, who appeared to him in the form of a magic blade. He was afraid to make a choice, but that night Leo made the right decision. Meanwhile, Kloe noticed that the whole school was talking about nothing but him. Rumor has it that Leo found a sacred sword, and that's why he became so strong. Hearing this, the guy suddenly began to cry like a child. The girl was touched by this, although she was also very surprised. Kloe was simply repeating rumors that could very well be nonsense. But now it didn't matter anymore. What does he imply? The holy sword did change his life, but he achieved much of it through his own hard work. All this time, the gods continued to watch over this glorious youth. Up until this point, everything had been calm. But suddenly the atmosphere changed dramatically. Even the spirit could see that Leo's power level had increased dramatically. While they were sitting on the bench, the guy's level actually increased. Maybe he is the very hero who is destined to save the world? First, he needs to save himself. As the owner of the Holy Sword, he must overcome his shortcomings and do what others have failed to do. One day he will definitely become a hero. It was a little strange watching him from the sidelines, but now is not the time to think about it. It was worth thinking about those real trainings that the spirit saved for last. Just looking at him made me shudder, because the training had been too tough before. A lot has changed in recent times, but some things will never change. As usual, Leo stayed up late, staring at the ceiling. If everything the spirit said was true, his life would have turned into something different. Kloe already noticed then that the guy's look had become completely different. She suggested that he cast aside his doubts, and calmly look forward to where fate was calling him. Although Leo didn't understand anything at that moment, he just looked at this girl who was acting unusually. Kloe suggested that he talk to Arthur personally and improve their relationship. She talks about it too easily. Arthur himself is unlikely to make friends with someone who is not recognized by the elite students. All that remained was to hope that the spirit would help him with this too. The next match will certainly be different from the previous ones. Arthur was thinking the same thing now. Looking at the sky, he understood that these changes would affect the lives of not only Leo, but everyone else. The next day, the guy's training continued. He hit the practice log even harder, and he stopped only because he broke his wooden sword. Regardless of skill level, the sword also plays an important role in battles. Leo himself only wanted the upcoming fight to go exactly as he had planned. The fight with Arthur was the most important in his life. After that offensive defeat, the guy still couldn't forgive the scoundrel for that illegal move. He still wanted to see remorse on that bastard's face, but what he saw the next second quickly brought him down to earth. Leo didn't understand why the instructor kept quiet about the fact that Arthur already knew how to use the energy of the sword. Arthur's strength and speed only indicated that he was much stronger than any of the Academy's students. Not a bad start. If he continues training with the same zeal, he will achieve everything. And for this, the spirit could give him a couple of excellent tips that would bring success even faster. We can begin. First, it would be a good idea to replace this useless piece of wood that was once a sword. If something goes wrong and he loses, then his new teacher will have the last word. But the spirit was in no hurry to answer, suggesting that they first have a duel. And please, don't try to persuade him too much. He warned that Leo would face severe trials ahead, where the boy would be able to temper his spirit. However, with each step, it becomes more and more difficult, and it is not known whether he is ready for this. He will find out the answer to this question after he hears the spirit's hints right during the fight. Using the skill of heightened attention, he will be able to recognize them, even in the heat of battle. But first you need to get up and continue. Bad weather won't get in the way. It's time to get used to the fact that sometimes it's not just people who are fighting against you, but life itself. At this time, Arthur preferred to stay in the warmth of his mansion. Together with the butler, he discussed this newcomer who had surprised everyone. It's strange that he was able to defeat even Edward without having magical abilities. Sir Gilbert admits that he has never seen anything like it. Only 3 years had passed since he entered the academy, but such breakthroughs had never happened before. He defeated the Count's second son using only his body, which had no aura whatsoever. Today Arthur received a message from Leo in which he wrote that he was ready. All ready? Yes, but there was one small problem that should have been discussed beforehand. Arthur was determined to discourage this upstart from taking first place from him. He was already sick of constant meetings with Kloe, who was not indifferent to him. Only he deserved the best and was determined to prove it. In such weather, Leo decided to go back. He walked slowly down the corridor, not wanting to meet anyone. It seemed like he was the only one the academy was talking about, and he became the new star. At this time, he came across an instructor. He said that Arthur wanted to fight alone so he could focus on the battle. It looks like he just doesn't want to embarrass himself in public. Only one spectator will watch the fight, and that will be the instructor himself. He then admitted that another spectator had asked to be present. The first one that came to mind was Kloe, who was probably able to get herself a ticket. Kloe was the last person he wanted to see at a moment like this. Arthur believes that there was a special connection between them that could be severed by his victory. By defeating Leo, he will be able to show the girl who she really needs to spend time with. Yes, he just wants to use this match for revenge. Like kings resolve conflicts with their subjects. If Leo loses this match, he must become Arthur's loyal vassal. Judging by the guy's appearance, he would never agree to such a condition. A one-on-one battle with Arthur will change a lot. He had looked at him askance before, but now he challenged him to an open fight. So much the better. The reason Kloe became an observer was quite clear. It was definitely a well-thought-out plan, the outcome of which Arthur knew in advance. But right now, he could ruin that plan by showing everything he had learned. This bastard doesn't feel sorry for Kloe or him, which means he doesn't deserve any pity. He is used to subjugating people and playing with them as he pleases. It's time to put an end to all his plans and prove that he is actually just a weakling. The spirit understands that Leo is becoming stronger every day. Although anger in such situations usually only gets in the way, now he was completely confident in himself and wanted to start the fight as soon as possible. This opportunity presented itself to him much sooner than he expected. Instead of greeting him, Arthur reproached him for being late again. Although Arthur himself arrived too early, Leo arrived just in time. By the way, where is that mysterious observer that the instructor was talking about? With a smile, Arthur declares that he cannot be seen from here. But Leo's defeat will definitely be noticed by all the students of the academy. Too self-confident. Instead of chatting, it's better to get straight to the point. Suddenly, a bottle with a magic pill appears in Arthur's hands. He swallows it with a sharp movement, but why? Hey, what the hell? Arthur explains that the pill suppresses the aura and he wants to fight without its help. It was a real challenge on his part. Well, if there are no more obstacles, we can begin the duel. Arthur gripped the hilt of his blade tightly and was ready to act first. He did not feel any hostility on his part. Leo must be on guard to avoid a sneaky attack. Since everyone is ready, we can begin. The boys' blades instantly crossed in the air. The very first blow could have been the last in this fight if Leo had not dodged it in time. It seemed his opponent was determined. Since he refused the aura, it means he was confident in himself. The fight started as expected, but its outcome depends only on these two. With each passing second, Arthur's blow became stronger. Damn, he really is very strong. It's scary to imagine what would have happened if he had used his aura. We need to defend ourselves. His sword was incredibly strong, as if it were made of the rarest steel in the world. Everything was exactly as Edward had warned. He said back then that the fight with Arthur would not be an easy walk, and now this has been confirmed. Even with his new techniques, Leo couldn't predict his opponent's position. He moved too fast and didn't give me a second to think. This was not their first meeting in a duel, but it was very different from the previous ones. Even the butler did not recognize his young master. The instructor still didn't understand why Arthur decided not to use the aura, although some magic was still used. Did Leo really learn to unlock his magical abilities on his own? Well, that's even funny. If these two continue at this pace, the training could turn into a war between the two leaders. Leo knew this guy was a genius, but now they were fighting on equal terms. Another great lunge, and then immediately a double blow. Leo had a hard time reading Arthur's movements as the sword almost touched his face. The aura didn't give Arthur any advantages, but he fought as if he was imbued with it. But he still managed to touch his opponent's armor with the tip of his wooden sword. After such a blow, anyone in Leo's place would have fallen unconscious long ago. But the guy opposite stood as if he didn't care. Arthur understood that his strength was gradually leaving him. Without an aura, physical strength was used up too quickly by such techniques. For some reason, he only saw the first blow, while all the others passed by. At first, Arthur planned to wear him down with a physical attack, but now his plans have changed dramatically. Yes, it was a battle of attrition, but it was precisely for such fights that Leo's mentor prepared him. I wonder what they will do next. Although both guys had almost no strength left, Leo managed to maintain his stamina and gradually reduced his opponent's advantage to nothing. This strategy could neither be changed nor supplemented. His confidence in victory only grew with each time, in contrast to Arthur's mood. He had to break his will somehow, otherwise Arthur would never give in. The situation was getting tense. At such moments, the best help is the guidance of the teacher who prepared him for the most difficult. The guy focused on the muscles and blood flow in the opponent's body. It was possible to increase his strength through his body's power, since Arthur still didn't use his aura. Now, only half of this guy's strength was fighting against Leo. It's worth trying to show your best. But after the very first attack, he realized that he had miscalculated a little. Arthur developed his attack faster than him and achieved good results. Turning around, Leo realized that he had made the right choice. The opponent's blood spoke louder than any words. Leo himself only held onto the bleeding wound at some distance from him. At that moment, he heard the voice of the spirit. "Damn, you scared me." The spirit reminds him that the human body can be much faster and stronger than he thinks. There are different types of training that affect not only speed, but also strength. The ability to react instantly would be very useful now, because Arthur was already prepared for an attack. It's good that he put his sword out in time. It seems that this is the limit of Leo's capabilities. since even the spirit can no longer advise him anything. The spirit could not determine the limits of Arthur's capabilities and warn the student about it. Meanwhile, the blood continued to spurt in all directions. It was the blood of his new ward. Arthur no longer intended to spare the enemy and hide his abilities. There were a few steps left to the edge of the platform, and it would have been possible to push Arthur back a little. For a while, Leo silently watched his opponent, calculating his next move. His mood changed dramatically, and Sir Gilbert noticed it at once. Victory may still be his if he tones down his ardor a little. Using his physical superiority, he can only wait for Arthur to run out of steam. We need to wear him out. Although Arthur had already begun to guess about the tactics of this newcomer, he was ready to repel any blow so that by the end of the duel their strength would be equal. You just need to believe in your own strength. For the first time in a long time, he looked at Arthur differently. His opponent found this reaction amusing. Arthur swore to himself that he would never become anyone's servant, even if he had to give his life for it. He must have surpassed himself long ago and risen to a new level. It was much more convenient to watch this from above. It is especially pleasant to see the defeat of an upstart who imagined himself a god. Today, the spirit, with the help of his student, intended to prove to him that he was still an ordinary student. From birth, Arthur was considered the main successor, and later, a true genius of his family. Leo, however, swung his sword every day to reach his level. This was the main difference between them. One got everything easily, while the other achieved his goals through blood and sweat. It's time to find out which training method will lead to victory. Attack! What the hell is this? Wait, he cut his steel sword in half? Arthur's blade was cut through as if the guy had cut a piece of paper with scissors. And now, instead of a training sword, he held a useless fragment in his hands. Looks like this guy's training was worth it. What he learned today came back to him with renewed vigor. The fight with Edward also did him good. This time he put all the power of his body into the blow, increasing its strength slightly. And now this power is enough to quickly solve the problem. He had already solved one of them by breaking the scoundrel's sword. Leo admitted that it was only thanks to Arthur that he was able to gain this power. If this had been a real fight and not a training session, everything would have ended completely differently. If it weren't for the instructor and Sir Gilbert, there would be blood everywhere. By the way, I owe Arthur. At this moment, Gilbert appears behind him and also applauds the young fighter. The spirit did not expect such success, although he did a lot for it. It remains to be seen how Arthur will pay for the lost bet. He promised that after winning, Leo would get everything he wanted. Victory was in his hands, and now it was Arthur's turn. Arthur admitted that he had taken the challenge too confidently, and that this defeat was inevitable. A promise is a promise. Since he gave his word, he was ready to listen to Leo's demands. The guy suddenly decided to put this question off until later. He didn't want to think about it now, because all his thoughts were occupied only with their next battle. Yes, this little guy turned out to be irrepressible. Instead of demands, he wanted to fight the best student again, and finally earn his respect. Leo will remember today for a long time, at least until my arm stops hurting. Healing light could easily help with this. It was clear that Kloe was waiting for him to leave the training grounds. The wound healed so quickly, as if Kloe had healing magic above the 4th level. Something wrong? The girl angrily stated that she still could not understand the guy's actions. How could they fight each other if they had trained together since childhood? Lately, Leo has become so strong that even she doesn't recognize him. After a short pause, the girl asked if he ever wanted to leave the academy. He hadn't thought about it, but it was strange that she guessed. Kloe reminded that she has never been stupid and sees the intentions of others in advance. He had heard this somewhere before. She has always been like this since childhood and pretended to be smarter than everyone else. Leo himself also liked to seem stronger than others when he challenged serious opponents. Now it took him much longer to learn how to defeat the strong. Leo admitted that Arthur did not use aura in the fight, and the battle could have ended completely differently. And yet Leo was not bad. Nobody argued with that. They laughed merrily, like in the good old days, when there was no feud between Leo and Arthur. I would like to go back to that time, but now it was time to think about something important. Arthur might need healing magic, which the girl was best at. She needs to go back and bring Arthur to his senses, because he himself will never ask for help. This defeat will not stop him, and soon he will become even stronger. Looking after him, the girl realized that she was hearing the words of a completely different person. Finally, she loudly asked him what he was going to do after the academy. He replied that it was his little secret, which was better not to think about for now. And yet he grew up. It's scary to imagine what will happen when it reaches the absolute level. It turns out that the girl believed in him for many years for good reason. She was truly amazing, but was it only her character that attracted Leo? You couldn't just walk away when the conversation just started. The spirit whispered too persistently in his ear, constantly hinting at Leo's relationship with Kloe. Has the spirit forgotten what is actually occupying all the guy's thoughts right now? He always felt like he couldn't overcome the wall of status and talent that separated him from everyone else. The encounter with the magic sword made him believe in himself. Already after the first days of training, the guy began to feel changes. Victories followed one after another, and yet the instructor had never declared him a winner before. In the end, even Arthur lost to him in battle, and that said a lot. Finally, Something was found that brought Leo out of the shadows and revealed his true talent. Now he had to maintain the success he had achieved with such difficulty. Is he trying to become a hero? Leo hoped he hadn't disappointed the spirit. Wanting everything at once, hoping to become the main character is not bad at all. People often wished for something like this, and Leo was no exception. If you move towards your goal persistently and without giving up halfway, then at the end of this path, a reward awaits you. The spirit chose Leo as his disciple, although another person should have taken his place. Leo learns from the spirit a truth that would be better left unheard. His sword was intended for a scion of the Imperial family. The baby was destined to learn the art of combat under the guidance of the heavenly spirit. Arthur was the perfect fit for the role, but it went to someone else. It remained to be seen why the lot fell on Leo. The guy understood that Arthur would be the ideal hero, and would cope with this role better than him. Wait, this all sounds too much like some kind of test, right? Yes, he tried very hard and was able to see through this clever trick. Only by willpower and determination will he be able to discover the path destined for him. The power of his spirit was even stronger than Arthur's. Otherwise, it is impossible to explain why the spirit chose him as a disciple. Now they were on equal terms, and there was no point in feeling guilty for the arrogant guy. The spirit was slightly surprised by this reaction. The guy then admits that it is Arthur who should feel guilty for his recent defeat. Since the heavenly spirit chose Leo, it meant that the other Celestials also noticed his superiority. Well, you can't hide anything from this boy. Arthur decided to apply for expulsion from the academy and did so the next day. The instructor sees for the last time the academy's best student, who could have made its name famous. The match between Leo and Edward created a lot of noise and many students began to copy his technique. Looking at her from afar for the last time, he understands that everything was not in vain, and now forward to a new life in a free city. With such a cry, he could scare away all the local inhabitants. His rapid movement attracted attention and was noticeable even from above. Now he could soar freely like a bird, but first he had to get out of the forest thicket. Leo still had a lot to go through, but one small victory was already within his grasp. Hey, where's the exit? Luckily, he managed not to get lost in the forest, and a bright light appeared ahead. Need to catch my breath a little. All his life he dreamed of getting away from these parts as soon as possible. And finally, his dream came true. The place where he started his journey always seemed so far away to him. Thanks to the spirit and his endurance training, he still didn't become food for the local birds. This heavenly creature recognized his talent in time. It was a little scary to make my way through the thicket of this forest. Along the way, goblins constantly attacked him from the bushes. If it weren't for his preparation during training, everything could have ended differently. Without the holy sword that appeared right from his hand, it would have been much more difficult. With this sword, he cut the bodies of the ugly goblins in half. All the days in this forest, he seemed to be undergoing training in real fights all over again. But it took much longer than he expected. Those goblins who were lucky enough to survive will never forget meeting this guy. He managed to develop such speed that he moved in a matter of seconds. He became stronger than he was before he came to this forest. Although there was only one thing on his mind. I can't wait to fight the monsters and kill a few more bastards. However, it was necessary to be patient a little longer before starting a new fight. He was still too inexperienced to face a crowd of mutants. At some point his strength will leave him and then all his training will be in vain. This was worth taking into account before starting a new battle. It should not be forgotten that his path had only just begun, and everything important was still ahead. He will still need strength in his new place. Meanwhile, he had already approached the gate, where 2 guards examined him carefully. There were no problems and he moved forward. He managed to pass through the gates safely, and his academic card came in handy. The mood, however, was different. This city was the most terrible of all he had ever been to. 300 years ago there were dozens of such towns, and this one was no different from other lousy towns. The streets were filled with rabble and piles of garbage, which was not to one's liking. He didn't understand anything. This was not the main thing at all, but there was simply no strength for explanations. The most important thing now was to get to the guild and register with the adventurer organization. The local mercenaries were good, but they lacked something. Their range of action was too narrow and not suitable for serious tasks. Leo had no intention of wasting his time on high-paying assignments. Moreover, there was still a lot of time before the release of the Spirit Seal. In the forest, fighting monsters, this guy learned a lot from practice. Since he got here a year earlier than he planned, the training should end faster. Most of his holy sword power was sealed and would take time to be released. The original purpose was to prepare the owner's body for immortality. The aura was just a bonus to enhance his skills. But Leo had to do the main work himself. Only he himself could learn what was not given from above. He soon reached the adventurer's building and filed an application at the reception desk. There were no problems and the guy immediately received confirmation of acceptance into the guild. There was just one caveat: his rank was too low, as newbies weren't trusted with high-level missions. It will take time to reach a high rank, and then he will be valued even more. Aura control was supposed to be completely different, but Leo wasn't ready for that yet. Soon, when he reaches the required level, he will be able to cut stones with his sword. I wish it would happen sooner. Turning around abruptly, he realized that they were not alone here. There were representatives of many races in the association, which meant that the crowd here was truly diverse. It would be better not to joke with them. The association included everyone from werewolves to elves, and it was rare to meet a human here. Those who were at odds with each other 300 years ago decided to unite. What could this be for? The creator of the organization was quite smart if he was able to find a common goal for former enemies. Any problems? No, everything is fine, and the guy just wanted to complete the registration process. To do this, he needs to complete one quest for free to show his level and mastery of the aura. That's right, the task will not be paid. In return, he will receive a guild certificate, which opens many doors in life. He needs to prove that he is capable of being an adventurer and is well prepared. Not everything comes easy in this life, and you need to get used to doing what you don't want to do. In such weather, my mood immediately improved. It was a great day to get down and get some exercise. A couple of monsters could be found right here. Leo quickly reached the mutant's lair, where he was to continue his training. There are definitely enough mutants to try out their new sword. After the training matches, he fought with swords for the first time. The spirit warns that it is too early to relax. The monsters here would be enough to defeat not only Leo, but all the students of the academy. What did he think? Will the hard days end after killing a few mutants? No way. First, you need to destroy every freak, and only then the spirit will allow him to rest a little. The biggest test was right in front of him. The main mutant was very different from the others because of his huge horn. He must have evolved and gained new abilities. Every monster at some point evolves and gains abilities by absorbing its own kind. The same can be said about man, only in a different sense. These horns prove that their owner had incredible strength depending on the size of the horn. Looking into the distance, Leo tries to understand what kind of ability the mutant has. It would be nice to fight him one-on-one. This is too important for the guy now, which means he needs to pull himself together. This monster is low rank, so he can easily deal with it like a doll. The Holy Sword is the divine weapon that can help him. The monster's main ability was the Plague Curse, which he instantly cast on Leo. The blow was easily blocked by the Sacred Blade. He didn't even make any effort to block the blow. Now it's time for the guy himself to rush in and finish this. He soon returns to the association building. He put the heavy bag on the table, greatly surprising the administrator. Adriana couldn't believe that the guy was able to drag so many mutant horns with him on his own. The bag contained 23 kilograms at once, and this was a new record. Even if we do a simple calculation, we are talking about 230 rats, and this is just the beginning. The horns were the main value, and served as proof of the strength of this newcomer. If he could do it alone, what will happen when he has a whole team under his command? It was impressive, and Adriana didn't try to argue. In the end, 13 silver and 50 copper coins went to the new hunter. It turned out to be even more than he expected, because the demand for the horns of mutated rats was very high. Leo was the first one who could fulfill his mission so well, and it gave hope for a great future. Adriana would have been even more surprised if he had brought a live mutant here. She hoped that he would be able to subjugate all 4 evolutionary types of monsters. That's nice. Not every newcomer to the association is given such trust. From that day on, the boy officially became an adventurer of the association and was awarded a special badge. He could use it as he wished, although the parameters of his missions would still be a second priority. This will continue until he passes the first stages of development. This measure was created to filter out people who were only looking for profitable missions. This plate in his hands proved that he had become a real adventurer. I wonder if he has a special request. Should I tell Adriana about it? Great. Now it was possible to relax a little. It seems the girl behind the counter mistook him for the strongest hero. Perhaps she even liked him, and not only as a first-class hunter. She looked at him with the same eyes one looks at one's lovers. Everything is as it should be, and gradually the guy will begin to attract everyone's attention. Leo admits that he never needed extra attention. It was hard to believe, like an old wives' tale. He probably dreams that every girl would want to receive a book with a photo of her hero. Doesn't he want to take the laurels of victory after completing a difficult mission? Instead of empty dreams, it would be better to level up a little more. He admits that he will leave the association as soon as he reaches the required rank. He will leave the association, but why? While the spirit tries to comprehend what he heard, the guy only thinks about how long it will take. Suddenly the spirit declares that 100 days will be quite enough. He didn't expect to hear about such a short period. All this time, the spirit promised to train him even more seriously than before joining the association. There is no need to expect mercy. Leo himself dreamed of becoming a real fighter and making good money from it. He must become much stronger in order to one day defeat the dragon himself. There is still a long way to go from killing ordinary monsters to getting to the dragon. He had already fully mastered his new skills, and now he only needed to hone his craft. You need to become stronger not only in real battles, but also in control of your body. One of the hero's privileges is the ability to destroy monsters by absorbing their power. He had already noticed how quickly the power level gauge grew after destroying a monster. For a long time, the spirit told him about the connection between the aura and the killed monsters. Anyone can absorb the power of a monster and then turn it into their own aura. For a long time, Nobles and royalty hid this from the common people. They did it for their own benefit, although much has changed now. Even if you swallow 1,000 rats, it won't be enough to become equal to a dragon. It takes a little getting used to before you can start hunting stronger monsters. Hey, is he even listening? As soon as Leo came out of the sewers, he asked the spirit to activate the ability to purify himself. Brilliant idea. A second later, instead of a dirty face, the spirit saw the same familiar Leo in front of him. For a long time, he wanted to ask why the spirit was so eager to hunt dragons. He replies that their next target was Titan Mountain. It was Titan Mountain that they decided to go to next. It will do him good. Many years ago, the body of the heavenly spirit remained there, and he only recently remembered it. It was quite a dangerous place. This is not a joke at all. It is worth believing in the spirit, as in the very beginning, when the guy stepped over his fear and grabbed the blade. You convinced me. He always trusted his mentor, whose hellish training began immediately after they met. Every day of these training sessions brought the guy closer to his cherished goal. Many hunters have already begun to come up with different nicknames for the newcomer who loved to hunt rats so much. It is said that he kills 100 rats every day and sells their tails to the Adventurers Association. He soon becomes popular due to his love for mutated rats. Now everyone started calling him the cat, who brought a bag of gifts again today. There were rat tails in this bag of the cat. Seeing him in the distance, every monster flees as quickly as they can. Instead of words of praise, Leo would like to receive some other task today. He had already completed many missions before raising his rank. Adriana says that she herself has been waiting for this day for a long time, and now it has come. Now he had 4 special orders at his disposal, and could choose any of them. For some time he tried to settle on one thing. Leo noticed that one of the 4 requests was quite old. They paid little for it, but it allowed him to gain the experience he needed for the next tasks. He decided to choose it, and it was the right decision. All that was needed was to destroy the stone slime that lived in the underground passage near the wall. It is strange that the local knights were the ones who commissioned this mission. Now it has become clear why they pay so little for it. Soon he found himself at the post where the knight was serving. The knight was very surprised that the boy decided to take on his mission. What's surprising about that? Like everyone else, he received an official request from the guild, and among other applications, he came across this one. He realized that it wasn't just the association's hunters who knew about his love of rat hunting. This young knight was also aware of which of the adventurers had already managed to clear out the sewers. There must be many more adventurers like this in the city. The association has been accepting too many weak adventurers lately, and only this guy spent a lot of time clearing the sewers of monsters. He could even increase the reward for the mission if Leo did as well as he did with the rats. Once he reached the desired location, he noticed that the floor was too slippery. It looks like he's in a slime lair. And indeed, at the end of the corridor, he notices mutants. 3 of them were ready for a duel, and there was no reason to deny them this. If it were a normal slime, the knights would not have hired an adventurer to complete the quest. And here is the first surprise. It's good that he managed to dodge to the side and the stone flew a centimeter away from him. If he had hit the head the same way he hit the wall, the mission would have been completed. What the hell was that? Was this really the same slime that all adventurers feared? What if we just cut this freak in half? The idea is great, but it's not that simple. It was even interesting. The spirit explained that the slug's main weakness was their core. If you break this core that was inside the monster, you could easily defeat it. No matter what abilities these creatures have, they will still be destroyed. And there is no need to look with such pitiful eyes. The mutants asked for it, and the lumps of their bodies will soon be scattered across the floor. This is what Leo wanted to do right now. The problem was that their cores were protected by impenetrable armor. Conventional weapons could not penetrate the slime, and it could only be pierced with the sharpest sword. The sword must be so sharp that it can cut through stone. It was worth hurrying before he himself was destroyed by a barrage of such stones. They were all flying towards Leo, and he had to react quickly. Fortunately, the guy had long since learned to defend himself from multiple shots at once. It was an interesting move, but I would have liked to see something else. The guy got it bad after such a sudden attack. The monsters were hitting at one point because he couldn't endlessly repel such a barrage of attacks. The slimes began shooting from a distance of about 5 meters. However, there was always a slight delay between their shots. Perhaps he could break through their defenses and reach the core. Damn slugs. Wait, what is he up to? Watching the slime's movements and the flying rocks, Leo decides to pierce her body with the sacred sword. The challenge was to dodge the attacks as quickly as possible, but he can handle it. I wonder what his mentor thought about this. The spirit explained that when the slime opens the hole for the shot, the flow of stones stops for a moment. Only at this moment will Leo be able to use his skill to destroy the core. Did he really spend that much time coming up with this plan? After all, it was obvious without much thought. Now it was just a matter of taking a step forward and doing it. Leo realizes that his chance to attack will come in a second. And so it happened. And with one precise thrust, he managed to pierce the core. Every second counted, and it was necessary to act as quickly as possible. The cost of a mistake in such a situation increases many times over if you hesitate. These creatures felt his movements through the vibrations of the floor, even without seeing their opponent. It seemed as if the creature's mouth was larger than the creature itself. It could hold enough stones to pelt any hunter, unless, of course, the hunter was just as clever. Oh damn, he knew from the start that the floor in this place was too slippery, but it was too late to think about that now. Devil! At the most inopportune moment, all his plans went down the drain due to the slippery floor. Meanwhile, the slime increased its attacks and sent more and more stones at him. However, the monster's core was now closer to Leo than ever before. It is at this moment that the guy decides to gather all his strength and make one precise lunge. Bravissimo. He succeeded, although the consequences of the slug explosion were not pleasant. By the way, with this last leg movement, Leo reached the second level. Learning to move more quietly is just the beginning of what he has to learn. Whether it's ice or a hot stove, you need to feel superior in everything. In other words, he will have to learn to calmly use the environment for his own purposes under any conditions. Each location must become his territory, but to do this he will have to visit each of them. The first time he was just lucky, because he spread his legs wide and lowered his center of gravity. Thus, Leo managed to get out of his standing position and easily dodge the attack. But if the environment changes, his posture must also change depending on the threat. All the poses he used initially were good, but they were more suitable for flat surfaces. Moreover, the ceiling in this place was too low and the ground was too wet. This means that he must adjust his posture to the current situation. Is he even listening, or is he daydreaming again? In reality, the guy is just thinking about what benefits the second level will give him. His mentor thinks the same thing. He then states that for better training, the guy should stop dodging all the time. He doesn't want to die stoned, so he needs to learn to take the blows. In what sense? This means that you should not try to attack back at the moment of an enemy attack. You have to endure the blow, even if you have to endure pain. Just don't tell me he'll have to endure the pain of stones flying at him. If that's the case, let this little balloon show the damn execution on itself first. Soon it was necessary to show the results of their work. It was already the third week since the guy accepted the mission. During this time, it was possible to complete several tasks. Why did it take so long? The answer to that question was much closer than he thought. Here it is, the moment of truth. Immediately after this, the same newcomer appeared from the darkness of the corridor. Leo holds 2 bags filled to the brim with slime. For some time, everyone watched this spectacle in silence. Today was the last day of his hunt, which ended successfully. No more slimes will be able to bother these guys or other residents of the city. The last batch was well packed in both bags they now had. With these words, the guy turned sharply and headed in the other direction. It seems he is ready for more now. All the power Leo has accumulated while clearing the slimes can be used to activate the aura. This day came much earlier than Leo himself had planned. Now he is back in his room and ready to do whatever his mentor says. At first, he thought that destroying the stone slimes would take much longer. But thanks to persistent training, he managed to complete the task in the shortest possible time. Now his time has come to learn how to use the aura. Ready? The descendants of noble families received this power from birth thanks to certain secrets. But ordinary people have nothing but tenacity and the desire to fight. Not everyone manages to survive by going through cleansing and opening all the channels of the aura. Yes, he heard right. Vital organs and vessels were protected, which the spirit had taken care of in advance. But he will still have to experience physical pain and even lose consciousness for a short time. Therefore, whether he awakens his aura or not depends only on him. And now it's time to get down to business. Nobody said it would be easy. Swords of light had already appeared in the air, and everything that the mentor had told him about was coming true. One of these swords pierces Leo at full speed. It was very painful. The worst thing is that you will have to endure this pain for some time. At some point, there were so many swords of light that they filled the entire space. All those damned swords were aimed at one point. That point was Leo, who was still suffering from hellish pain. He must withstand the blows of 10 lightsabers simultaneously without losing consciousness. The guy is holding on with all his might. This was the only way to awaken his aura. The spirit does not take his eyes off for a second. Well, did it work? It seemed that the guy began to feel a new flow circulating throughout his body. It was as if a new light was born inside him, and energy began to flow at a furious speed. It felt like he became stronger than everyone else in just one evening. But this was only an illusion, which the spirit warned about in advance. Yes, it's just an illusion. Holding this energy was a separate task. All this time, the gods are closely watching each new level of Leo. He had already impressed them, but today was a special day. Considering that he managed to awaken his aura so early, the guy has a lot of potential. But first, it was worth bringing the matter to an end, and only then talking about the result. Leo was the successor of this deity, and it did not doubt him one bit. Besides, the spirit was nearby, ready to catch him in difficult times. He thought the guy could only handle 5 swords. There were successes, but it was too early to relax. No one doubted that he would answer exactly like that, yet his physical abilities remained the same. Leo just feels the flow, as if his nervous system has gone beyond the body. The spirit explained that this was the very same aura that had awakened only today. If he can concentrate, he will learn to control this aura much sooner. Now he was very happy with his new abilities. But first he needed to review the basics of using aura. There are 5 main elements that are most commonly found in nature that provide reliable control. When he has thoroughly studied and mastered these 5 elements, he will gain control over his aura as well. Wait, what is he talking about? Leo's aura had the attribute of the sun. Light and fire were the 2 highest attributes that endowed him with their energy. Great, because it was the same attribute as the legendary Great Hero. But before the main part of the training, it was necessary to sum up the results. Voila! A screen appeared before my eyes that was very different from the one I had seen last time. This time, the interface displayed the skills the boy had acquired after awakening his aura. Now he could use the properties that magical power had given him. If before this happened by chance, now everything was under his complete control. He made that great jump after Edward's sweeping blow thanks to instincts. But after awakening the aura, the guy will be able to control his instincts. It's time to learn to wield a sword like a real warrior. Finally, his dream came true. Can we start right now? He was eager to master this incredible power as soon as possible. But before training, he needed to know something. The spirit explained that their main enemies had recently appeared in the city. It's strange. What enemies were you talking about? It turned out that the spirit had not yet figured out their exact location, but had already felt the presence of their aura. Since Leo was a future hero, he needed to learn how to deal with enemies. From time to time, heroes protected the world from monster invasions and other dangers. Now is not the time for stupid questions. We need to listen to the end first. All you had to do was give the guy the chance and he would grind them into dust. The spirit believed that he was now too exhausted for new battles, and that he should wait a little. In that case, how long will he have to wait for the right moment? Or maybe I should take a risk and go all in. Daredevil. Okay, since he insisted so much, the spirit decided to tell him some information about this danger. But he didn't need all that information now, because they hadn't cleared the city of the remaining monsters yet. It was Leo who would now have to discover his true purpose, going through a sea of blood and hatred. It sounded like a threat, although the spirit was always on Leo's side. Today he came back to the association building and spoke about his recent success. Looking at him, Adriana realized that this guy had changed a lot. He achieved a lot by destroying monsters, and it even affected his appearance. She liked Leo like this even more than on the day of their first meeting. An unexpected revelation. Can you repeat it again? Instead of answering, Adriana handed him a badge with a new engraving, assigning the boy the next rank. It was the nicest gift I've ever received because Leo really did his best. He, like no one else, deserves this title and can receive a new rank without any checks. He was promoted after just 2 assignments. Not bad, but he definitely shouldn't relax. It turns out that now he can take on tasks of a new rank, which are paid completely differently. Having received a promotion, the guy immediately decided to take on a new task. With this approach, he will achieve a lot, and Adriana will not be the only one who will be crazy about him. It only remains to be seen what his mentor thinks about this. He should focus on training before taking on serious work. By the way, Adriana can help with this too. But Leo believes that training is a personal matter. I wonder if they have any slum-related missions. The guy heard that few people take on such tasks, and he could be the one who takes the risk. Although slums are usually places for the poor, these were a little different. This area was a meeting place for criminal gangs, where all the thieves, fugitives, and smugglers gathered. It is in such a place that he will find what will make training truly interesting. However, at the moment there was not a single task directly related to the slums. It was mostly mercenaries working there, not adventurers from his organization. Moreover, adventurers did not get involved in conflicts between people. Almost everything that happened in the slums here now involved fights. Due to some restrictions, Leo couldn't become a mercenary, although it would have been a great opportunity. What about this task? The guy grabs a piece of paper that says there's a mission to destroy living armor in an abandoned house. These were living decorative armors that turned into monsters. Although the reward is small, only a few people in the entire city are capable of destroying them. Leo still had the holy sword, so the reanimated armor wouldn't be a problem for him. The mansion was located right next to the slums, and the guide sheet would help you navigate the area. Now that's an idea. Thanks to this sheet, he will be able to get there without any obstacles and immediately begin the mission. Even the strong government of the slums will not enter into conflict with the Adventurers Guild. If a weak adventurer is attacked, those of a much higher rank will definitely come to his aid. For example, there were adventurers who were engaged in solving issues of national scale. Others fought against the lawlessness that local bandits often caused on the streets. However, the decision remained with Leo. Well, it's worth thinking about it. The guy's decision was obvious, and Adriana was glad of his consent. The reward for clearing the fortress of stone slimes did not take long to arrive and was already in his hands. The amount turned out to be quite large, because the platoon commander decided to increase the fee a little. Not a bad start to work in the association. Finally, Leo wanted to ask one more question. The guy wanted to ask about a church that was located somewhere nearby. It was strange why he asked about this particular church. In response, Leo explained that he just needed to see something, and was not going to do anything special. Hearing this, Adriana began to guess about many things. Looking at her, Leo realizes that the girl really took him for a new hero. He will need the help of the Holy Order, although it may be possible to get by with an ordinary church. No one will dare to desecrate the monastery, and if necessary, he is ready to stand up for its defense with a sword in his hands. But now he acts like a simple guy who thanks Adriana for valuable information. However, the girl remained completely perplexed. She realized that if the hero seeks help from the church, it means that a powerful enemy has appeared somewhere. As a guild worker, Adriana only now realized how dangerous everything was. Once outside the guild, the spirit keeps an eye on his ward. This was the only way the guy could get the information he needed without revealing his true identity. If the guild finds out who he really is, he will be in trouble. You just have to pretend that he wants to go to church. The seal has not yet fully opened, and only in extreme cases will he be able to use it. By the way, meeting with animated armor can also be quite interesting. First of all, the guy needs to hear something. Living armor was a rare phenomenon that resulted from the fusion of magic with the power of its previous owner. These creatures were unable to think, and were simply a pile of iron that obeyed someone's will. Any magician could use them for his own purposes, or simply destroy them as unnecessary. Destroying the spell was tantamount to destroying one's own creation, and therefore disadvantageous to the magician. The most important thing was who exactly was behind the animated armor in the mansion. The silver-plated armor would have made for an easy target, and it was strange that it hadn't been diffused yet. It turns out that everything wasn't so simple. This problem would have been solved long ago if low-level monsters lived in that mansion. Only now does Leo begin to understand what the catch was. The main difficulty was the ability of this living armor to regenerate. If the armor were destroyed from the helmet to the gaiters, they would be able to respawn in 10 minutes. It was impossible to defeat them with simple weapons, no matter who tried to do so. It is foolish to think that armor is made of ordinary metal. He will find out this only after he reaches his destination. Soon Leo heads to the slums, where the nightlife is always in full swing. Walking through the streets, he realizes that it is much livelier here than he expected. When Leo goes outside, he feels an uneasy feeling as if enemies are constantly watching him. If this were so, the spirit would have warned him long ago. He understood why this feeling arose. Leo looked too young, and every scoundrel looked at him as a future victim. Their evil aura enveloped Leo from head to toe, making him feel so strange. It could be compared to sharp needles that pierce the entire body at once. Their evil aura is not capable of harming him, although some of them can be dangerous. The locals are wary of any stranger, as Leo was now. It was possible to trust the mentor and focus on the task. Night has already fallen, and the place of the next mission was very close. As soon as the guy raised his head, he saw the gates of an abandoned mansion in front of him. The windows were broken, and none of the local residents would have dared to get in there. This monster must be here somewhere. The old armor was covered in cobwebs, and only Leo knew what was hidden underneath. After the monster sensed a stranger in the mansion, the pile of iron instantly came to life, and the stranger slowly made his way through the corridors of the old house. After opening the door, Leo hesitates for a moment to enter. Gripping the hilt of his blade tighter, he remembers his strength. It can be used as a lantern, although the sword's true purpose was quite different. So where is the living armor? Next time, I'll need to bring a lantern and save my divine energy for the fights. At that moment, at the far end of the corridor, he notices what he came here for. The revived armor had already awakened, without keeping the guests waiting long. And yet, instead of an empty bucket, it is better to carry an ordinary head on your shoulders. With his axe, he would scare only a fellow empty-headed idiot. This was the first time Leo had encountered an opponent who fought with a halberd. When used skillfully, this weapon can be used to deliver slashing blows and pierce an enemy through and through. But more importantly, they were now separated by 2 meters. To cover this distance, the guy had to take a few steps. However, there was no time for this, because the revived armor struck first. Luckily, he managed to put his sword forward and repel the attack. Attacking without warning is a cowardly act that deserves a harsh response. Because of the 30-kilogram hollow armor, the enemy was too clumsy and vulnerable. This was the price for the armor itself to close the distance. The fight did not end and Leo struck again. This is not the end yet. After 2 successful attacks, he launched a series of dangerous attacks. As a result, the pile of iron flew apart in different directions. Now she wasn't even good enough to scare anyone. Instead of a monster, only fragments of armor remained on the floor. Apart from the chaotic movements of the sword, the result could be considered quite good. The report said that the armor would regenerate even if it was shattered into pieces. Is this really true? Leo had heard that monsters like these were capable of recovering quickly, but so far it hadn't been noticeable. Moreover, false reports are considered a second-degree crime in the guild, and are severely punished. If someone dies because of this, the guild will immediately put out a reward for the culprit. It is unlikely that anyone would take such a risk just to avoid punishment. The situation seemed strange from the very beginning, and yet nothing came to the spirit's mind except the thought that there were some differences between these individuals. Maybe it's worth catching a couple more to check. Moreover, they themselves are coming from the other end of the corridor, as if asking for it. Now, instead of one knight, 2 monsters were advancing on the guy. It was curious to know the level of these giants. It was a pity that nothing could be seen even after Leo's sword illuminated this pitch darkness. The boy mentally ordered the sword to give off as much light as possible. Incredibly, the sword seemed to hear his order and illuminated everything around. The light was very bright, but did not blind the eyes and allowed fighting. In addition, this light could not only illuminate, but also seriously affect opponents. The revived armor could not look at the light source for long. It turns out that you could simply put your sword forward and win without even entering into combat. A little more and the knights will go blind, becoming easy targets. That's why they rushed to attack first. Luckily, the sword still gave its owner power, and Leo repelled this sudden attack. They decided to attack him all at once. Although he could still predict the direction of each blow, Leo continued to look ahead, ready to repel any attack. These attacks were executed as if by a textbook and were easily predicted by a talented fighter. Carefully, it could have been said earlier. It's good that the guy managed to duck at the last second, and the blade of the sword passed over his head. A little more, and this freak would have cut off his head, so he should have been more careful. Strangely, the monsters did not behave like animated armor, but as if there were living creatures under the armor. One could also notice the aura that these fighters emitted. The spirit suggested that he use the technique of essence gazing to see what was hidden within. It was a great idea and worth trying. Immediately after this, the guy notices a dark entity that was hiding inside the armor. This black smoke was a deadly breath that absorbed life force with a touch. The solar aura gave the guy the ability to endure. Touching them didn't bode well, so it wasn't worth the risk. If they encountered the normal death breath inside the armor, the holy sword light would purify it. But this did not happen, which means that the dark entity had a different nature, invulnerable to divine light. Only demonic creatures were capable of such a thing. That's right, there was phantom armor in front of them. The large number of these creatures made Leo's situation difficult. The creature he had cut into pieces was not reborn and was controlled by some evil spirit. Even if his shell is destroyed by force, he will return to life again and again. Luckily, the guy has a holy sword, the ultimate sacred weapon. But their number put Leo in a difficult situation, and he risked not leaving here alive. The number of these creatures was unusual. The spirit understands that even with the correct magical form, their chance is still small. After all, hundreds, maybe even thousands of spirits flocked to the mansion, and it was impossible to overcome them. All the dead in this city can turn against Leo at once. However, evil spirits cannot move from one area to another, which means they lived in the slums. It was a region beyond the reach of law and authority, ruled by the most scumbags. With his current experience, Leo was at risk of not being able to handle such a task. Even the holy sword, which could attract the attention of the church itself, was useless now. But this could have been thought about a little later, but first it was worth trying. The first blow hit the target, cutting the knight in half. The second blow was no worse than the first. They all turned into the useless pile of iron they were to begin with. The fight continued until the morning. The entire abandoned house was littered with fallen armor. Fighting surrounded by so many monsters was not that easy. In addition, Leo's blind spots made the fight difficult. His field of view is quite wide, but every person has their own limit. It was impossible to constantly fight near the wall. It was necessary to go out into the open. As usual, the spirit decided to give the guy another lecture on the right attitude. But it would have been better to skip that and get straight to the point. Moreover, today Leo is too tired and would like to rest. He will learn the rest a little later, in fights in the middle of the slums. The level of danger there is much higher than in sewers or underground tunnels. If Leo continues to rely only on his vision, he may fall into one of the traps. However, the spirit was still the guy's best advisor and ally. He would never allow him to become one of the victims here. It's clear why the local children had such a hard time in these god-forsaken slums. But today was a special day. Wiping away his tears, the boy saw in front of him a man that everyone knew about. To keep from screaming in fear, he even had to cover his face with his hands. Right in front of him, he sees the leader of the local gang of bastards, which was the most brutal in the area. It's unlikely that any of them would want to have problems with this guy. Moreover, his team included a whole squad of fighters whose hands were covered in blood up to the elbows. They didn't yet know what kind of newcomer they were about to meet. In the meantime, each of them admired themselves, doing their hair before meeting with the leader. One of the guys reports to the boss that the people around the estate have become too dangerous. In this case, you need to continue to observe the situation from afar, and not attract unnecessary attention. Another piece of news has emerged about water analysis in local areas. In addition to the usual capital water, the guys found blood, organs, and other remains. There were a lot of human remains. About 30 people died in one day. Oh damn. Logan orders that all this data be collected and stuffed into one report with the other information. In addition, he orders that all evidence be attached to the report to force the guild or the church to act, so that they don't have any questions or unnecessary doubts. He quickly gets rid of the one who was against it. Yes, the handsome man who survived would hardly want to be in his place. Logan warns that this will happen to anyone who dares to contradict him. This applies to all the guys, including the one standing opposite. We need to forget about an alliance with another gang forever, because it will only harm them. Even if those guys are cult fanatics or spies from another country, There is no reason to mess with them. They'll probably corner Logan's gang soon, once they've secured the support of the local fanatics. This should be done by the church's executioner squad, because the Knights of the Sacred Iron Chain do not receive their salaries for nothing. If there is no other news, Logan decides to end it here. However, the guy reports that recently an adventurer, carrying out a new order, entered an abandoned estate. What kind of news is this? And indeed, a newcomer appeared in the association, who managed to become famous by destroying monsters. A newcomer named Leo has completed a task that no one had dared to take on before him. He was nicknamed the Cleaner because he took orders that everyone else refused. An unusual guy. Logan had never dealt with an adventurer who took cheap jobs before. Maybe it's this one that can be used for your own purposes. Meanwhile, Leo continues to train with the sword under the supervision of his mentor. His main task was to link his aura with the power of the blade as best as possible. Thanks to this combination, he will be able to defeat even strong opponents. But something went wrong. The sword fell from his hands after an electric shock ran through his entire body. Looking down at him from above, the spirit realizes that a stream of aura has pierced his entire body. This guy is no slouch. He can withstand loads that others simply would not survive. Well, let's see. Sword mastery improved, but the aura was still weak. The spirit explains that he is learning what others spend hundreds of hours on, which is why his aura is quickly depleted. Then why not add another ability to the interface? There was no point in even thinking about it until he finished working on controlling his aura. The 7-star sword was also known as the Great Chariot. This means that he can only be called a true master when he has mastered all forms of the secret art. Before he can begin, he must have complete control over his aura. But how long will these trials last? Once in 2 months he couldn't become stronger than the enemies from the slums. The guy needed an ace up his sleeve. By the way, he was right. While you have strength, you need to spend all your time only on training. Suddenly, the spirit declares that the training is over for today. After all, right under the window there was already a crowd of uninvited guests, clearly looking for a fight. These guys were definitely not residents and came here to meet Leo. I wonder how this acquaintance will begin. They appear to be local hooligans led by one of their leaders. They don't seem to be friendly, but Spirit doesn't sense any aggression from them. Perhaps we should go out to meet them. A few minutes later, Leo finds himself face to face with their leader. The boy already knows the nickname that all the hunters in the association call Leo. He apologizes that they came uninvited, but such were the orders of their leader. They were from Logan's gang and liked to make a splash. The bastard gang was the most notorious in the slums, but its members looked a bit unusual. Their leader, Logan, was very different from his subordinates and unlike them, did not dye his hair. But it didn't matter, because the boss sent them for Leo. He immediately replies that he himself was going to Logan. Seriously? As long as he keeps calling Logan's name, most guys will start getting out of his way. It was a very clever move, but this strategy had to be followed to the end. After all, if someone realizes that he is bluffing, the guy will be in trouble. Along the way, he realizes that Logan wants to assign him some work. But if he's just planning on using Leo, that's a bad idea. On the spot, one of them invites Leo to come in. Oops. You need to be more careful and watch where you're going. An unfinished cretin. Such a miscalculation could have cost the merchant dearly if he accidentally hit the bandit. That damn midge will pay for daring to touch a member of the gang of bastards without permission. It's hard for Leo to see such cruelty, but he can't show weakness. If the spirit had allowed it, he would have intervened, but he told him to calm down. You need to restrain your emotions so as not to get caught up in another story. He came at Logan's invitation, which means he doesn't need any extra problems. You'll have to get used to the new rules if the guy is serious about going all the way. Soon Logan was ready to meet his main guest. At the base, Leo realizes that these guys have never heard of cleaning. Besides the pile of rubble, all the walls here were spattered with the blood of the victims who had fallen into Logan's hands. It was a common scare tactic, which meant the guys weren't cleaning up here on purpose. The unexpected appearance from behind was also part of this plan. The blade was still with Leo and he could draw it at any moment. With this blade he not only chopped down the revived knights, but could also easily pierce human flesh. Unless of course it was as hard as metal. Wait, he blocked a sword strike with his bare hand? So we met. And to cement their acquaintance, Logan also decided to show his little surprise. For example, hit this arrogant youth on the head with an iron fist with all his might. It seems like he could do it just fine if Logan wanted him to. However, he stops his fist a couple of centimeters from Leo's face. This was enough to make the guy's nose bleed. There was silence in the room for a while. Such terrible power arose only from the flow of air, and it's good that the fist never touched the head. Logan realized that this boy was quite brave, since he didn't even move. It was enough to convince him not to draw his blade at the bastard's base again. He's already made up his mind about Leo. The task that will be assigned to him can be completed soon. In exchange, Logan agrees to give the newcomer what he really wants. He turns around abruptly and admits that he already knows everything about his past. It's nice to talk to someone who kicked the asses of incompetent nobles with his bare hands. Did he really find out everything about the years of study at the Royal Academy? Besides, Logan understands why he left her. After all, Leo also never wanted to become a knight and serve vile nobles. This is too much. Logan is sure that the guy decided to become an adventurer after defeating the nobles. Leo didn't chase money and fame. He always went ahead to become even stronger and more influential. That's why he was able to raise his rank by completing only 2 association quests. He easily found the weak point in the slime's body by breaking its core. Thanks to this, Leo quickly gained trust and received a promotion. This guy is a dreamer, right? But Logan is convinced that Leo really wasn't stingy with money, and chose a reliable contractor for the task. The guy had one goal, and he wanted to prove the vile aristocrats that they were wrong. In these criminal slums, he can now follow Logan's call and join him. If he accepts these conditions, Logan can fulfill his deepest desire. Right now, his main desire was to listen to the silence. This is all? It sounds crazy, but the spirit understands that there is meaning in his words. Even if Logan mistook Leo for a hero, it's worth trying to establish contact with him. Here their opinions converge. After all, he doesn't even suspect who his enemy really is. This can be used for one's own purposes, so the guy agrees to cooperate. It is difficult to say what was on the leader's mind, but this alliance was destined to begin anyway. Soon they find a quiet place on the top floor. It was simply impossible to start such a conversation without a bottle of strong alcohol. The guy slams the bottle onto the table with all his might and admits that the weak always die first. Those who survive try to become the strongest, because that's how life is in the slums. 4 months ago, when the number of exiles was growing, he stopped paying attention to them. The living armor was the most notorious evil that inhabited the mansion. There are 3 people who rule these slums, but none of them have been able to get rid of the armor. The first of them was a moneylender nicknamed the Golden Pig. The second was an unknown killer, whose name and face no one knew. And of course, on top of all this pile of slag was the great Logan himself. A brutal massacre took place in which more than 200 people died. In the end, he decided to fight back and enlisted the support of his best fighters. Almost 500 mercenaries were sent on this mission, but almost all of them were destroyed. Logan was one of the lucky few who survived. But how could this happen? And why did the guys end up in this meat grinder? If such a force was truly gathered there, the Empire must keep an eye on what is happening on the streets. If Logan's story is to be believed, it is clear why phantom creatures appear in the abandoned house. Damn it, he just opened that bottle. Okay, the empty bottle won't be needed anyway, which means you can smash it to pieces with your bare hand. It was quite impressive. Still, Logan would like to know if he would agree to this proposal. Of all the adventurers, he is ready to entrust him with a task that will bring the guy unprecedented fame. He had already managed to study his strengths and weaknesses, knowing that the guy did not lose heart in the face of fear. So Logan's trying to get him to do a contract killing, right? Smart guy. It is better to have one of the adventurers at hand than 100 stupid subordinates. Logan didn't want to lose any men fighting these vagrants, so he brought in a force from outside the slums. He only created more problems for himself. This person may become a big threat in the future, and it is better to get rid of him now. The only question was why involve the guild in this. A document containing secret information falls into Leo's hands. People in the slums became victims of evil spirits. In the shortest possible time, this evil spirit destroyed many local residents. Hundreds, and in the worst case, thousands of people became easy targets. The horrors described on the pages almost made the boy vomit. He couldn't even imagine that such horrors were happening here. District heads are doing nothing, because these victims do not affect their business. Logan warns that you can't trust anyone, especially if you doubt the person. It's clear why he needs Leo. Now he must start a new life at the very bottom of this world. Until that day, things had not been easy for him either. But the past trials seemed like nothing compared to what awaited him ahead. Will Leo accept his terms or return to his old life? He won't turn down a chance that could change everything, but it could have been done more quietly. Then he throws him some equipment that will be useful for the first time. The main item was a dagger engraved with the symbol of Logan's gang. If anyone gets in his way, Leo just needs to show this mark. But until now, the guy had managed just fine without this dagger. But the magic scrolls in the bag were much more interesting. This can be considered the first advance that Logan generously handed over to his new subordinate. And there was one more thing the guy wanted to know for the last time. When he struck in the first seconds of the meeting, the guy did not yet know the true strength of his opponent. Luckily for him, he never touched Leo's head. However, the guy already understood what this would mean for him. Just wondering if Logan meant to follow through with that hit. Did he really want to know? Of course, Logan would have stopped when his fist was millimeters from Leo's face. Yet his answer was not entirely sincere. You can think about this later, especially since the guy will still have time. Now he sits in his room, remembering his last conversation with Logan. This guy is incredibly strong, and it's scary to imagine what price he paid for this power. You need to train more to become stronger. Leo turns to his mentor, who probably has some clue about these documents. The spirit believes that dark magic has nothing to do with it, although he doesn't know the details. Logan's dagger may be needed even more than the magic scrolls. We are talking about people who are planning to deceive everyone. Logan wasn't lying about the brutality of life in the slums, so it would be a good idea to have an assistant. But such an assistant must be very talented, and without hesitation become a support for him. It was a wise decision, although finding such an assistant is very difficult. If it were that easy, the spirit wouldn't object. The next day, he decides to go to that place again. However, today he sees a building that is completely out of place here. It was a church built on the outskirts of a slum. Here one could often see beggars asking for alms from passers-by. The priest of the local church was the helper Leo was looking for here. The only thing the priest held to were their own beliefs and the teachings of the goddess. They could not be bought for money, and this served as the main proof of their reliability. It was necessary to behave as quietly as a mouse, and not reveal one's identity to the priests. In the slums, you would hardly meet normal people, although there was still trust between the locals. Perhaps this happened because the church decided to remain in this forgotten place. The guy decided to test this theory in practice. Knocking on the door, he loudly announced that he had come from the Adventurers Association on business with the bishop. His aura manifested itself almost immediately. Surprisingly, the aura reacted so sharply to the person behind the door. A minute later, the door creaked open. The very same bishop of this church appeared before him on the threshold. He served in this church and was glad to see the young guest. Who would have thought that an elf would become the bishop of the church? It doesn't matter, though. He had to pretend that he was not at all surprised, because the abbot was not human. The bishop explained with a smile that he was already accustomed to the reaction of those who saw him for the first time. He was well aware of the young man's exploits, since he had rid the city sewer system of monsters. Thanks to his efforts, the water in the city became much cleaner. However, he was exaggerating a little. The bishop himself was glad to help the guy if he had any requests. This conversation was more interesting. Logan began by handing him some documents that might seem familiar to the bishop. For some time, the bishop silently read the information provided. Then Leo saw his reaction, almost the same as his own. In such situations, there was no time to waste, but the source was questionable. He found the document dubious and decided to entrust the investigation to his people. Unfortunately, the bishop could not give an answer right away, and the guy had to wait. Leo asked to at least recommend those who could help with the investigation in 2 dangerous areas. It's a pity, but there were no such people in mind, because there were no armed adventurers among the bishop's friends. There were a few people who knew how to fight, but they were unlikely to agree to go into the slums. His last hope was gone. The bishop said he could go there with him. Is he kidding? He could entrust his work to someone else, because his position as bishop did not prohibit him from duels. Leo had never had a bishop as a partner before, and he was not prepared for something like this. There's a first time for everything. Judging by the look in Leo's eyes, he didn't trust the bishop, and it was worth saying this right away. First, he had to see for himself the strength of his future ally. Only in appearance did the bishop seem weak. But when meeting with the dark entity, he could show what he was capable of. The divine power of this elf was so powerful that it could even compare with Logan's power. The priest's fiery aura had reached its maximum density and was already leaking out. At this rate, this flame could burn everything it touched. Judging by the speed of activation, the bishop mastered this power through his vast experience. He seemed completely harmless in appearance. Leo admitted with a smile that he would now be afraid to shake his hand. Just 50 years ago, he was a knight of the Order of the Holy Iron Castle, but since then, he has lost his former strength. You wouldn't be able to tell from him. Having plucked up his courage, the guy nevertheless shook his hand, because there was no one else to help except this bishop. He asked him to wait in the yard while he got ready. It's always a pleasure to work with a talented person, especially a former knight. During the Order's heyday, its knights primarily used magical bows. The spirit thought it was naive to think so, knowing about the calluses on the boy's hands. He was not mistaken, because besides the bow, there was something else. Such weapons were much more effective in close combat. Wow. If he hadn't known that this man was a church minister, he would have taken him for an ordinary mercenary. With his skill in handling this weapon, it would be possible to clear the entire forest of local mutants. However, today, the bishop's target was not these creatures at all. He just wanted to show off a couple of impressive moves by smashing a pile of rocks opposite him. The priest missed the heavy weapon, which he had not held in his hands for a long time. Wow, how cute. These two become brothers not only in spirit, but also in arms. And it would be better for the parishioners not to know what their rector is actually doing. The new alliance turned out to be much more useful for Leo than he expected. The guy walked slowly along the busy street. All this time, the bishop followed them closely, wrapped in a robe. Under the hood, his face was not visible, and it was easier to maintain the disguise. But something seemed suspicious. He didn't feel the priest's aura, and the spirit explained how it worked. This skill was difficult to use while moving, but otherwise it was simply impossible to detect the bishop. At this moment, the bishop accidentally hits one of the local residents. Then he disappears so quickly that it is almost impossible to keep track of him. Apparently, he had a lot of experience in disguise, although Leo still sensed his presence. But some of Leo's characteristics went beyond the limitations of the bishop's aura. Leo could detect him even when he was using camouflage. For this guy, the ability to disguise any enemy was his own weakness. It feels like the power of the sun and moon are intertwined in one union. Seems like a coincidence? Soon they found themselves on the border of the 23rd district. As expected, Logan's dagger came in handy. Instead of a warm welcome, they were met with hostile looks from local bandits. However, it was possible to avoid a fight by simply showing this dagger. The faces of these people immediately changed, lit up with welcoming smiles, and they invited travelers to pass through. That's better. Now the time has come to judge the impudent heretics who committed blasphemy here. Hearing these words, both realized that they would not want to be in the place of those heretics. Right here behind the hatch, the kingdom of evil began. Both travelers descended the stairs into the dungeon and did not even need a torch. The bishop's ability was a great substitute for a torch, lighting the way. Suddenly, the priest feels that the aura around him has changed dramatically. Right on the ceiling, they see a grate behind which monstrous massacres took place. One of the victims recently rebelled and caused a commotion upstairs. And now, Leo knew that there was something worse near the slums than beggars at the church. Somewhere nearby, local Satanists were conducting their experiments, sacrificing living beings. Realizing that at least 70 people were sacrificed, Leo can barely contain his anger. But his new friend decides it's time to stop holding back and strikes first. These bastards have committed too many sins and it's time to show up for their ceremony. The priest did not come here empty-handed, and his little souvenir immediately went into the skull of the first sectarian. It's a pity that he will no longer be able to appreciate the bishop's clever throw. The same goes for the rest of his friends, who were sent by express to the skies. One of them was lucky and did not get hit. An unfortunate oversight, but one that can be easily corrected. This opponent was very different from all the others. The bishop's heavy projectile did not kill him in one blow, but froze next to him. The blows were useless against the armored sword that created a protective dome around the cultist. He loudly promised them that they had only minutes left to live. Say it again. This guard would be much better off without his head, wouldn't he? He himself asked for this conversation, which could not have ended otherwise. Surely he, like the other guards, did not want such a fate for himself. But this fate befell everyone who dared to disturb the former knight of the Holy Order. Soon they were all killed. Today was their first battle together, in which the allies fought shoulder to shoulder. These idiots were armed with pretty good swords, which didn't help them at all. Everything happened exactly as planned from the very beginning. The spirit cast a spell on his appearance, and now Leo's sword was no different from the mercenary's weapon. It's good that he thought of it right away. Anyone familiar with the Holy Order could recognize that this was actually the Holy Sword. By revealing the true nature of the enemy, they did not gain much advantage. There was some truth in Leo's words, but the priests still considered their secret penetration successful. After all, if they exterminated everyone, it means they managed to keep their invasion a secret. Interesting logic. Now they were determined to go inside and continue their journey. Leo opens the very door behind which the wildest horrors began. At this point, he immediately sees before him the skeletons of the unfortunate people who became victims of the sectarians. It's hard to imagine how much they had to endure before they died. The sectarians spared no one, and anyone who came into their hands became a victim for their god. It was worse than any nightmare. How much pain these people experienced. It's not something you can get used to. But the spirit told his disciple to control his emotions. You shouldn't turn away from tragedy, even if it seems too disgusting to you. There will be many more horrors on his way that he won't want to remember. This world is not so simple, and only now he was about to learn its other side. The Demon King might have been involved in this. It is he who gives poverty to the poor and their ailments to the sick, feeding on human suffering. But can suffering be eradicated with the Holy Sword? This is exactly why the spirit came to Earth, to teach Leo to fight evil. He repeats once again that one must not look away, no matter how terrible the sight may be. This was another one of his lessons. Not everyone can face the truth, but Leo must stand firm. Even after seeing such a terrible picture, the guy was still able to show willpower. The space they passed through was just a place where corpses were disposed of. There were at least 2 enemies waiting for them ahead, and if they went in blind, there would be trouble. These scrolls should be thought of as a starting resource, and you should decide for yourself whether it is worth using. We were talking about the scrolls that Logan had awarded the guy before the mission began. He opens the scroll in the hopes that it will help. A second later, the scroll released its magic. I think that's what Logan was talking about when he told me to use it at the most difficult moment. The scroll contained the ability of insight, which instantly gave Leo power. This magic gave the user the temporary ability to see through space. This way you could see the whole inside of this place. And indeed, having scanned the area around him, he discovered something that was inaccessible to others. It's a pity that this scroll could only be used once. A second later, it turned into an ordinary roll of paper. The priest saw blood pouring from the boy's nose and hurried to help him. But he was fine, and it was worth thinking about who was on the other side of these walls. In the center of this place was an impenetrable room, inaccessible to scanning. The entrance to this room was somewhere in the east, and was the most difficult to get to. Perhaps it was there that the core was located, securely guarded by guards. However, it could also have been a simple trap. The principle of the trap was that the bait was given to the uninvited guests only at the beginning. Once the bait is taken, there is no turning back. The entire 25th district could exist according to this principle, and this is how the sectarians kidnapped their victims. And yet Leo decided to check this place out. Next time it won't be so easy to get in here, so today they have a unique chance. The bishop agreed with this, reminding them that they needed to act as quietly as possible. If they want to remain undetected, it's worth attacking from an ambush. Both guards they encountered on their way became the first target. There were no problems with this. But what if there was a whole crowd of such guards at the end of the corridor? It was worth checking this out in practice. Strangely enough, everything turned out to be much simpler than he expected. At the same time, the priest stretched his body a little, remembering his former youth. Soon they found themselves at the very wall that they could not see with the help of magic. To look inside, you would have to break down the door because it didn't even have a handle. The unidentified writing looked like blood flowing from the victim's wound. However, the priest had a better idea. A heavy mace with spikes should have done the job faster, but the mace simply bounced off the door, failing to knock it down. Is she armored? If even a mace couldn't break through it, then how else could I open this damn door? Just recently, he managed to smash even more durable barriers to pieces. A medium-sized stone block shattered into small pieces after the first impact. The solid stone floor also proved to be an easy target, and the heads of the guards broke as easily as eggshells. It turns out that the door was made of material from another dimension. This non-standard matter obeyed laws that do not exist in this world. For example, when exposed to cold, it can catch fire, and when heated, on the contrary, it can freeze. But the main thing is that it was extremely durable. The bishop decides to try another method. He asks his goddess to place divine power into his palm and grant him purifying light. It is true that holy power will be more useful than a mace in such cases. This power is born from accumulated piety and good deeds. And here is the first result. Incredibly, the door almost broke. Oops, I mixed up the spells. That's better. It should have been said in advance that heretical methods will never prevail over holiness. However, the door resisted even the divine power. The final touch was left to Leo, and the spirit would support him. A second before it started, the bishop was still trying to say something. But it was too late. Leo was determined to finish this as soon as possible. There was no point in hiding your divine blade. Well, did it work? Great. Now all that's left to do is a small thing. The cursed door had long irritated Leo and his mentor. At the very beginning, the bishop underestimated him a little. The guy assured that the priest did the main work. The bishop, looking into the darkness, declared that the rituals of the scoundrels were carried out here. It was difficult to see anything in the pitch darkness. Once they had already illuminated her with divine light. What was seen in the next second would have been better left in the dark. You wouldn't wish such a sight on your worst enemy. The stench was so bad that the guy almost threw up. He's been through too many trials and tribulations, and now this has happened. He realized that in front of him were the results of damned experiments. It was hard to comprehend how much suffering these poor fellows had endured. This ugly piece of meat consisted of many victims of the Dark God. These creatures were still alive. Every single one of them continued to breathe and suffer before Leo's eyes. The cultists cut the flesh of intelligent beings, extracted their blood, and in return poured in life force. This is how Satanists summoned monsters, using many victims as bait. How can the earth bear these bastards? I wanted to see the main monster and plunge cold metal into his mouth. Leo understood how dangerous their main enemy was. Soon the city devourer will be summoned into this world from another dimension. Soon this beautiful city will become food for the creature. If this happens, a catastrophe is inevitable. The chronicles of sacrifices were supposed to remain here. From these records, one could understand exactly how they were going to summon the monster. Leo could only hope that they wouldn't have to face this creature without a great plan. Did anyone talk about a plan? Not only he had a bad feeling, but also the bishop, who was here for the first time. The level of guards was extremely low, but this did not solve all the problems. After the ritual is resumed, other monsters may appear. As soon as Leo starts evacuating the townspeople, those bastards will start the ritual. Damn it, I'll have to go straight ahead. Except for the spirit, no one wanted to enter a burning house without reliable protection. If total war is inevitable, it must be properly prepared for. These satanic creatures had terrible protection. There was only one remedy against strong armor. The spirit will not leave his disciple in trouble no matter what happens. None of them know about the holy sword nearby. The best solution was to remain in the shadows until the attack. This is what Leo was going to bet everything on. It's time to get out of here. Those bastards already noticed that they were invading their territory. It's a pity that the lives of these unfortunate people ended so sadly. Those who suffered the most were those whose lives still flickered in these mutilated bodies. A mace in the hands of a priest could end their suffering. The next second he aimed the mace at the creature that seemed to be begging for it. Now all that remains is to pray for their souls, who have ascended to heaven. This was the main thing that should have been done last. The bishop suggests speeding things up a bit. He was not mistaken, because the guards really did notice the uninvited guests. It became clear that since they had been discovered, this place had to be blocked. No blockade will stop the fugitives at such a moment. Soon they managed to find a way to escape pursuit and avoid meeting the guards. It seemed as if they had disturbed a hornet's nest today. In his distant childhood, the bishop had already found himself in a similar situation and had to jump into the nearest pond. That place, teeming with vile creatures, was worse than any nest. I wonder what Leo himself thinks about this. The guy didn't immediately find what to answer. The spirit was as silent as his disciple. The sacred blade in his hands became an answer that did not require words. With its help, Leo easily defeated 2 guards, disguising his blade. He claims that he has a brilliant plan that just needs to be executed. It's better to talk about this somewhere else. Over a cup of tea, the guy quickly laid out his plan to him. The plan sounded quite convincing. Some details required clarification. For example, how did the guy know so much about these freaks, one of whom they dragged along with them? It was too difficult to explain, and even a priest could not be trusted with information about the spirit. The information about the city devourer was secret, so it was better to pretend that he had figured it out himself. I had to not mention the name of the Holy Sword so as not to attract unnecessary attention. The bishop explained that even in the Holy Church, the solar aura was considered the best means of attack. She was so rare that even he had only seen her in Leo's arms in his entire life. The decision has been made. They will mobilize the guild and the army, and then infiltrate inside with a small elite group. There were 2 mandatory conditions: the best fighters on the team and a quick start to the assault, that's all. They will have to meet with elite warriors of satanic art and accept the battle. All fighters must be of the highest ranks. Suddenly, a brilliant idea appears. Leo suggests to the priest to recruit the strongest people from the slums into his army. There was at least 1 man in the slums who was no match for the strongest warriors. 1 word from the bishop will leave them no choice but to agree. Well, that's an idea. It was like a church call to military service. The opportunity to do good deeds in the name of the church should attract anyone. They are either too naive or stupid. If the people in question had heard this conversation, Logan would have regretted not following through with the blow. At that moment, he saw the guy as a future ally and did not expect such an offer at all. Appearances can be deceiving, and life is full of irony. The next day, he comes to the guild building again. Everyone was just waiting for the appearance of this newcomer, who had already managed to become famous. Adriana was the one who was waiting for him the most. There was someone else whose presence could eclipse even Leo. The Knight of the Holy Iron Castle Order was one of those people. It's strange why he came to the guild. Leo states that he came today only to ask for cooperation. The Bishop of the Holy Order was ready to personally request the full support of the guild in the name of God. It was the most amazing event in the entire existence of the guild. They soon secured a meeting with the head of the guild. He was counting on them, although they met under sad circumstances. Once a big man, Bernard held the highest rank, but retired due to injury. The gravity of the situation forced the bishop himself to ask for help. His face darkened even more when a strange creature appeared on the table. Only one adventurer could answer the call, since everyone else was busy with tasks. They headed into the slums with the bishop, leaving the matter to the head of the guild. Leo suggested recruiting the leader of the local gang first, hoping for his support. The priest will immediately label as heretics all those who did not cooperate with the church if they refuse. Damn it, he fell into his own trap. The recommendation was not only for Logan, but for all the other guys from the slums. Is that all, or is there any other advice? 2 fighters will be enough for the main group, but the city's residents will have to be evacuated. It's strange that these 2 decided to behead the main monster with the help of a small detachment of warriors. He can refuse if he doesn't like the plan. For a second, it seemed as if these 2 had some connection in the past. Soon the boy saw the fruits of his labor. He didn't expect to be able to gather so many warriors in 2 days. All these guys dared to fight the evil spirits, risking their lives. It is hard to believe that Leo became the leader of this army. Most of the crowd were adventurers, although Adriana personally delivered the request to the guild. There were about 1,500 people here, and Bernard was among them. He managed to convince his lordship, thanks to the material evidence he presented. The garrison is most likely already besieging the 25th district from all sides. Close combat will remain with the adventurers, and everyone else will shower the enemy with flaming arrows. A wise decision. It is better to get on the enemy's nerves from afar, rather than to inspire him. Judging by Logan's smirk, that was exactly the tactic he was using. Even the Lord sent support in the form of 1 fighter. Roger was one of the most famous knights in the area, and was pleased to welcome the guardian of the goddess. This man was able to become famous for his martial arts while still being a free knight. Logan, as expected, felt out of place. The main guest in this team was 1 dark creature. To begin with, it would be a good idea to introduce ourselves. The priest must know who this creature really is. The details don't matter because now they are in the same boat. A dark assassin must obey orders, even if he is used to acting alone. The priest will even forgive his sins if he fulfills his role properly. Otherwise, he will force him to repent, but instead of a censer, he will have an iron mace in his hands. It is unlikely that any of the church parishioners had ever heard such a sermon. These words could have frightened anyone, but not the Undertaker. He quickly disappeared into thin air, leaving no trace behind, using his magic. Now they just have to wait for the last member of the squad. Fortunately, she didn't keep us waiting long. Barbara apologized for being late as she greeted her allies. It seems that the bishop is ready to forgive all the earthly sins of this sweet warrior. Thus, Leo's first ally became the main gangster from the slums. Barbara was the only one of the adventurers who had the appropriate rank. The retired knight of the Holy Iron Castle also joined their ranks. The list of main fighters was closed by the Dark Assassin, or simply the Undertaker. Well, it turned out to be a nice team. No one else would have been able to stop the city devourers if it weren't for Leo at the top of that list. The start of the battle instantly illuminated the darkness of the night. They acted according to a well-thought-out strategy, showering the enemy's lair with burning shells. Very quickly, the flames engulfed the entire building. The sudden attack caused a stir among the local guards. Raising his head, the guard saw what his miserable life had led him to. His sins must now be atoned for by divine fire. However, an arrow to the head will do this much faster. It was necessary to release the monster as soon as possible, using his last chance for salvation. After all his comrades were instantly killed. The mutant was the trump card that the guards kept for last. It's true that they will also have a couple dozen flaming arrows for this giant. Hey, is anyone here bored? Perhaps a little amusement will brighten up this evening, at least for those who remain alive when this hell ends. It's unlikely that the monster will allow you to calmly attack buildings with flaming arrows. At some point, the front line froze, and the entire team just watched from afar. The countermeasure was executed brilliantly, but the monster turned out to be no easy opponent. Those who understood the disadvantages of a total war immediately tried to hide in their shells. But Leo never used this tactic. If you fail to destroy the enemy this way, you can find a better option. Ahead, the storm was intensified by someone who managed to stay in the rear. Now it was the bishop's turn to go into the thick of things. Leo usually won the running competitions, but today he was left out. But he definitely had enough time to run to the foot of the tornado while everyone else was standing nearby. But the spirit warned the guy that he should work on his endurance. Roger decides to start this battle first. He was interested to test how strong the barrier really was. If he can withstand the fiery aura, then someone else will take over. Although such magic could quickly remove the problem from the way if his energy lasted until the end of the battle. This was exactly the kind of powerful fiery aura that Leo expected from Roger who appeared. And yet the damned barrier did not allow to complete what was started. It would have been better for the weaklings to simply step aside. After all, only truly strong warriors took up the task. With his ability, Logan could handle this much better. It would have been better if he hadn't said that. Then you wouldn't have to feel like an idiot in the presence of a respected knight. After such a disgrace, these two will hardly ever be able to become friends. Leo has seen enough of failed attempts. Is there another suggestion? It would be interesting to see this. The energy accumulated by the spirit was quite enough for an excellent strike. The sword was filled with this energy thanks to those sons of bitches they had cut up last time. Now it's time to put it into practice. But because of his overexcited state, the spirit had to watch his disguise. However, what was more important now was whether he would be able to destroy the barrier. Something new. All that was left was to cut through this damned barrier with one blow and move on to the next part of the plan. Incredibly, after the very first attempt, the satanic barrier was destroyed. The whole group approached the very edge of the entrance to the lair. The priest was the first to rush down, and the rest of the group followed him. It seems like no one has cleaned up here since the last time they visited. Everywhere there was the same sticky slime that Leo had encountered before in a similar place. The Undertaker was also nearby, although he did not reveal his presence. This creature could hide in the shadow of any of them and follow the group unnoticed. All 6 members of the squad were safely inside. The spirit did not miss the opportunity to remind the student that his stamina was still low. Suddenly, Barbara notices a door ahead leading down. Opening it, they see a staircase that leads to the very lair of the Satanists. She is ready to easily throw herself into the pool, as if good friends were waiting for her below, and not a bunch of fanatics. The bishop asks her to check if there is a trap set here. It was quite difficult to detect her the first time, although the girl had this ability. Beyond the stairs and outside were 2 completely different spaces. Only by going down will they be able to understand what this dungeon hides. You need to drop the talk and just go down. Soon the whole group found themselves below, and the priest continued to light their way. Leo could still sense Undertaker's presence even under his excellent camouflage in the shadows. It would be much better to feel another presence. If he were as good at recognizing traps, there wouldn't be any problems. He had not yet mastered this ability, which is why he became an easy target. What the hell was that? Where is he? A second ago there was a group of fighters here. Why is he left alone now? Every single one of them disappeared, and Leo didn't feel anyone's presence with his aura. It was like a labyrinth in parallel space. The classic deceptive technique expanded and distorted space. Everyone else must have been thrown into other parts of the labyrinth. Suddenly he notices Barbara, who was not at all afraid of being in such a place. It's strange why she acts as if nothing happened. What worries the girl most is not this, but the traveler who followed her. The Undertaker was nearby all this time, but the words that Barbara allowed herself to say were too offensive for the Undertaker to hear. This dark creature had been irritating Barbara for a long time, and there was no point in making her even more angry. The stream of dirty words she showered on the Undertaker was better left unheard by anyone. It was necessary to move forward. Barbara hopes that she was right to trust Leo from the very beginning, and that he will be able to find a way out. There was no doubt about that for a second. Such confident words need to be backed up by action. This opportunity presented itself to him as soon as they found themselves in the next room. There were several rooms in this place, but they only needed one to exit the labyrinth. Leo believes that he can't just blindly follow her around without knowing who she is. There was no need to doubt because for a long time Barbara had never made a mistake. She was the best at tracking and all her skills came from the wood elves. But if she was so gifted, why hasn't she headed the department yet? Wait a minute. At that moment, she felt the presence of enemies somewhere ahead. There were 3 of them, and there was no way to avoid them. With the help of the aura, Barbara realized that these freaks were much more dangerous than simple bandits. They were on the same level of strength as powerful monsters. It was curious which of them would kill more of these Satanists. If Leo is ready, it's time to begin. A little competition never hurt anyone. Leo will have to hurry if he wants to keep up with her. In just a second, the girl was right under the ceiling. Her aura skill could be used not only at the moment of attack. For example, she learned long ago to control her aura in order to hold herself on walls. Surprise. Yes, this idiot didn't imagine it. Hi, how are you? Only now did the Satanists notice that the enemy had gotten very close. But when the knife hit the head, it was too late to notice anything. Right on target. She threw the daggers with such speed that neither of the 2 had time to lift a finger. This place not only had weak guards, but also those who could really cause trouble. The girl was ready for this. This was not the first time she had to deal with such monsters. However, his tentacles knocked away both daggers as if they were 2 worthless trinkets. But what will he say about this? Untying a strong knot is more difficult than waving your tendrils. The daggers were merely a distraction to prepare the monster for the main fun. The Undertaker was also there and took part in this little competition. It's a shame this team didn't get together a few years ago, but better late than never. Oops, what's this? Damn, he almost killed him. Of these 3, Leo got the strongest bastard, who will have to be dealt with quite a bit. If he uses the foresight technique and hits with full force, he will have a chance to quickly deal with him. Hey, what did the mutant just throw at him? One of those sharp needles almost hit him right in the forehead. Funny, he had encountered similar attacks before, although this time the monsters had only thrown lumps of slime. But instead, right now, a whole hail of deadly thorns was heading towards Leo. Not this time. With one movement of his sword, he managed to cut through all the projectiles at once. This was a great chance to counterattack while the monster was vulnerable. That's how this boy chopped all his thorns into powder. And then he chopped the giant green creature in half. With a sword like Leo's, it's a lot easier to do. The spirit reminds that such attacks became available to him only thanks to training and control of his aura. Barbara had something to show for it too, and Leo just hoped she wouldn't want to eat it for dinner. The guy always loved seafood, but he definitely wouldn't like this monster's tentacles. Still, the fact that he single-handedly dealt with the heretic was noteworthy. At that moment, the guy noticed a strange feature while looking at the defeated monster. This strange feeling had arisen in him before, but now it was especially noticeable. After all, the sword marks left by the 2 people had nothing in common. However, the cross-section and depth of the wounds were very similar. He finally noticed it. Unsuspecting, Barbara hides the dagger behind her back in one movement. She says that only Leo helped them deal with this gang of heretics. She wasn't at all sure about the vile scum behind her. Leo's mood changed dramatically. The guy wants to see her characteristics right now. A system window with all the information about Barbara instantly appeared in front of him. She was a professional killer, but she hid her true skills all this time. She looked like just a cute mid-level warrior, but her strength was no less than that of a master. Now she could rightfully be called an older comrade. But what else was Barbara hiding from her allies? In public, she was a simple adventurer, but in secret, she was an elite assassin. The guy is currently exploring a labyrinth with one of the 3 great evils of the slums. The Undertaker had long since realized that this guy was much smarter than the others. Leo caught on the fly what no one else even thought of. It seemed that neither Logan nor even the guildmaster knew anything about this. What about the bishop? Didn't he suspect anything about her either? Leo's identity was the greatest mystery to her. But soon this secret would be revealed. She probably used any means necessary against anyone who recognized her dark side. At this moment, the girl stops Leo again, because they were about to meet an enemy. The monster could easily turn its attention to them, since the other victims were already dead. This giant, with his enormous size, would not have been full even with 10 people. But the worst thing was that his saliva was so poisonous that it burned through even stone. He was so ugly that the girl lost all desire to fight. The spirit realizes that it will be difficult for Barbara to defeat him simply by throwing daggers. They won't be able to bypass it because it will take an extra 30 minutes. Moreover, on the detour they may encounter the same monster. We'll have to fight. There was another way. If Undertaker could inflict a mortal wound on this creature, he would be doing them a great service. The Undertaker was not averse to helping with this. Leo knew he was a good guy. After all, helping a team is much more profitable than acting alone. Undertaker realizes that this guy knows a lot more about him, but that doesn't matter right now. He had spent almost all his stamina to get here, and only one last push remained. It seemed like there was someone in the distance. Leo was the first to attack. The monster's main weapon was already ready. He releases all the acid he has managed to accumulate into the guy. But even from such an onslaught, the divine sword could protect. This method proved itself well in the battle with the phantom armor. If you remember, the revived armor was the first to experience its power. The divine light blinded the eyes of even those hiding under the pile of iron. Unlike them, the giant mutant didn't even have anything to cover his eyes with. It's high time to cut his throat. Damn, the wound was too superficial. The price of such an unsuccessful attack could be high. After all, besides acid, the monster had a more serious weapon. Next time, you won't be able to dodge and you'll need to use your insight ability. You have to try this at least once. At this point, he notices Barbara, who asks him to hit the creature again. You just have to trust her. I wonder why on earth that is. Still, there was no choice, so Leo rushes forward with another attack. It was only necessary to choose the right moment for the second attack. When he gets close, 2 daggers appear next to him. The girl was planning to throw daggers at the monster when he was distracted by Leo. Great move. Now it's time to finish him off. Try to dodge. Surprisingly, this big guy turned out to be much faster than Leo expected. It is not possible to kill him, although both of Barbara's daggers hit his appendages. It's clear that he's in a lot of pain, but he still keeps fighting. Although Barbara left the biggest surprise for the mutant for last, Leo had never seen such a trick with knives before. The monster's movements slow down as if he is afraid of something. It was no surprise, because daggers appeared all over the floor, as if growing out of it. This was the main trick that Mr. Undertaker had in store for the overgrown boy. There was only a second left before the monster would feel all his love. A moment later, Undertaker's daggers turn into long spears, piercing the mutant from all sides. The monster's roar could be heard even at the other end of the dungeon. In this form, he would no longer be able to scare anyone. This was the joint ability that they so carefully hid from everyone. After all, the Undertaker was acting in concert with her, which meant they had a lot in common. This really fits the image of the Undertaker, who is not at all embarrassed by corpses. For a hastily assembled group, they made a pretty good team, right? Undoubtedly. Throwing daggers at mutant tails was incredibly cool, although compared to the attack of that vile bastard behind her, it was simply nothing. Barbara had no idea that the killer possessed such great fighting skills. It was probably not for nothing that he set his sights on the position of King of the Slums. So, let's continue. Yes, it's time to hit the road without losing momentum. Soon the girl notices another obstacle. How many more of these Satanists will we meet along the way? There were 8 heretics in the next corridor at once, and this time he would have to sweat. There was no one on their team who was better at assessing risks than Barbara. She understands that each of them is so strong that the battle could turn into a real massacre. Leo decides to wait for the rest of the team to join them here. But if they are late or miss each other on the way, then it will all be over. It turns out that they will have to try their luck again. Suddenly something changed. Let's see what's here. The sound came from somewhere above, where concrete debris was falling from the ceiling. It is clear that this was a shockwave caused by the collision of enormous forces. Surely someone from their team has already entered into battle with the Satanists. If so, they may be in danger. Although this bunch of sectarians still remained in the same place, their guesses are confirmed because 4 of them go to help their comrades. This gave them more options. It remains to be decided whether Leo should go to the rescue of his comrades or attack the enemies right here. It was a difficult choice. Still, it would have been better to team up with others, otherwise the team would have had to fight on 2 fronts. He decides to gather all his strength into a fist and strike at the enemies on one of the fronts. His arguments were valid. Could it be that Barbara decided to take a little rest while the team cleared this place? The girl was already using her next ability. Her aura allowed her to scan the area, identifying the best path. Then she ordered to follow her straight down the corridor. Her amazing extrasensory abilities went beyond human capabilities. Fortunately, she was not mistaken. However, the next second, a loud male scream was heard at the end of the corridor. What the hell is going on there? Was Roger really impaled by the tentacles of a giant monster? They see Roger in front of them, who for some reason has become separated from the rest of the group. He became easy prey for the creatures that swarmed in the area. Leo will never forgive the Satanists for this. He is ready to rush into an attack alone, even if he sees a whole bunch of these bastards in front of him. But instead of a crowd of mutants, only one strong opponent appeared before him. The main thing was what was happening to Barbara now. The girl was less lucky, because 2 were approaching her at once. Those who were already lying on the floor were quickly finished off by Sir Roger. The spirit reminded him that the battle with the enemy that was approaching Leo was much more important now. He was much stronger than the 2 cultists next to Barbara, and this fight was much more important. It was necessary to cast aside all extraneous thoughts and fully concentrate on this mutant. However, he left no time to think and immediately attacked. Blue Mist was an ability that brought victory many times. The boy risked turning to dust just by touching this magical darkness. That bastard was a summoner. The heretics were divided into 2 categories, and the first monster on their way was a common mutant. But summoners could summon beings or matter from other dimensions, and that was a bigger problem. Neither of them had even a shred of common sense, since they themselves asked for a meeting with the divine power. Leo could easily arrange it. After the first blow, it became clear that everything was not so simple. The summoner stated that Leo's sword was a physical object and could not affect spiritual powers. This meant that it could be cut as easily as a rope. No matter what kind of aura power was put into the guy's weapon, it couldn't destroy the satanic technique. Where does such confidence come from? I wonder how this freak will talk after Leo starts a real fight. It is no coincidence that this type of monster was called the Summoner, because it never fought alone. A second later, Leo saw a giant puppet, which was the Summoner's main weapon. Although it could be cut down as easily as any other monster. Is he still here? Then let it hang for a bit. It will be better for everyone. But this was far from the end of the battle. The monster stated that even such an attack was not capable of killing him in one blow. He hoped that regeneration would quickly heal the wound. However, even after a few seconds, the blood continued to flow, and this boy was still here. The divine sword turned out to be much more powerful. He realized this too late. It remains to be seen what was happening to Barbara right now. The girl was in perfect order, scattering her rivals to the sides. 10 out of 10, Barbara. And what's happening to Sir Roger right now? By that time, the knight was barely holding on, because his wound was too serious. He tells them not to waste time and go look for the others while he takes care of his wound. Barbara understands that it is almost impossible to heal such damage. There is only one end left for him. Even Barbara's aura is not strong enough to help the unfortunate knight. But what if we try to use divine power? The old man could have held out for another hour, but they wouldn't have had time to return during that time. Leo examines the wound carefully, hoping that the sword is good for more than just combat. He grips the blade's hilt tightly, hoping it will grant him energy. At the very beginning, the spirit was against it, but there was no choice. The guy needs to repeat after him word for word and activate the holy healing art. Then there is a chance that the wound will heal. He begins to repeat the magic spell that the invisible spirit whispers. A moment later, a divine light is born between his palm and Roger's wound. If he believes in his own powers, the healing can really work. Incredibly, Roger feels the wound gradually healing. Even the sacred reception of the bishop is not capable of performing such miracles. The wound on Roger's body healed so quickly it was as if it had never been there. He thanks his savior, hoping that after this mission they will serve side by side. He didn't expect such an offer. You need to pull yourself together. Roger promises to keep the secret that Leo is within these walls. One can only hope that none of them reveal the secret of Leo's divine power. I would like to believe it. Finally, he wishes them good luck, because now his strength is enough to complete the healing. As Barbara sets out to find her comrades, she realizes that the problems are piling up like a snowball. One of these misunderstandings stood behind Barbara. The girl abruptly stops Leo. She wants to know if everything Sir Roger said after his healing was true. It turns out that Leo's aura attribute is the sun, and the guy has already mastered the sacred technique. In addition, he is an excellent user of aura weapons, which cannot be learned without a spiritual mentor. However, he was not a candidate for the post of cardinal. If this is so, then Barbara herself would like to become his student. Perhaps in the future, when they become a little closer friends, he will share a couple of secrets with her. And now I want to know if all the guys from the Order are as strong as Barbara. Usually all men fulfill her requests if she chooses the right words and something else. But it's better to put off all jokes for later and not dodge the question. If she doesn't want to talk about the main thing, it's worth leaving this conversation and starting to look for the rest. Great idea. There was no need to worry about the guys in the group. She states that Leo will understand everything himself when they get there. The guys start searching for their group again. Ahead of him, Leo notices another cultist who has already been eliminated. The bishop and Logan made a great team and quickly dealt with those bastards. Leo once again realizes that this priest is not so simple. Together with these two killers, he cleared the dungeon as cold-bloodedly as they did. He was clearly hiding something all this time. Now, Roger's movements were restricted, which meant they had to decide what to do with the knight. He was seriously wounded in the last battle and will need at least 2 hours to recover. There's nothing to be done. We'll have to go forward in 5. On the way, Logan asks Barbara to give him at least one valuable artifact. But the girl believes that the street scumbag is not worthy of talking to her in such a tone. Say it again, beauty. Luckily, the bishop interrupted this stupid argument, quickly dispersing everyone to their places. He ordered Leo to remain at the end of the line to securely protect the rear. Logan realized that using this newcomer as a trump card would be foolish. Besides, it was unclear what they were supposed to do with this Undertaker. If no one objects, Logan would like Undertaker to join the team. He actually helped them get back together, so he deserves it. In any case, that bastard won't listen to anyone, so it's better to leave him. In this, they were similar. Ahead, Leo noticed a strange glow and felt the presence of dark magic. The air was filled with a foul energy that could be felt a mile away. It looked like a portal leading to a secret hideout of the cultists. With his cleansing ability, the bishop destroyed all the harmful energy. After that, he ordered to follow him straight into the dark portal. The whole group rushed forward. In the darkness, the first thing Leo noticed was an unpleasant sensation. Apart from the aura, he couldn't see or hear anything. It felt like he was stuck in a swamp that was gradually pulling him into a quagmire. But a second later, he got out of there. The bishop realized that the transition through the portal had gone according to plan, and that he needed to move on. However, their way was blocked by local guards. Now they were surrounded by a whole crowd of Satanists who were waiting for them here. It's a pity we had to wait for you for so long. It was a great honor for the preacher that they visited his humble abode. However, he didn't expect these guys to be so slow. What is he talking about? Wait, is this really the same sectarian preacher? The bishop had already met him in the distant past. Leo also realized that this was the same preacher who led the heretics. It turns out that evil also had its own clear hierarchy. Those who gradually spread the satanic teaching eventually became leaders of heretical groups. It was the preacher who led these sectarians and wore the distinctive sign of the leader. The red emblem on his forehead meant that he was their leader and was considered the harbinger of true evil. Today is truly a wonderful day. However, the bishop had completely different miracles in store for him. If the preacher starts to summon the dark god, the bishop can personally smash his vile face with his mace, and everyone else will support him. Logan stated that the cultists' ritual was not going very well, since nothing had happened yet. But the process had already started, and there were only a few seconds left until its end. The spirit replied that this was a lie, and they still had time to fix everything. The principle of summoning the city devourer was similar to fishing, which required bait. The life force was the bait that lured the monster out of its darkness. They still had time to stop the call before the fish took the bait. No one knew exactly when the monster would find the bait and take the bait. There could be a whole hour in reserve or just a few seconds. It all came down to a race against time. In order not to get lost in the darkness of evil, the bishop asked the goddess to send down a soft light upon them. With the help of heavenly power, it was possible to get rid of the Satanists faster. Everyone who was in this place immediately noticed the light above. For many, this light was more death than salvation, especially for those who were involved in dark deeds here. These two monsters were the first to be caught by the light. This energy was enough to contain the satanic summoning technique. For a time, this could stop the preacher's satanic technology and delay the appearance of the devourer of cities. Barbara realized that a pair of daggers could enhance this effect. The effect was noticeable immediately after the blades hit the mutants' heads. In addition to the divine light, the bishop still had a heavy mace in reserve. The preacher had not yet entered the battle and was just waiting for the right moment to activate his magic. It was necessary to destroy the circle before these bastards could use the dark power. This way, there was no way to seal the spell permanently, if that was what the bishop was counting on. This spell was sent down by the devil himself and was created to fight against the forces of light. And if they were going to play big, then the preacher had something to answer for. How about 2 giant mutants? This answer was quite convincing. The spirit warned that the preacher had created only a chimera, and that there was no need to fear it so much. It was an imperfect creature, so it would soon destroy itself. No one doubted that Logan would be the first to want to test his strength. The monster was an excellent target for training. He easily pierced his soft body with one blow. What the hell? It seems that the bodies of these creatures are made of the same acid that was in the saliva of the giant dog. It would have been better to attack them with daggers from a distance. Daggers cannot penetrate poisonous armor, and these creatures have no pain reflexes. At this rate, their strength will run out much faster than they can collect their thoughts. I wonder what other way there is to get to the core of the ritual. The spirit warned that one should not let these creatures see one another, since the existence of a hero only makes their task easier. The situation can only be changed by catching them off guard without revealing yourself. Leo's role was to deliver the finishing blow. They were a little late. This is exactly what the bishop was talking about when he urged everyone to begin the attack. Barbara had suspected before that this place was filled with darkness, but she hadn't thought it was that deep. The bright red flash in the center of the ritual site could only mean one thing. Finally, the preacher managed to complete the ritual and reveal the evil spirit to the world. The devourer of cities answered their call and was ready to descend to Earth. The heart in my chest began to beat even harder. Leo felt that this sinister force did not bode well. For the first time in a long time, he felt an all-consuming horror that he had not experienced before. The sacred technique might work, although it would be a little difficult. Thanks to the moon that the bishop created, he had an idea. To completely recreate the symbol of the goddess, both the sun and the moon are needed. This combination of bishop and hero allowed for the use of a complex sacred move. I should have read some things first. The spell was already ready, and now it was Leo's turn. The guy began to read out loud what he saw in front of him. The bishop immediately recognized the words of the goddess's first song. He was not mistaken, because it was this spell that was supposed to connect the two elements. Barbara felt a divine light fill the room, and she felt warmer. At this time, Leo was still reading the last lines. Soon, there was hope that the spell would succeed. With his arms spread out to the sides, he prepared to receive this divine gift. The guy then pointed it at the vile creatures. No monster could stand against such a weapon. It was the perfect counter to the satanic techniques that the spirit spoke of. It's time to act. And if any of them had any doubts, now there is no reason for it. There was no point in getting angry. It seems someone threatened to destroy everyone. If the preacher had any hope of winning, he had to come up with something. Otherwise, all his creations will turn to ashes just as quickly as the other monsters. In the end, the same fate will befall the preacher himself. The effects of the divine light began to manifest immediately. It was the heretic's last resort against a force he had not expected to appear. He sacrificed the valuable lives of other heretics to stop a group of mindless bastards. Suddenly, he began to transform into a huge mutant, absorbing the powers of other monsters. The prophecy is coming true. Leo looked ahead, realizing that the main enemy was only gaining strength. In this guise, he was even more terrible, and hoped that the worthless humans would quickly bend their knees. The devourer of cities granted him such great power that he could now fight alone. If he was capable of this under the influence of the sanctuary, then what would happen next? Logan wasn't going to wait. In this, the bishop was no different from him. The two seemed to be competing to see who could kill the most mutants. Logan unleashed a series of blows on the monster. It was too early to call it a day. Now it was his turn to show what he was capable of. A wave of energy shattered the entire room, throwing the hunters aside. Even Logan and Bishop couldn't resist. The priest still tried to do something. The difference in size was too great, and at that moment it decided everything. The only means against him was again the holy sword. The best thing would be to finish off the overgrown one with one blow. He was filled to the brim with power, and in this state he was very dangerous. The worst part was, the rest of the team couldn't help anymore. Something had to be done while only a couple of partners were still on their feet. Bishop and Logan were no longer among them. But what about Barbara? The girl was also seriously injured, but she could still resist. Leo quickly ran to her to check if she was okay. She admitted that she did not know how to defeat this mutant, on whom no techniques worked, but there must be another way. Leo asked her to help by lending him her magical power for a while. He intended to sneak up behind him and destroy the magic circle to interrupt the ritual. Barbara believed that this was impossible, and that he would not be able to break through the monster's defense by going behind its back. Such a breakthrough can be made through space. He really wants to tell everything he knows. The guy can't take it anymore and announces that Barbara is the Undertaker, which means she can do it. Wow, what a reaction. It's strange why she decided to lead a double life, but if they fail the mission right now, everything will die. Suddenly Barbara jumps back. Something's wrong. If he found out her little secret, this boy could become a big problem in the future. That's how it happened. Okay, he needs to know something. She did indeed hide her true identity, but she didn't want to hurt anyone, and now I have to burn with shame. It was unlikely that this was sincere remorse, judging by her smirk. You don't usually hold a dagger to your friends' throats. Women's secrets are always shrouded in darkness, and sometimes they can be deadly. At this time, the bishop still cannot come to his senses. Logan had already managed to get to his feet, hoping for his support. If he continues to rest, they will all die. It's bad when there are such weaklings on the team, but it's good that these two finally came to an agreement and rushed into the attack. Here, the girl intended to leave Leo and go her own way. If Barbara follows him, the monster will immediately figure out their plan. Finally, the guy asked her to stay alive. He needs Barbara. Is that strange? Even if there were dark secrets in this girl's life. With her help, Leo wanted to quickly move through space. It only took one move to find myself behind. Luckily, he succeeded, and soon Leo found himself at the right point. Now there are no obstacles between him and the portal. The core of the ritual to summon the devourer of cities was closer than ever. All it took was to cut the clot of life force and everything would be over. Perhaps this was the result of the sacrifice of more than 10,000 lives. It's time to put an end to this. Leo would never forgive him for something like that, even if he didn't have the sacred blade in his hands. And yet he was in a hurry. It was not worth underestimating the power of a monster that was fueled by the demon itself. He had foreseen this outcome in advance, and was prepared for a counterattack. But instead of a core, the monster pierces Leo himself. It was the worst thing his mentor could see. The monster offers him to surrender while he still has a chance. Everything could have ended completely differently. The boy was raised high above the monster's head, living out his last moments. Who prompted him to take such a desperate action? You should have told everyone about your plan in advance, instead of going alone. The giant declares that their turn will soon come. Just like this guy, each of them will be hanging on his tentacle. Leo is still conscious, although his vision is vague. He struggles to hear the words the spirit is trying to tell him. After all, they agreed to go to the Titan Mountains together when everything was over. He simply cannot die without fulfilling his promise. Images from the past suddenly appear before Leo's eyes. He remembered the face of every person who had once extended a helping hand to him. And if he wants to keep them alive, the guy must overcome death itself. Gathering his strength, he firmly grabs the mutant's tentacle. A second later, he is already free. It was very brave of him. After the tentacles were torn out, blood immediately gushed from Logan's wound. Having fallen from such a height, he risked remaining crippled forever. It was very painful. Gradually, the guy gets to his feet. No one expected such strength of spirit, and even his mentor was impressed. At the very beginning of his training, the spirit saw a simple boy in front of him. But now he has become a real warrior. And if the monster does not recognize his power, he must prove it in action. Looking at him from afar, Leo understands that by standing firm today, he will save the whole world. By this act, he left the bishop no other choice. The guy had already done everything he could, and now it was the turn of other deities. The very deity who had been talking to him all this time was looking at him. Nice to meet you. The Big Dipper sword personally comes to Leo to defeat the mutant together. He had never done this before, but today was a special day. Is it possible to calmly watch a mere mortal fight with a demon's messenger? especially when he fights so desperately that his example can inspire the gods. With the first blow of his blade, Leo cuts off the giant's head. There should be a body lying somewhere nearby. Wow, the head can talk? For some reason, the overgrown child's regeneration didn't work, as if the blade's magic had deprived him of this ability. But even with its head cut off, the monster was still alive. Although this problem can be easily fixed if Leo lands a control blow. Just a minute ago, instead of fear, there was only rage in the mutant's eyes. But it's hard to scare someone when you can't even find your own head. Due to the injury, the destructive force was not sufficient to strike again. There was still a deity nearby who was ready to help with this. In another situation, Leo would have owed money, but today everything was free. One can use as much divine power as he wants. The last thing that remained of the monster was cut in half. Now he intends to drag everyone along with him, since he will have to die anyway. In its place, a huge funnel appears, which sucks in everything around it. Leo knew from the start that this would happen. He was just waiting for the right moment to give the mutant a good kick in the ass. And if that's all he can do, then we can begin. The deity warns that one must look carefully and not lose sight of the details. The whole essence of the Big Dipper sword is based on the connection between the stars, and at first it will be difficult to cope with its aura. But if you redirect the repulsive force of the technique to the holy sword, the move will be deadly. The offer was tempting, but it was worth testing it in practice. Just for this purpose, a suitable target was found in the form of a huge freak. With this power, Leo prepares to deliver the final blow. He knows that if he destroys the core, everything will end. It worked. The life force core was destroyed, and the monster's main source of energy was now gone. And along with him, the mutant himself was sucked into the abyss. The portal sucked him in like a vacuum cleaner at full power. And at the very bottom of the portal, one little surprise awaited him. Now he himself became the bait that he prepared for Leo. The preacher sacrificed himself for his dark god. Yes, that's a sad ending. Immediately after this, the spirit leaves the body of its disciple, taking on its usual appearance. Thanks for that. Looking at him, the bishop tries to understand what happened. This guy did a great job, but he clearly wasn't doing it alone. Suddenly, the sword fell from his hands and a wild cry of pain was heard throughout the dungeon. The bishop reminds the boy that he shouldn't waste his energy on empty talk. Although he can still help with something. A little more and a big disaster would have happened, but he could still heal. They dealt with the city devourer in time and now it's all behind them. Barbara owed her a debt if she remembered the terms of the agreement. Logan defeated the monster, but was unable to obtain any of the artifacts. The city devourer's summoning was stopped, and the preacher was sucked into his own portal. Leo warns that after what happened, he may lose consciousness. It's good that he said this in advance. Everything is fine. Nothing will happen to him. He has fulfilled his main purpose, and now all efforts will go towards his healing. But first, everyone had to get out of here. After the portal was destroyed, the building began to crumble into pieces. Roger was one of the first to realize the danger of the situation. It was time to finish the analysis and get out of there as quickly as possible. Watching this from above, the deity understands that danger was very close. Leo's mentor came to the rescue in time. The crisis has passed, and the hero continues on his way. Today's fight will be a good lesson for Leo. I even had to use divine power without removing the seal. Leo decided to attack the monster alone without the support of his mentor. But if he continues to act like a hero, it could end badly for him. The next day, the entire guild knew what their newcomer had done. A separate room was allocated for Leo in the infirmary. The guy couldn't come to his senses for a long time. Opening his eyes, he realizes that it's all over. Nobody told him that he would be sent to the infirmary. Leo spends some time trying to remember the events of last night. It was not a dream, and he really did destroy the main monster single-handedly. Without the help of his team, he still wouldn't have managed. I still remember the moment when his life was hanging by a thread. At that moment, he made the right decision and tore the damned appendage out of his body. And then the incredible happened and the divine power ended up in his hands. Wait, the spirit actually entered his physical body? He used to be a funny blue ball, but at that moment he revealed his true form. Looking around, he realized that he was in the infirmary. But where did his mentor disappear to? He usually showed up on time, but now something had changed. This appearance of the spirit was very different from all its previous appearances. He sees his mentor in front of him again, although he constantly disappears from sight. The spirit asks Leo to listen to him carefully, because right in front of him he sees only a hologram. If Leo sees this message, it means that the guy has already come to his senses and feels okay. But enough jokes, it's time to get to the main point. For a whole month, the spirit will not be able to speak to him and nothing can be done about it. By coming to Leo's aid in his true form, he broke all the taboos. He will be able to resume communication soon, once he has sorted out some details. You only need to survive for 1 month without his help. The spirit hopes that at the next meeting the student will be able to demonstrate the ideal formation of the aura, although it would be better for him to conserve his strength until he fully recovers. Leo's body still had a limit that the boy would only be able to overcome with time. Until then, you need to work on controlling your abilities, which also need training. That was the end of his message. At the end, the spirit wished him a great day. Great start, just a shame the message was so short. By the way, this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. How cunning this heavenly spirit is. Will Leo be able to use his power this month now? The technique he showed in the last fight was truly incredible. If only he could use it without the help of a mentor, he would have no equal. When Leo's head was clear of extraneous thoughts, his eyes became transparent as glass. At that moment, a completely different world appeared before his eyes, and the monster no longer seemed so strong. Even the ability to see through the distortions of space felt completely different. Only with the help of aura can the power of the sword technique contained within it be fully revealed. He only hoped that the spirit would arrive on time as promised. The guy himself had other things to do. The mood was not spoiled, but for some reason his words echoed with pain in the head. At that moment there was a knock on the door. It was the bishop who came to the chamber to visit the new hero. Now many will want to show their devotion to this guy. After all, he was able to do what no one else could do. The battle with the heretics ended 3 days ago, and life changed instantly. Almost all of the guards had to be destroyed, with the exception of a few. Those who did not surrender to justice were quickly eliminated. During the mission, 56 people were killed, and more than 100 were injured. Evil was unable to realize its insidious plans, and that was the main thing. Although the bishop regretted that he did not save more lives, we managed to gather information about the city devourer, because this creature was truly terrible. All team members did a good job and saved the city from the main threat, but something was bothering him. The bishop seemed to sense that a new era had arrived. Now a smile appeared on his face. He understood that without a new hero, creating a rescue team would be useless. Unexpected confession. There is nothing surprising here. Having seen the guy's actions during the operation, he was finally convinced of this. In his youth, the bishop was a member of the Knightly Order of the Iron Castle and led the ranks of the knights. That's why, instead of preaching to the monster, he chose to wield a heavy mace. No matter how powerful the solar aura is, it is difficult to cut down an enemy with the same ease. But at that moment, with the very first blow, he performed a real miracle. It was hard to argue, even though the guy didn't know some things. From the very beginning, the bishop admired his courage, knowing that only he was capable of taking such a risk. The blow dealt at the end proved decisive. The bishop, like no one else, knew about the technique of the Big Dipper sword in Leo's hands. This technique was the final blow that put an end to it. Just a few days ago, he was sure that such a deity could not appear on Earth. Does this mean that his little friend is not telling him something? Now Leo could no longer avoid the answer. The bishop remembered that the sword in Leo's hands had suddenly disappeared. This was his friend's main secret, which could be revealed right now. The guy pulled out a sacred blade from his hand, which was securely hidden from prying eyes. The priest saw a real miracle. No mortal had ever held in his hand that blade that towered over Leo's head. Amazing. He fell to his knees. The boy had to watch as the priest prayed to him as if he were a divine icon. For the first time in his life, he was so embarrassed and asked for forgiveness that he had not recognized it before. This hero intends to continue to hide his identity from everyone. But the bishop was allowed into the secret. The seal on the holy sword had not yet been removed, and the sword itself did not yet fully belong to Leo. Only after this will he be able to accept praise without shame. But until then, he needs to train. These were the words of a true hero. In that case, he will also keep everything a secret. If Leo allows, he would like to share this secret with one more person. I wonder who it is with. We were talking about one person who could be called a saint. Although the handover ceremony is not yet complete, such news could lift her spirits. If we were talking about a saint, the guy didn't mind. Wonderful. At that moment, they hear approaching footsteps. Both turn towards the door, greeting the guest. Who could it be? Barbara was also in the infirmary and went to see Leo after checking on Roger. For a second, the atmosphere changed. Her arrival was too unexpected, and she could have come later. Leo had completely forgotten that they had recently been on the same mission. At that moment, he discovered that Barbara's true face was that of the Undertaker. The Undertaker was rightfully considered one of the main villains of the slums and the strongest warrior. But why was she here at the same time as the bishop? This should have been asked a little later, and now one could simply enjoy how caringly the others treated Leo. The guy realizes that the priest could also know the secret of Barbara's true appearance. He must have recognized it before anyone else thanks to his aura. After all, it is not only the attribute of Leo that is capable of resonating and identifying interference. The priest's moon also has the ability to notice what is hidden from the eyes. Within the first seconds of their meeting, the bishop realized who Barbara really was. Leo was only able to discover this after jumping through space. Now there were no secrets. It is unlikely that the bishop would have condemned Leo for not telling him anything. Moreover, it was not his secret. From the very beginning, he was not eager to cooperate with the killers. But Barbara remained on the battlefield until the very end and earned trust. If this girl were a cold-blooded killer, such a choice would be impossible for her. And yet she stood up to the monster along with everyone else. All this time she watched them from afar, hoping that they would understand her. We can return to this conversation. First, the bishop wants to hear her story in all its details. The main question was why she became an assassin who carried out various requests. It's a pity, it all started so well. Barbara believed that this issue was already a thing of the distant past. She suddenly asks who is the most hated person in the world. It's strange. Why did she ask about this? The most hated person of all is an orphan, and one of mixed race at that. The past that she decided to reveal turned out to be not a simple story at all. Once upon a time, she stood several steps lower than any tramp. Barbara was one of those people who faced all sorts of dangers in the slums. One day she was saved by a man who extended his hand to her, but this hand was filled with evil to the very tips of its fingers. As a result, the girl awakened her talent, killed the scoundrel, and received her nickname. Soon, the mercenary organization became stronger, and the girl's status became much higher. Eventually, she reached the second level, and only the boss was above her. For the boss himself, this was bad news. Only by eliminating her competitor was Barbara able to rise to first place. After clearing the entire organization of trash, the girl freed the unfortunate orphans. It was only recently that she began working as an adventurer that the opportunity to live a normal life arose. It's a pity that her deception was revealed on the last mission. She wanted to believe, but doubts remained. It's unlikely that she will be able to escape from the Holy Church after her identity was revealed. But Barbara had provided invaluable assistance in the fight against the demonic messenger and deserved leniency. It was a forbidden move. It was worth finding out the opinion of the new hero. It was specifically about Leo. He fought side by side with her just 3 days ago, and his word matters. Is he really going to leave the decision up to a newbie? This behavior was quite logical. After all, the sentencing is entrusted not to Leo at all, but to a new hero. It is he who the boys consider a hero after that battle in the dungeon. Besides, Barbara did not become a killer by her own free will. But the way she fought evil deserved respect. So there is no need to point your sword at her. It looks like Barbara has her chance. Leo is ready to offer her 2 options to choose from. He promises to respect any choice she makes and support her. She is still sure that this boy cannot make such decisions. But if the bishop himself entrusted him with this role, can there be any doubt? The priest knew what he was getting into and would not do anything stupid. The saint will certainly support him in this. Although Leo understands that he also has skeletons in the closet. Everything turned out more interesting than he thought. Barbara will be very useful in the future if she doesn't fall back into her old ways. Suddenly, Leo decides to start with himself and reveals his true appearance to the girl. She probably immediately recognized the seal that was on his hand. It was impossible to confuse it with anything, because we were talking about the divine blade. A week later, Leo left the infirmary and left the guild. He was grateful to everyone who supported him. Bernard was glad to see this hero again. It was not for nothing that he trusted Leo. Although at first, the guy didn't seem like that to him. If all the young people in the country were like Leo, she would be in no danger. It's always nice to hear something like that addressed to you. There was no need for extra praise. Only Leo knew how much remained to be done. Barbara was already waiting for him at the very exit, hiding behind a column. Leo had no doubt that they would meet again. Now the girl looked at him completely differently. He has matured greatly. Immediately after being discharged, the guy already met with the head of the guild. He promised him a promotion. However, Leo had already refused, although it was a little awkward. Is he an idiot? By the way, Bernard offered to introduce him to the Lord. But Leo refused this too. In short, the guy refused everything that was offered. The question is the same. Is he an idiot or not? It's a pity that the hero may also turn out to be a fool. Why throw away your winning lottery ticket without thinking? If he had taken advantage of this chance, his role in the decisive battle would have become known to everyone. In that case, other groups would learn about Leo's true appearance. Hearing this, Barbara began to suspect something. She asks directly if this information is related to Leo's latest proposal. Last time, he offered her an alliance under the banner of the Holy Sword. The girl asked for a little time to think, but now the answer is ready to burst from her lips. This was the perfect place to give him that answer. For the elves, forests, and trees are as sacred as the gods in the sky. That proposal was more of a question about whether the girl wanted to come out of the darkness. Before accepting this offer, she wanted to have a frank conversation. She feels no remorse for the blood she shed. The death and suffering of those people gave her the opportunity to change her life for the better. She hopes that this never happens again. For a while, Leo listens in silence to the story of her life. As a child, she experienced a lot in the slums. Today, she was ready to devote herself to serving the common goal. Under Leo's leadership, Barbara vows to go all the way. He had never heard such a revelation in his life. Well done, boy. However, it was worth getting up from their knees, because from the very beginning they were equal. On that day, the Undertaker left her soul forever. By the way, I need to find out what's going on with Logan now. Leo hadn't heard any news from him lately, but the news about Logan is unlikely to please him. The day after the decisive battle, he fled with his gang. Well, that's just like him. There was nothing unexpected about the escape itself. After the operation, the slums were almost half destroyed and Logan had no choice. Despite his accomplishments, he would still have to stand trial for his crimes. The guy simply cannot escape punishment from the Knights of the Holy Iron Castle. Even if the odds were not in his favor, he could have escaped a little later. But this smart guy chose the safest option. Although on the day of our first meeting, I wanted to seem the bravest. and he became very angry when Leo rejected his offer of help. However, now it was no longer important at all. It remained to be seen what Barbara planned to do after this conversation. How will this girl's life change once she gets rid of her past? Turning to Leo, she awaits his advice as her new leader. Now she will call this guy a hero, because that is exactly what she considered him to be from the very beginning. Well, there is one plan. Leo was about to go on a journey to the Titan Mountains, which he had agreed upon with the spirit. The spirit is now asleep and is not in contact. He spoke about some spirit? No. Leo wanted to say that it was about an old friend of his, that's all. Barbara didn't like this evasive answer, as if she was being led by the nose. This girl has heightened senses, and it is difficult to hide anything from her. Thanks to this ability, she was able to find the right path. The girl also had other rare fighting abilities. Even Leo couldn't keep up with her that day in the dungeon. For a while, some secrets will have to be hidden even from her. But comrades in arms must trust each other. And yet, there are enough revelations for today. It will take another 2 to 3 weeks before the spirit awakens. Until that time, the guy will hone his skills in using aura. He eagerly awaits his mentor's reaction when he appears. Meanwhile, life in the 13th district was gradually getting better. Thanks to the church and the bishop personally, they had food supplies. Many poor people remembered the priest with kind words. After all, thanks to him, their children received food and the most basic necessities. These people had a hard time during the evacuation of the area. I especially felt sorry for the little children who had to go through this. Now it was worth going to the temple and thanking the rector. Without the church, they could not hope for such mercy. Luckily, the church was nearby. Many residents have already visited this old building more than once, and each time they felt their closeness to God. But today was a special day when the prayer was replaced by a loud explosion. Could it be that the devil himself decided to destroy the shrine? At the same time, Leo and Barbara decided to practice. The girl still had her signature dagger in her hands. She had already used this dagger more than once on her missions, although today it was important not to overdo it. It was difficult to follow her movements. She could appear from behind a second after the jump. Even the ability to pay attention might not help Leo. Their levels were approximately equal, but the boy possessed divine powers, although the girl moved a little better. Still, Leo deserves credit for his efforts. Well, that's small consolation. Hearing this from a girl is more offensive than any praise. Wait a minute, where did she go? And why did 2 Barbaras appear instead of 1? We definitely can't do without an all-seeing eye here. This technique allowed him to recognize Barbara's illusions. At first glance, it might have seemed as if he was fighting 2 opponents at once, but only one of them is real. He manages to find her even after all these tricks. Great trick, isn't it? Yes, she moved faster, but she underestimated her opponent a little. If Barbara keeps showing the same number, she will never win. Or will he win? I wonder how many more copies this girl can create. Just recently there were 2 of them, but now there is a whole crowd. Among all these copies, it will be difficult to recognize the original, especially if they are approaching from all sides. Attention, late, and it hurts a little. Thus, out of 102 competitions, the girl won exactly 102 times. A worthy result. She explains that Leo failed to take into account the open terrain on which this battle was fought. In a confined space, he would have an advantage, but in open terrain, he simply has no chance. That's why he was able to defeat that giant dog in the dungeon so easily. The duel against the guards was also within his power. Leo believes that he has achieved significant growth by destroying several strong opponents at once. But the gap in strength with Barbara was colossal, even when she wasn't fighting at full strength. Maybe she will still find a few words of praise for Leo. The last attack was pretty good. Even a top-notch assassin would have a hard time facing Leo and his ability to see illusions. Wait a minute, did she praise him or humiliate him? Aura is indeed a powerful weapon, but it is worth training to control it. The tangible aura is capable of cutting even iron and crushing stones into small pieces. She is unable to defeat enemies who dodge her attacks. Most killers very often walk 1 step behind the victim. Barbara also used this technique, hitting targets from a distance. She admits that the fundamentals of Leo's technique were quite stable. Leo's excellent attention is not easily deceived by illusions, but this is not enough to win. If this had been a real fight, he would not have had time to make his attack. This means that Leo should think about how to masterfully deceive the enemy. But there's no need to worry when you have a partner like that. Barbara didn't know who Leo's first mentor was, but he must have been a real genius. If the spirit heard this, he would be absolutely delighted. Leo's attacks lacked creativity. He doesn't have to repeat all of Barbara's tricks, but there are a few things he could learn. A few different cards up one's sleeve never hurt anyone. If he adds some unusual attacks to his arsenal, Leo will become much stronger. But nothing could be more unusual than the giant paw of a monster on the shoulder. Especially if a second ago there was a beautiful girl standing in this place. That's better. This look suits her very well. Soon they got down to a little theory. Last time they focused on the relationship between an attribute and a teaching method. Aura is a force that is created by filtering the body of its owner. The owner needs to reveal his essence. This is the only way fear will not take over in a moment of danger. To train your aura means to make its essence purer and more powerful. It's similar to training the fire attribute aura. By exhausting himself to the very limit, the owner brings his aura to a state of the purest consistency. Depending on the attribute, the difficulty of training also varies. The attribute of the sun symbolizes the goddess of the era in which the hero lives. Is she hinting at something now? I'd like to hear what comes to Leo's mind, but it's better for her not to know about it. Much of what the girl said was familiar. Drawing some parallels, Leo realizes that his aura might have a similar attribute. He feels a boiling aura flowing through his veins. By an effort of will, it was necessary to attract the flow and collect it on the tips of the fingers. An incredible heat burned my palm. That was exactly what she said. A second later, a small ball, as hot as the sun itself, lit up above them. After all, it was just a theory, but Leo immediately managed to bring it to life. Such heat could easily incinerate its owner. There was no point in practicing something he wasn't completely sure about yet. Experience comes gradually, and Leo still had a little time left. Barbara was willing to wait as long as it took. What is she talking about? If we were talking about the aura, then there are no problems with this. What if we are talking about something else? For example, about the hot flow of aura, which gradually spreads throughout the body, like blood through vessels. In the middle of the lesson, the bishop came into their room. He arrived a little at the wrong time. It seems this sly fellow has an idea of everything. Then what the hell is he doing here? Since they were already together, it was time to talk business, right? In the hands of the bishop, Leo saw a sealed letter from the Holy Virgin. It was about that very Holy Virgin whose coming the priest had been waiting for. The succession ceremony was taking place, which meant that the appearance of the saint was near. It would be interesting to know what the saint looks like in a human body. Luckily, that moment was much closer than they thought. After some time, the appearance of the saint was marked by a bright flash at the very top point. Thanks to the ministers of the church, the appearance of her physical body on earth became possible. More than 10 bishops served for a month, day and night. During the succession ceremony, she was able to break through the power of the former saint. On that day, the most powerful Holy Virgin was born, who swore to support the hero. With her help, Leo will be able to fulfill his destiny to the delight of the gods. After the ritual, something strange happened. The mace was so heavy that even the strongest warrior could not lift it. However, this task was intended for only one. 300 years ago, during her wanderings in human form, she realized her helplessness. The Holy Virgin must have the power to overcome evil. Therefore, God endowed her with powers that were inaccessible even to knights. With this power, she is capable of anything. It seems that the Holy Virgin knew about this. Soon, she would have to endure her final test. Shedding her clothes, she slowly moves towards the altar. Her appearance changes in a matter of seconds right before the eyes of the servants. At that moment, her true appearance appeared before them. Now it won't be difficult to take this mace. She raises it high above her head, because this weapon will become the banner. The great mace was the weapon of the saints of past generations, which means they witnessed a miracle. Even the cold was no problem for this Holy Virgin. At some point in the past, this mark on the mountain was left by just one stroke. The Holy Virgin had to do the same. She was one of the few who had to go through this at that age. In her thoughts, the image of the hero for whom she came into this world was already born. By that time, many knew about Leo and his latest feat. It was he who managed to deal with the monster and prevent it from consuming the cities. Yeah, this guy has already made some noise. In a short time, he did more for society than any of his predecessors. Now the Holy Virgin hoped that her appearance would further strengthen the hero's abilities. It's hard to even imagine how brave and courageous this guy is. That is why she needs to become a saint who will be a match for him, and a heavy mace will help her with this. In her current form, the Holy Virgin could not only train the hero, but also fight monsters herself. Every sinner in this world will be severely punished. Their heads will shatter into pieces, like this stone mountain from a powerful blow. Nothing will go unpunished. Looking at this, the bishop realized that they could be wrong. Can the Holy Virgin be so cruel? With one blow, she almost completely demolished the stone mountain, as if it had been blown away by a cannon shot. Not a bad start. I wonder what will happen in the midst of the battle. Details about it were set out in the bishop's letter. He was glad that his young friend would be the first to know about it. Leo didn't expect that the Holy Virgin would come into this world just for him. What will Barbara say about this? However, it doesn't matter, because we are talking about saving the world. For a while, the guy silently ponders what he heard. It seemed that he had already heard about the appearance of the Holy Virgin from heaven. The attribute of the bishop is the moon, as opposed to the attribute of Leo. Despite his awkwardness, Leo wants to know what image the bishop uses for his aura weapon. It is clear that Barbara does not approve of such questions to the bishop. But everything worked out, and we could relax. A little later, he promised to tell Leo about the image of his weapon. Even a small amount of the moon's power gives excellent results. When the bishop fights at the limit of his strength, the crescent moon gives him great energy. But if the fight takes place on a full moon, the monsters don't stand a chance. However, his power is not constant. It all depends on the phase of the moon. There are a total of 5 lunar forms that give power. Unlike the moon, the shape of the sun was always constant and did not have so many variations. so it won't be possible to create the same image as the bishop. However, there is something that Leo does not know yet. By creating an image of a solar eclipse, he will be able to compensate for his weaknesses. The image of an eclipse is a fusion of such force that it is capable of absorbing even the sun. Now all that remains is to understand how to combine these two opposing elements. Enlightenment. There's something I need to check immediately. To do this, they went to where Leo had recently trained with Barbara. This place was perfect for such a purpose. The bishop's mace was very heavy. However, Leo's sword was no feather duster either. And yet only a duel could show whose weapon was stronger. Leo barely blocks the first blow and barely has time to react. If that blow had hit him in the head, the training would have ended there. This sword could create a barrier for its owner. With his help, we were able to survive in more difficult situations. After the spirit disappeared, it was still difficult to actively use the aura. The priest's mace worked better with each throw. This was the main problem in Leo's training. He needed to focus his aura on the target that was approaching him. Great, that's what I'm talking about. As soon as you believed in yourself, all restrictions on the use of the aura were removed. It is not for nothing that the bishop in his youth headed the Golden Order and was its chief knight. He learned a lot during those years. All the fruits of his labors were now manifested in this guy. Put all doubts aside. If he wants to win, he will have to surpass himself. Otherwise, he will remain a pawn in this game, unable to carry out a single attack. By using his inner strength, he could use two energies at once. The Eclipse sword could be as powerful as the Sun sword. Leo's first goal was to master the Great Chariot technique. With its help, it was possible to replenish energy directly during the battle. This required not unconscious repetition, but a systematic approach. First, it was necessary to compress the aura. Put all your energy into the blade, not allowing it to go beyond its limits. If this works, he will greatly surprise the bishop. He did it. The strong and thick chain of the mace was cut into pieces. This was only possible thanks to the energy of the Big Dipper. Leo managed to create his own technique. Damn it, it's a win. By the way, he already has fans. Among them was Adriana, who was happy for the new hero. With such support, you can move mountains and change the courses of rivers. Soon they found themselves back in the sacred temple. This old building seemed much more comfortable than any other place. Today, Adriana had a small gift for the hero from the Lord himself. The bracelet with the space charm was not very big, but the benefits from it promised to be enormous. Barbara hoped that it really was a gift from the Lord. Her earrings had the same charm, and there was nothing strange about it. The capacity of these decorations was small, so only daggers could be stored inside. Something else could have been put here. This was the first time Leo had seen a secret storage compartment like this. It's worth trying to place at least one item there. Voila, it worked. The main reason Adriana appeared here was Leo's recent promotion in rank. All the conditions for the promotion have already been met, and after the demonstration, the girl is ready to hand him the token. The guy had been waiting for this day for many years. It's a pity that his mentor won't arrive for another 100 days. He won't see his student reach a new rank ahead of schedule, but they will still have time to talk about it. And now Adriana is ready to confirm that he has an aura weapon, and give him the coveted token. When he was studying at the academy, the guy couldn't even dream of such a thing. It's time to accept congratulations. Adriana received the very request that Leo was looking for. He was going to serve as a guard for the guild, right? Interesting. The trade caravan was just now heading towards the Titan Mountains. Adriana had a hard time finding a place for him. He seemed to have forgotten all about it. Oh no, I remembered. After Adriana left, and until they received a response from the guild, they continued to train hard. The weather was excellent and conducive to hard work, especially with such a wonderful partner, but it would be better if she were without a knife. Her speed was astonishing, and her movements were difficult to follow. Even after many attempts, the guy couldn't hit the target. It seems his attention was directed in the wrong direction. You can't rely only on your vision. You need to be able to sense your opponent's energy. This will allow him to wield the Eclipse sword, which has replaced his previous weapon, with much greater confidence. You need to focus on the main thing, away with doubts. A slight tremor of the earth. The rival is somewhere close. He managed to feel her. She must be somewhere up there, no other way. Barbara realized that he had been able to locate her. He still hadn't attacked, but he could have easily done so if he wanted to. She didn't expect that he would master the sense of aura so quickly after just starting training. All thanks to her support, which became more and more powerful every day. He talked about support, right? Impudent boy. What did he mean? If he feels the support of all his comrades, his strength will increase much faster. One of the comrades was already here and was happy about his friend's success. As usual, the bishop arrived just as their training was almost over. And now these two can pray to the glory of God and ask him for great mercy. But anyway, it's better to just go home. The settlement was very close, and soon they were already there. Gradually, Leo's team became stronger, and this gave hope for a quick victory. At the main tent of the camp, he immediately notices a guard assigned to the master. The token in Leo's hands now speaks for itself. Inside, he is met by Arnold from the neighboring guild, who has already heard about the guy's exploits. He explains that even a small guild can be useful to the common cause and hope for an alliance. Such a union will become stronger after a handshake. It seemed like a good start to the conversation. I would like to know what will happen next. His palms didn't look like those of a simple swordsman. In front of Leo was a deformed hand, like that of a scribe. Leo's handshake was full of courage. It's nice to hear such compliments. Barbara notices that there is immediate trust between the two. The guy came here to ask for a seat. However, their budget was limited, and it was difficult to say whether it was possible to hire more escorts. The climb to the Titan Mountains was too dangerous, and there was no point in skimping on safety precautions. If the caravan is accompanied on this route by a top-class adventurer, this will be a reliable insurance. That makes sense. It was indeed a great insurance policy, but it cost a lot of money to hire. Arnold doubted that such an adventurer would guard such a small guild. Moreover, we were talking about a high-class adventurer. Barbara stated that she is an adventurer on the same level as Leo. He will receive 2 escorts at once. There was no need to worry about money, because they would split the reward in half. It was this last argument that made him agree. It was a little awkward, but the lack of money was really serious, and yet they were able to pay for the services of 1 adventurer. A separate carriage was allocated for these 2, and, in addition, they were showered with compliments. Perhaps they should have met much earlier. An alliance immediately arose between Barbara and Leo, which promised to be successful. It wasn't just about completing tasks, though. By the way, the mercenaries here also looked quite serious. Seriously? Did he really think that after all the battles there would be even one equal to them? They looked quite stern and did not take their eyes off Leo. But mercenaries have some prejudices against adventurers, so everything will be fine. I would like to believe it. Soon Leo had to say goodbye to this city, as well as to all his other havens. After he left the birdcage called the Academy, much changed in his life. His first journey was so difficult that it almost cost him his life. He will never forget the day he managed to escape from the forest. At first, the guild assigned him a rather low rank, but over time he rose. The meeting with Logan, who later fled the city, was also funny. The bishop gave him so much knowledge that no one else could give him. Even if other places are erased from memory, this one will remain in it forever. Leo wanted to leave at the first opportunity after the awakening of the spirit, having fulfilled his main purpose. But until then, he needed to focus on the main thing for which the gods had rewarded him with this power. It is not proper for a hero to sit idle, even if the spirit has temporarily left him. Moreover, the bishop will not forgive Leo if he strays from the path so early. Finally, he thanked the bishop for all the honor he had shown him. If it weren't for that fateful meeting, he would hardly have been able to cope with the city devourer. One could call it the will of the goddess, who herself led them to a common goal. Finally, the priest handed him something else. It was a necklace that contained sacred power. With this necklace, his path will be safer. The priest was sure of it. It was worth thanking him separately for such a gift, especially when it is presented by the greatest knight of the Holy Order. Now, he was a minister of the church, but his past was very different. Thanks to this gift, the boy could now summon all the knights nearby. My god, this should have been said at the beginning. The amulet looked like a simple necklace, but it contained divine power. Now its ranks were replenished with an army of knights. It's a pity that he didn't have these advantages at the beginning of his journey. Today, Arnold greeted them as warmly as if they were the dearest people in the world. It's understandable, since he saved a lot by paying 1 fee for 2. But for the young people, this was enough. At least that's what Arnold himself thought. Over time, Barbara began to behave with Leo as if they had known each other all their lives, but her looks spoke for itself. As well as her smile, by the way. They had extra worries, but they were pleasant worries. However, this mission could not be called a simple walk, because dangers awaited them ahead. For example, some mercenaries still looked askance at Leo. It seemed as if there was a monster hiding inside each of them. And if there are too many of them, the help of the amulet will come in handy. Suddenly, Barbara stops, realizing that the situation in the camp has changed. It seems there were too many people they crossed. It's strange. Why does she think so? However, over time, he will find out everything himself. The trading caravan continued on its way without stopping for a minute. They moved much faster than Leo expected. All the better, because this way they will get to their destination faster. One of the secrets to their fast movement was the Light Imp spell. Although the spell was convenient in many ways, it was not all powerful. Soon, they had to make a stop at Titan Mountain, although there were still at least 2 days of travel left to get there. They decide to set up camp right here without waiting for arrival. Leo decides to get out of the carriage. However, those who wanted to get to know him better were already coming towards him. These guys had been watching Leo for a long time, hoping to see the new star in person. He asks what exactly brought them to his tent, but Ernest, who had seen enough of such upstarts, did not like this tone. Well, that's a great start to a conversation. Is anyone here unhappy? It's hard to say whether one can rejoice at a hidden threat instead of a greeting. The two immediately disliked each other, although Leo had no complaints about Ernest. At this moment, another person appears next to them. Barbara found it strange that these big boys could only fight with words. What the hell? But the guy behind her has already proven himself in battle, and these escorts only know how to throw words around without getting down to business. Yakov declares that he is ready to fight her friend, provided the refereeing is fair. This won't stop the matter. Leo wouldn't mind fighting right now, right? Certainly. Great. Then there is no reason to postpone the fight. Moreover, the magical seal on his hand was already making itself known. Once again, Leo regretted that the spirit was not nearby. Tom would have liked the idea of fighting 3 at once, even though the duel was one-on-one. Well, if no one is against it, we can start today. Friction between adventurers and mercenaries was quite common. Leo understood their feelings, but believed that the problem could be solved differently. There were only 10 seconds left before the betting closed, and you had to bet on your favorite. Are they really betting on the fight? Yes, this girl knew how to hit the jackpot at the most opportune moment. Even Arnold pretended he was just passing by, although he was there for a reason. He quickly whispered in Barbara's ear who he was betting on. It's clear who will win the fight. There were so many fans behind Jacob that it was impossible to lose. Although he understood that the opponent opposite him was also very strong. But enough words, because only a real fight can reveal the true favorite, not in words, but in deeds. First of all, Barbara warns that the guys are obliged to follow her instructions without question. This was obvious anyway. Jacob was of the same opinion. If everyone is ready, then we can begin. For the first few seconds, Leo watches his opponent from afar. Jacob repeats the same thing, putting his shield forward. The battle of views has not been cancelled. The actual fight is always more important than the prelude to it. By the way, the shield in the hands of his opponent was not as simple as it seemed. He was right about this, because a rare component was added to the alloy of Jacob's shield. A few years ago, he saved a dwarf, and as a token of gratitude, he received this excellent shield. It's unusual that he shares such information so easily. After a couple of blows, the guy himself would have figured everything out if he had still been standing on his feet. A self-confident fellow. I wonder if he'll be as confident when the real fight starts. Leo decides to start the attack with a lightning-fast lunge. He does it very well and is off and running in a second. Opposite him, he sees the same Yakov, who hasn't even moved from his place. At this rate, he risks losing faster than he expected. The guy's sword hits with such force that he almost falls into the ground. Is this a spell? It was unclear where the skinny boy got so much strength from, but he had to act first. It's hard to do this quickly with a shield in your hands. The one-handed spear and shield made of rare alloy were a mixture of defense and instant attacks. It felt like dozens of spears were rushing towards Leo at once, blocking his path. By rushing into an attack, he only risks inflicting unnecessary damage on himself, which could result in complete failure. Using Eclipse, the guy could get rid of that shield if he had time to do so. But the spears continued to rain down on him like hail. He simply left him no choice. This guy asked for an answer himself, and it won't take long to get one. Wait a minute, he squatted down. A bit unusual, but worth watching to the end. A second later, the guy takes off in the other direction. And a moment later, the first lightning strike follows. Yakov realizes that he slightly underestimated his opponent. With one blow, the guy pierces his armor. It turned out spectacular, although it's worth waiting until the end of the fight. Yakov was a true swordsman who adhered to strict canons, but even they did not save him. His opponent's technique was superior to any other. All he could do was hide behind the shield, hoping for a miracle. But there will be no miracle. That's better. Such somersaults in the air were even more interesting than the wildest rides. Yakov had no idea before the fight that he would learn to do a somersault right during the fight. And what will he say to this? If this fight had taken place without spectators, the tip of this guy's sword would have reached its target. The victory was awarded to the adventurer Leo, and Arnold had already managed to make money on it. And the betting organizer got his profit. Flawless. One of the two guys decides that Yakov has given in, and it's worth trying again. Immediately a man appeared who was against continuing. Commander Gustav reminds that he saw the battle himself, and fully acknowledges the skill of this guy. It was hard to tell from his appearance whether he was pleased with the outcome of the fight. But the very next second he bows with respect to the one who is worthy of being called the best. This guy's skills deserve the highest rank, because during the fight he was peerless. What a revelation. Wait, is he crying? They wept with envy, because the 4 of them had to ride in one cart, and the main character of the duel was riding next to the beauty the whole way. That is why they were blinded by envy, and Jacob challenged him to a one-on-one duel. After today's fight, it became clear that this guy is popular with women for a reason. The guy extends his hand to him as a sign of friendship. This gesture brought even more tears, and yet there was no reason to deny him this. Now they were heavily indebted to him, and someday Yakov would definitely repay the debt. A man's debt is more important than his life, and soon they will find themselves in a place where they will have to repay it. For the first time in a long time, the guy managed to find a strong ally among the mercenaries. A good drink wouldn't hurt to celebrate such a matter. Leo refused this offer for a long time, but it was impossible to refuse this strong guy's offer. However, Leo deeply regretted that he had given in to weakness. All this time, Barbara watches her partner, as if discovering his personality in a new way. To be honest, the guy is getting to know himself again. The next morning, this hero experienced not only the sweetness of victory, but also the bitterness of a hangover. I felt a little sorry for Leo, although no one asked him to drink so much. After reconciling with the mercenaries, the atmosphere within the guild improved greatly. Yakov no longer looked at him askance and behaved like a devoted comrade. The place they were heading to was teeming with monsters that were best fought together. Many of the mercenaries were very strong, but the monsters were also extremely dangerous. One of them decides to ask something. He needed to know about the relationship that existed between Barbara and Leo. Such questions are usually not asked on the first day of meeting, and yet he was terribly interested in learning some details. God, they weren't really friends yet to talk about this. Ernest states that the two should be viewed as teacher and student. The relationship between Leo and Barbara is very similar to the relationship between a coach and his protege. The former forester had good observation skills, but he was still wrong about one thing. He admits that he became close to the girl during a joint mission, and it was not the same relationship at all. This should have been said a little more quietly. The entire conversation from beginning to end was heard by Barbara, who had already woken up. Anyone looking at it from the outside would think that there was something between him and Barbara. Didn't he really deserve a better opinion of himself? Even during overnight stops, discussions about their relationship never stopped for a minute. One could only hope that Gustav was not a gossip. Otherwise, this training could have turned into a serious fight, although the blood on the meadow clearly demonstrated the seriousness of this battle. At first, Leo decided that the fight would not be more difficult than the duel with Yakov, but he was very wrong. Gustav's sword was just as huge, but its power was many times greater than that of his subordinate. It was hard to believe that Commander Gustav had dared to fight this battle. He saw what this guy was capable of, and yet he proposed the fight himself. Leo saw no reason to refuse him. By showing weakness, one could easily lose the respect of the commander. Gustav didn't expect the boy to take the blow instead of dodging it. He was slightly disappointed with his technique, because just a couple of days ago, he seemed stronger. The more he looked at this guy, the funnier it became. He believed that it was foolish to respond to force with force, and that tactics needed to be changed during a fight. This advice was worth thanking for. The guy could ask this question at any time. He warned that their training would not go well if Leo continued like this. This evening they had to reach the edges of the forest, where it was not worth making noise. It would have been better not to know what this meant for them. In a good scenario, it would take the guys about 3 days to get out of the forest. On the way, they may encounter monsters that they will have to fight. If you encounter a mid-level monster on your way, it will definitely attack. This forest was inhabited by swarms of trolls who always attacked in large groups. Damn trolls! Adults reach 5 meters in height and, compared to other monsters, are quite agile. There were those who were able to climb trees. Forest trolls could easily be described as monkey-like creatures. The guy didn't know anything about trolls before, but he learned a lot of new things from the conversation. They didn't teach this at the academy, and such knowledge could only be obtained from mercenaries. Arnold warned that the caravan was entering a forest that lay in their path. Those responsible for security were required to do their job properly. After passing through boring plains, they finally found themselves in a forest full of monsters. Great, need to focus. Although it's hard to do that around Barbara. It seemed like it was time to get some real work done, and Leo's sword was already at the ready. It was a bit funny the way he pulled his sword out of its sheath, to be honest. Okay, now it was time to just rest and relax. Since Barbara said so, Leo decided to take a nap. He still hasn't recovered from the fight with Captain Gustav. A good deep sleep could fix that. There were enough excellent mercenaries in the caravan who would be able to take the first blow. However, the guy was unable to get enough sleep because Barbara noticed the danger. Surely Ernest knew about this too and was ready to welcome the guests. He was observant enough to notice the movement of monsters from afar. His bow was already ready, although the arrowhead looked a little strange. When he released the arrow into the sky, there was a bright white flash. It instantly illuminated all the trolls that were hiding in ambush. It was time to remember why they both went on an expedition with a caravan. 3 loaded arrows are much better than 1, especially if the tips of these arrows are imbued with a destructive aura. After Ernest's first shot, several individuals went to their forefathers. Not a bad start to the fight. Now Gustav decided to bring his heavy blade down on these bastards. Leo also entered the fight, cutting the green mutants in half. Trolls were cut down like any other monsters. There were many more of these creatures today. Only now did Gustav realize that this was the first time Leo had found himself in such a situation. He was quite good with a sword, but this was his first time fighting trolls. The commander was slightly disappointed. He had to be distracted by Leo's fight instead of facing his opponent face to face. Otherwise, this guy risked missing an attack from the bushes. Gustav warned in time where to expect the next blow. At that moment, 2 opponents appeared on both sides, whom Leo immediately noticed. They chose a less than ideal position to attack, but it was too late. Suddenly, the boy felt that his sword was moving differently. This time, the chopping blow came to him with extraordinary ease. Although he had used it in battle many times, he became much stronger, and the life of freaks became much shorter. But there were so many enemies that the battle could last all night. Commander Gustav understood this, ordering his soldiers to hold their positions. It's not hard to chop down a couple of individuals, but what if a whole army appears? There was no agreement on this. The guy accidentally hit his partner with the blade. But the very next moment, another comrade's blade whistled over his head, almost cutting off his head. The further, the more interesting. The battle soon ended when the hordes of trolls decided to retreat. Leo understood that he was unable to show his skills, as he constantly clashed with his comrades. It is important to keep your space and find gaps in the enemy's defenses, so as not to interfere with other fighters. Otherwise, he himself could have been hit, without having time to cover his comrade in time. During this duel, the blade of his sword passed within centimeters of his partner several times. The conversation after this fight was a little awkward, and yet Leo grew before our eyes, and his level of skill impressed not only the mercenaries. Now nothing prevented them from lighting the way and moving forward. It was not the first time the mercenaries had encountered such creatures, but today there were more of them than ever before. Under the leadership of Commander Gustav, they managed to achieve victory. The scouts still had a little work to do, and everyone else could go back to their wagons. Suddenly, the commander announced that he had a suitable job for Leo if he agreed. The guy will definitely enjoy hunting trolls with such an experienced partner. It was an offer that couldn't be refused. The security squad intended to catch the troll with the help of their faithful partner Barbara. That's right. But this issue had already been resolved with the head of the guild. Trolls react differently to strong and weak opponents. If you show them all your strength, they will most likely run away. Commander Gustav suggested that she not interfere and stay in the tent. No, it was just a small recommendation. The last word remained with Leo, and only after his decision would Barbara make hers. He had never actually encountered a troll before that night. This medium-sized monster usually lived in the forest and was strong due to regeneration. He was very different from the monsters that were summoned using satanic techniques. Perhaps the experience Leo gained from fighting the preacher will prove useful. Right now, he was being offered to fight a monster whose body was superior to that of a human. If you remember, something similar already happened in that abandoned house. You can't compare trolls to living armor, but that time the magic sword helped a lot. Hoping that history will repeat itself today, the guy agrees. Excellent choice. In that case, there is no reason not to head back to your tent and have a good rest. It is worth considering that there was one condition. She asks the commander to send at least one troll against Leo so that the guy can fight him one-on-one. She forgot to ask Leo himself about this. If he agrees, Barbara won't object either. She forgot to ask Leo's opinion again. It would really be useful for him to have such a battle. It had already been 4 days since they had entered this forest. For the first 2 days, they were attacked by small groups of goblins. After this, other monsters appeared, wanting to appropriate their goods, and at the same time, the travelers themselves. Moving non-stop day and night, they were unable to overcome even half of the forest. It felt like they were wandering in circles and became easy prey for the local mutants. This meant that catching the main troll was not a matter of interest, but a necessity that would help get out. Exactly. This troll could be the reason for such a long journey. He probably wants them to wander around this forest until their provisions run out. The conversation ended at the most interesting point. It's hard to talk when huge boulders are falling from the sky. Ambush! One of the mercenaries was less fortunate than the others. Leo notices a black bandage on the face of a guy who fell from a giant boulder. He was saved during the fight when the troll approached him from behind. After that, Leo definitely wouldn't be able to forgive those bastards for such a daring act. Barbara realizes that this time the fight will be different from all the other troll attacks. These creatures had already figured out that fighting the mercenaries in close combat was useless. A rock attack could easily reduce the number of guards in this caravan. Challenge accepted. Do they really launch these rocks with catapults? If so, then it's worth finding the place where this damned catapult is located. He notices that Commander Gustav has rushed towards the shell. The commander intercepts him in the air. And where does this guy get so much strength? And then he cuts the boulder in two, like a potato. Even his subordinates did not know what kind of power Commander Gustav held within himself. After the attack, he instantly commands his men to line up in battle formation. The mercenaries must immediately hide the carts in cover, and the adventurers must cover their rear. In the blink of an eye, he managed to calm the people down by showing them his strength. At that moment, some noise was heard in the forest. Hordes of all kinds of mutants rushed towards them. It feels like all these creatures are united against one goal. These two must take 4 mercenaries with them and find out the location of the trolls. To prevent them from throwing stones, their limbs had to be cut off, or better yet, they had to be simply killed. Barbara states that they must go to the farthest of the trolls. Without waiting for an answer, the girl rushes forward. Several more trolls block her path. It seems like these creatures want to kick the bucket as soon as possible. It would be better if Leo didn't see this picture. This successful attack allowed them to move on. Soon they were on sight. In front of them was the main monster, which united all the other mutants. It became clear where the boulders were flying from and who had been attacking all this time. It seemed like you could fight this monster forever. The girl could easily entrust this task to her partner. The other mercenaries were far away, and they approached the troll faster than he could react. All that remains is to take advantage of the element of surprise. The first ability Leo used was Cleansing Light. This wasn't the first time the guy had seen how light affected monsters. It would be good to remember this trick so that next time you start with it. However, the troll had a couple of tricks up his sleeve too. Even with his eyes closed, he could throw stones at his opponent that cut like razors. It was difficult to approach such a monster, and something had to be thought of. First, it was necessary to take cover from the barrage of stones and only then find a way to break through to him. The cleansing light from the sword should have blinded the troll for a moment, but Leo suddenly noticed that he had managed to restore his vision. And then the monster's hand quickly reached for his club. With a weapon in his hands, he seemed much more dangerous. The club was a simple gnarled log, but in the hands of the monster it became a deadly weapon. If you remember, Leo had already had to repel similar attacks from the commander. His weapon was also quite formidable, although the guy managed to fight back. Maybe that training fight was not a coincidence, and now it can help? It would be better to simply cut this club in half and deprive the monster of its weapon, but he attacked faster than Leo could think. Then it's time to use your speed. I wonder how he'll react to Leo's high jumps. Although the monster was quite fast, the guy managed to dodge. How nimble. What if we try differently? For example, throw small stones and sand into his eyes again. But even this did not confuse Leo, who once again dodged the heavy blow. The troll's speed was to be commended, given its enormous size. At that moment, Leo realized that he only had a few seconds to decide. The divine sword light had already helped him once, which meant it could be successful a second time. Besides, he was tired of dodging these damned stones. Wait a minute, he still saw. Does divine light only blind monsters once? One way or another, the mutant continued the fight and again rushed into the attack. However, this was exactly what Leo was aiming for. It is with the Eclipse ability that he will end this fight. He had a formidable weapon in his hands, and no troll could handle it. Even the enormous size of this monster is nothing compared to the Eclipse sword. With one movement of the blade, the guy cut the vile troll. Hey, has anyone seen a second paw around here? Oh yeah, the other paw should still be on the body. The solar attribute of his weapon was the most effective of all the techniques. It was also worth remembering the troll's ability to regenerate. Otherwise, the troll would not have been able to jump to his feet so dexterously and rush to the side. So much work and all in vain. I would like to believe that if you cut off his head, another one will not grow on his neck. Worth a try. It was foolish to think that Leo would allow such a vile monster to quietly slip away into the depths of the forest. Although Leo had only known the team for a short time, he had already gotten to know each mercenary. The guy who was the first to die from the boulder thrown at them was still standing before my eyes. Leo will never forget how brutally this fine fellow was killed. None of them deserved such a needless death, and only one damned monster was to blame for it. This vile scum must be wiped off the face of the earth. This is exactly why Leo came here. The Great Chariot was his second trump card. For a moment, there was silence in the forest, but the next second the burning chariot rushed towards the troll. One could imagine how the giant's body was flattened after such a powerful attack. It was cut into small pieces, and the ability to regenerate was no longer possible. It was the first time Leo had used such a technique, because now his strength was enough for truly deadly attacks. One of those green bastards was the first to feel it on his skin. Worked great. The problem is that the guy won't be able to use this technique twice until he recovers his strength. But even just once was enough to impress the beautiful girl. He is so cute. She had no doubt that Leo would prove himself, and today her hopes were justified. And the guy himself understood that he was no slouch. Finally, he could feel happy for himself and realize that he had really achieved a lot. The next moment, he falls unconscious right into Barbara's lap. He had a hard time in the fight, but that was exactly what was missing to raise his level. Now everything will be different. Now everything will be. That's all now. Now, what, already now? Coming to his senses, Leo realized that he was wasting his time. While he dreams that guy gets stronger every day, he swore that he would never lose to Arthur again. What the hell is going on? A moment ago, he seemed to be in another dimension, and now he found himself in a carriage. He remembers yesterday's battle with the giant troll. He certainly won't be cured in one day. Training will have to be cancelled for a while. Suddenly, he notices the bracelet he recently received. The bishop's amulet is also useful for quick healing. He clutches the amulet tightly in his hands, hoping for a miracle. And indeed it worked. The amulet turned out to be even more effective than he expected. Does this artifact really attract beautiful girls? A good start to the day. Seriously though, yesterday's troll hunt was quite successful. The escaped troll was seriously wounded and will not return to the forest. Their behavior was like that of a bunch of cowardly creatures. One of them got separated from the pack and became an easy victim for Leo. In the distance, they noticed the trophies from yesterday's massacre. The corpses of the fallen trolls were laid out in a row. If you translate this into money, you can get no less than 90 gold pieces. Leo cut the troll's body in half, and they wouldn't give even 30 for that. You should have warned us in advance. Leo noticed something else. The first troll was killed by 4 weapons, and the second fell by his hand. The guy already guesses who dealt with the third one. It must have been Commander Gustav with his little iron toy. Along the way, they meet already familiar expedition members. The head of the guild personally visited the hero. They did a great job last night. It was just their job, nothing special. And yet, Leo asks directly about the losses in the battle. It's strange that he spoke about it on such a day. 8 people were killed at once. The guild will help with the funeral and pay compensation to the families of the deceased. This somewhat marred the joy of victory. For the defeated troll, they will get everything in full, but they won't pay much for a monster cut in half. As a bonus, he offers to add a little of his own. He was so accommodating. Barbara guesses why Arnold was so generous to her. For the kindness shown, one day you will have to repay in the same coin. Now she doesn't want to remain in debt to anyone except Leo. Here he is. Commander Gustav is glad to have found the boy alive and well. In an informal setting, a guy may simply call him by his first name. By the way, about that troll. In life, this monster possessed a rare technique, although Leo also showed himself to be excellent. Leo was still worried about his comrades. The reaction was the same as Arnold's a minute ago. They were all fine, except for a couple of scratches. It's great that he remembered this. You can't take everything that happens in battle to heart. He must be firm and get used to the harsh truth. Death is always sad, but the lives of mercenaries are filled with it. This guy still has a lot to learn. Barbara believes that it is natural to mourn someone's death. Even if you are a hero to everyone, this principle will never change. In any case, he was a great guy. At this rate, he will gain experience much faster. Has he ever heard of deserts? If not, then it's time to learn something. The desert was an area covered with sand instead of soil. This natural environment is particularly merciless to living beings. Here, in addition to nomads, live many monsters that are at war with each other. This territory is known to every hunter. In a week, they will leave the sands behind, because they are traveling in carts. Very interesting. The journey without stops will take at least 5 days. By that time, the spirit in the sword should just awaken. The guy hadn't heard him chatter for a whole month. The spirit's chatter was temporarily replaced by Barbara's twittering. Looking into the distance, the girl realizes that the forest is already behind her. Under the wheels of their carts, there was already a deserted plain. Leo decides to find a map here. Strange, where did she go? At that moment, something more interesting than a dried-out map awaited him. Yeah, damn right. The spirit is back. Leo missed that funny blue ball a little, but it wasn't worth it to barge in unannounced. The look in his one eye seems so familiar. It seems like these two had a lot to talk about. Leo only asks to warn next time if the spirit decides to return earlier. A month passed, and Leo got out of the habit of communicating with him. The spirit did not expect that instead of a friendly greeting, Leo would greet him with stupid reproaches. He wants to go back to the time when this month was just beginning. You should treat your mentor with respect. He already treats him with respect. We can assume that he believed it. Let's put aside unnecessary talk. It's time to get down to the main thing. During this time, the bishop unraveled Leo's true identity. What's surprising about that? Barbara was the first to realize her partner's true strength. Considering her appearance, this boy is even to be envied. Leo should be congratulated on his improved skills. The only way to test them in action was during training. At first, Spirit wanted to see how Leo's stat window had changed. When he saw the boy's improvement, his eye almost popped out of its socket. It's incredible, but he even surpassed Arthur. Now the only way to determine the strongest was through a real fight. However, the experience that could be gained at the academy had its limits. But no one cared about these limits. With such a mentor, you could forget about everything except your main goal. He was already able to surprise the troll with a couple of excellent techniques. It is no coincidence that Leo awakened this power in himself in a fit of anger. A month ago, the spirit did not speak about this, but now it was stupid to hide it. All his successes are thanks to his mentor. Actually, not quite, and there is no point in being happy about what doesn't exist. Suddenly, the spirit smelled a strong smell of sand, realizing that they were in the desert. Since they are traveling in a cart, it means that the path lies somewhere very far away. Even before he went into hibernation, the spirit himself told the boy that he needed to visit the Titanium Mountains. In the end, Leo decided to go there without him. Sounds good, because the caravan headed into the heart of the desert. Initially, their route lay through the mountain range, but now it was difficult to understand where they were. Wait a minute, so he means to say that right now they are in the middle of the desert? It's hard to believe because there used to be a vast plain here. It is unlikely that a green area could turn into a desert in 1 year. This process takes many years. Unless we are talking about artificial desertification. There's clearly something wrong here. It smells like some kind of conspiracy, and yet the spirit believed that there was no need to bother his head with this, and that he could simply relax. Then why the hell did he even start this conversation? He hasn't changed a bit during his month of absence. The same could be said about this boy. It was funny to watch from afar how Leo communicates with himself. God, this heat is deadly. Barbara couldn't find a cool place for herself, but Leo didn't care about the wild heat. Otherwise, he wouldn't be smiling like an idiot. It would be better if he figured out how to get rid of this hell. Otherwise, she will have to throw off everything unnecessary. Less than 6 months had passed since his meeting with the spirit, and he already clearly felt its absence. In moments of danger, only the spirit could give sound advice. He noticed that the caravan had made a stop. The nights in the desert were much colder and darker than he had imagined. She ran towards the main part of the caravan, hoping that it would follow her. But all this time, the spirit did not move from its place. He didn't expect that 300 years later, everything would turn out this way. It's sad that once upon a time, there were green meadows blooming in this place. It's rude to make a girl wait so long. That same evening, a meat stew was already boiling on the fire. It was clear that Leo was supposed to get the tastiest piece. They really respected this guy, and Leo himself has changed a lot lately. Wonderful. This is exactly the Leo he wanted to see in him. Yet thoughts of artificial desertification troubled him. There was still a lot Leo didn't know, and it was directly related to this area. For now, he simply enjoyed his success. By the way, Barbara wasn't lying when she said it would be cooler at night. After all, he never had the chance to lie down for a couple of hours during the day. At that moment, he heard a rustling sound near the tent. He was irritated by this unpleasant feeling when someone was sneaking up on him. However, you shouldn't make noise and wake everyone up. It was no accident that Barbara found herself here at night. Uninvited guests were already watching them from afar, and a second later, they all rushed towards the tent camp. There was no murderous energy emanating from them. Barbara didn't notice her. Inexperienced sentries are unlikely to notice them without the ability to sense aura. Looks like they're going to surround the cargo. Barbara was ready for anything, but the decision was up to Leo. Raise the alarm and inform everyone about the intruders. This was a bad idea, because then the invaders would penetrate the tent camp. These bastards probably know that the guards won't have time to prepare for battle. They came here to steal things, without showing any intention of killing anyone. Looks like it's time to show off the new features. He expected nothing else from the spirit. Barbara quickly identified 14 intruders heading for the cargo, and another 20 on patrol. Their 36-strong force and ability to fight in the desert was a little frightening. I would like to hear her opinion. But Barbara's look spoke for itself. Kill the bastards. Surprise, boys. With a lookout like that, it won't be possible to sneak up unnoticed. Especially when he has the ability to move quickly. Besides this, Barbara had a few more tricks up her sleeve. The spell of space was one of them. Dozens of sharp daggers could also moderate their ardor, especially when they fall on you from the sky. Nobody told these sly men that stealing cargo would be an easy walk. But the thief didn't know that a gas mask wouldn't protect him from a hail of daggers. Even without the help of the rest of the group, they were able to manage everything. Leo raises the divine blade to use its light to signal all the other fighters. Enemies surround them on all sides. Thieves target carts with cargo. Are they still sleeping? While everyone was dozing, 2 had already managed to repel the attack of 36 fighters. However, a couple of idiots could have gone to the fastest one. If Commander Gustav wanted to be among them, he had to hurry. The hats flew off the heads of the robbers as easily as the heads themselves. However, some of them managed to reach their destination. Their leader will forever remember the face of Barbara, who ruined the whole plan. We need to retreat, guys. Barbara notices that the enemy is trying to hide from sight, but it won't be possible to dodge another well-aimed dagger. Everyone knows what's going to happen in a second, right? Oops, mistake, he caught it. It was as if a monster, not a man, was hiding under the strange mask. There is no other way to explain how he managed to do it. Leo understands that this is the last moment when the robber can still be caught. Barbara knows it was too late to catch the freak. Gustav loudly warns that enemies are approaching from Leo's direction. If not him, then no one will be able to catch them. Several robbers rush towards him at once. Isn't it time to take a look at the skills of the wayward student? At such moments, one cannot doubt for too long. The divine sword will help even if something goes wrong. He knows this very well. If he used the Big Dipper sword's secret technique here, he would be able to finish off a dozen enemies. However, they did not look like ordinary monsters. Leo sees no point in causing a bloody massacre. He becomes wiser every day. The spirit states that there is nothing wrong with these doubts. Every warrior makes such a choice for himself one day, and now his student must make this choice. There are standards of good and evil, like 2 scales that determine the severity of punishment. But besides these standards, there is also an inner feeling. It is this that helps to make a decision. So what will it be like? The guy doesn't intend to kill them. It is still necessary to catch these tricksters. They need to be interrogated before being brought to trial in the city. The head of the guild decided to take care of this personally. Soon he gathers a council of senior commanders. Part of the cargo was stolen, and Commander Gustav blames traitors for everything. Barbara even saw the face of one of them through the mask. She remembers that their boss's appearance and aura are not human-like. The cargo was stolen before the fight even began. Really? But the leader who caught the dagger with ease did not give her peace. Arnold asks to track down where this group of robbers came from. This could be dangerous, but if you're going to chase them, you need to set out right now. In the desert, tracks quickly disappear. The thieves must be tracked down immediately, even if they have some abilities. There was a mark from her weapon on one of the bastards' hands. Hearing this, Arnold promises to take care of the reward. Leo must go with them. Ernest's help would also be very useful. They will definitely need a compass. This compass is enchanted and only reacts to stolen cargo. Within a radius of 10 meters, its arrow will point in the correct direction. It will be a race against time. They are always ready for such races. Gustav can only watch from afar. This commander could provide serious support. It's almost impossible to keep up with them. But there is another way to cover the distance. Soon, Barbara notices that the trail is becoming clearer. Thanks to her ability to sense aura, she doesn't even need footprints in the sand. It's worth speeding up a little. They will have a chance to find them before they run out of strength. Wait, at this deep crack their trail ends. Those bastards are probably hiding somewhere around here. It's hard to believe that there is such a place in the middle of the desert. This place was built artificially many years ago. It is surprising that such a colossus was built by ordinary people. About 100 years ago, this inscription was carved into the stone. Perhaps this is what caused the desertification of the once flourishing area. The thoughts of geniuses always converge. You can dig a hole and the area will turn into a desert. They were dealing with an unusual place that could be the center of a spiritual vein. But no matter how much the spirit searched for the remnants of energy, he could not find anything. The soil turned into dead earth, and it is difficult to say why this was necessary. This is exactly what I would like to find out. There is no need to go anywhere. They were already here, which meant the answer was obvious. Barbara notices 3 guards ahead. There was a whole army of the same behind them. This was the main lair of those thieves. They found this abandoned building themselves. Maybe kill them all? What does Leo think about this? The guy's thoughts remained the same. It's scary to imagine the murder of hundreds of people. Even though these people were guilty, it is a difficult decision to make. It's easier to do this if you remember how many terrible crimes these scoundrels committed. How many children were left without parents because of them? Should we show leniency to such degenerates who consider it entertainment to leave an abandoned child under the scorching sun? Difficult. It's hard to decide what the right thing to do is. The spirit reminds us that it is completely normal to hesitate in such a situation. It is up to him to decide whether to burn everything in his path or to have mercy. He must find the answer to this question himself. The answer has been found. He knew it would happen. Barbara knew too. The girl was just waiting for this look to be the first to rush into the attack. She seemed to be really into it. She wanted to personally finish off as many scoundrels as possible. At this rate, she won't leave any of them alive. The boys could have stayed home today. They won't be of any use in this massacre anyway. The girl herself is capable of destroying everyone here. Peering out from the ambush, one of them realizes that he needs to tell the commander about everything. He thought for too long. When Barbara gets down to business, there's no time to think. Such a fight was more refreshing than a cool wind. Heavenly delight. Yes, she has always been like this. Leo just wanted to wipe the blood from her face that spurted from the wound of the dead mercenary. That's better. No comments. A second later, Barbara turns sharply in the other direction. For the first time, she felt in her heart something she had never felt before. This guy was a great professional and knew how to approach women. Later, he will understand everything himself when Barbara wishes it. But there was no point in wasting time, because the mission was not completed. The compass pointed Barbara to a door at the end of the corridor. She orders the boys to deal with the guards and begin the invasion. If done correctly, they will be back by morning. For the first time, Ernest sees this girl's abilities. This guy was no slouch either. He was an excellent archer and had a couple of surprises up his sleeve. They should like this gift. Behind the door, their accomplices were already dividing up the spoils. The boss is looking forward to spending the stolen money. It's a pity that he doesn't know what his guards already know. Someday they will share emotions when they meet in the afterlife. Yes, that was exactly what he thought. These two won't leave here without his head. They came here for their goods stolen from the tent camp. Escape would be the best solution, but Barbara makes her move. At the last moment, he managed to dodge. And yet, it is definitely not possible to escape. Blood is spurting out, and it is clear that the wound is quite deep. He dodged it well. Although Barbara could have hit him in the leg on purpose, she didn't want to finish off the bastard so quickly. If they had collided 4 years ago, it wouldn't have ended with a wounded ankle. The robber realizes that all his people are already dead. And in front of him, he sees the one who sent them to their forefathers. It's hard to say whether this is a person or a monster, but it would be better if she weren't here. The Undertaker never lets his victims go, and there is only one way out of this situation. Long time no see. This will be the last meeting for these guys. Within seconds, they had dealt with each of them. What about the leader? He deserves a good spanking too, doesn't he? Moreover, now the scoundrel definitely won't run away anywhere. Barbara had already warned him what would happen the next time they met. He should have left this business forever, but he chose the wrong path. There was no chance of a second chance. Barbara didn't like jokes and preferred serious conversation. It would have been worth thinking about this in advance before entering their territory. Even with such an injury, Mole was in his native environment. He instantly burrowed underground and retreated to a safe distance. This technique could only work once. The winner was known from the start, no matter what tricks he pulled. It is not for nothing that this girl was nicknamed the Undertaker, who quickly digs graves for her enemies. She commanded her dark essence to find him. He had to be here somewhere. The shot hit the target right on the first try. Nobody doubted it. I wonder how many times he can withstand such attacks. And what will happen if, instead of one spear, several are aimed at him at once? It will probably hurt. And it might even be very painful. This is what needed to be found out. The boy howled so loudly that it could be heard outside the gorge. The two were left to watch from the sidelines as Barbara worked. They could have come to her aid, but it was not needed here. Wait a minute, he's up to something. She was indeed a real monster, but Mole could do something too. Suddenly the guy started to confess something. He states that the girl was always treated well in the clan. They simply picked up an unwanted orphan from the street and made him stronger. Only her comrades extended a hand to Barbara, unlike everyone else. Why did so much resentment accumulate in her soul? Why did she want to cut the throat of everyone who was with her? Suddenly, Barbara confesses that it was she who killed the boss. But if the boss hadn't once given her shelter, she would have died long ago. Maybe. However, the constant flight from herself turned her life into a complete deception. Her life was just an attempt to avoid the worst-case scenario, so she decided to get the main thing that her heart had always longed for. And what the hell did she want to get? Freedom. Freedom, what does it mean? What the hell kind of freedom is she even talking about? She always wanted to get power into her own hands. That's why she took the dagger and pointed it at her own boss. All nonsense aside, she admits it. God, how wrong he was about her. Suddenly the girl extends her hand to him. She asks for forgiveness for everything that happened in their dark past. And yes, it happened because she turned away from everyone. But now she has another family. This guy and his closest associates became closer to her than anyone else. Leo also extended his hand to her, but did not ask for anything in return. When such a chance comes your way, it cannot be missed. He would understand this if he were an orphan himself. She doesn't want any other fate for herself. Barbara approaches Leo and apologizes for being a little late. The first thing you should do is collect your things. If everything is done, it's time to go back. Wait, what is this? A loud sound was heard in the distance. This guy just couldn't calm down. It's time to find out what someone who only wants revenge is capable of. Leo loudly warned that there was a self-destruct button next to him, and he needed to get out of here. Otherwise, they will remain under the rubble of the dungeon. This bastard no longer values his life, but the rest still have something to spend their energy on and something to change. At this moment, Commander Gustav keeps his eyes on the horizon. In just a second, he understands everything. These three showed their best side again. Under Leo's leadership, the team is getting stronger every day. Now you can forget about the robbers of the local wastelands forever. The spirit wants the student to forget about this as soon as possible, without remembering the little things. He was already wise enough to distinguish between the essential and the extraneous. Barbara notices in the distance what is most important to them. Her eyes glow with happiness because the goal was so close. Finally, they reach the city and would soon find themselves in the very center. All his life, Leo had only heard about this place, but had never seen it in real life. It was the first time he had ever looked at such a high fortress wall. He still has a lot to learn, and it's not just about the wall. Meanwhile, Arnold is received with respect as a permanent guest of this city. All his travelers will receive a well-deserved reward. He plans to stay here for 3 days to put the caravan in order. The kids would also benefit from finding something to do during this time. There are suggestions. They can just stay here or take a short tour. There is only one thing Barbara wants to find. It was a tavern 3 blocks away. There were rooms rented for the top management, which now went to Leo and Barbara. By the way, there is a double bed there. Wonderful. There is no need to be embarrassed by this. Maybe he has some expectations about this? Wait a minute. Where's he going? Most likely, the guy misunderstood her. In any case, she won't be able to sleep at night. Having said this, Barbara simply leaves. What if we prepare another room? Should I prepare another room or not? Well, Arnold just suggested it. Damn it, this guild leader was being too pushy. It was a little sad that Leo headed towards the hotel so quickly. There will always be powerful allies by the hero's side, and Barbara was the first of them. The girl already felt something new in her heart. She understood that this guy was more than just an ally to her. The girl still has enough time to prove it to Leo himself. Using her abilities, she quickly finds him. It is impossible to hide from it, and even the spirit is no help in this. The stupid boy does not understand his happiness. It's a shame Arnold didn't explain to him like a man what was going on. He would probably turn it all into a joke again. The cargo that Arnold was trying to get back must have been very valuable. Arnold says it's an important secret that can't be revealed. Wildly interesting. If he promises to keep it a secret, Arnold is willing to whisper in his ear. He confesses that there is a black crystal inside that box. The value of this precious stone is almost 1,000 gold coins. The most important thing is that it is an item ordered by the lord of the city they will pass through. If you fall out of favor with this lord, trouble will follow. That's why he said that the cargo must be returned. Clear! It wasn't such a big secret, and Barbara might have found out about it. The girl leaves only a note in her place. She promises to come back soon as she does one thing. Turning around, Leo sees familiar faces in front of him. Commander Gustav and his group were already here. I'm just wondering, do they also go out in a crowd when they need to go? Seriously, he'd never seen these guys separately. What business did they come to him for today? You can relax because Commander Gustav is simply bored. Leo was his best partner. The rest of the idiots have to spend weeks explaining the essence of the new fighting technique. But Leo himself can teach anyone. Night soon fell. It was a great time for Barbara to have fun. There was no need to worry about anything except the number of scoundrels killed. They asked for it themselves when they saw a girl nearby. You shouldn't have behaved so casually with her. Then I wouldn't have to see the last seconds of my life. Even with a beautiful girl, there is nothing pleasant about this. Maybe he wants to say something last? Or are any words superfluous? The guy replies that there is still one question. He wants to know why she killed all the guys, but the answer is too obvious. She wants to get rid of all the bastards in this city, starting with the small fry. She has the whole night ahead of her for this. She didn't lie to Arnold that she wouldn't be able to sleep. But Barbara has prepared eternal sleep for these guys. Owl was the name of the gang that controlled the local market. The black market and smuggling were their main sources of income. One of the leaders was well known to the girl since her youth. I would like to meet him first. It will be a hassle, but she can handle it. They met again. Only Barbara is happy about this meeting. Leo asked where she got that nickname. She replied that it was a matter of encryption. All secret organizations use their own method of communication. Her organization required visiting a funeral home. At the funeral home, she often had to leave secret messages. Such a message could be a lantern that creates optical illusions. He easily created a false wall instead of a secret entrance. For Barbara, this was not a problem. She easily recognized optical illusions and penetrated such walls. Mercenaries are trained to find such loopholes from the very first days. She found herself in a secret passage that led to a secret room. By stepping on the seal, she activated the alarm and made herself known. The one waiting below already knew of her arrival. Rudolph turns around abruptly. He already knows who came. Here she is. It was Barbara who was missing from this place all day. She managed to overcome deadly barriers, and that says a lot. Since she's here, it means Barbara wasn't a random guest. All the other seekers were much less fortunate. The girl gets down to business, hoping to gain valuable information. Does information cost money? Didn't she know about it? Of course I knew, as was the real name of the person sitting opposite. Very interesting. Her eyes did not deceive her. Yes, the eyes of the interlocutor gave him away, so it's time to end this circus. Rudolph can take off his useless hood. Barbara also has information to exchange. But what could she know that he doesn't? First, she decides to talk about the price. We are talking about 260 gold. It's coming. Then Barbara wants to know where the gang leader is now. The businessman replies that the leader should be looked for in the sewer pipe, but she is taking a big risk. Meanwhile, a sleepless night begins for Leo. Commander Rudolph made him drink again. All the boys were looking forward to the fun. However, this was not all they were waiting for. Yes, not only that. By the way, today some city rumors reached Gustav. We are talking about a vampire who haunts the night streets. Vampires were a race that was not inferior to humans in intelligence. The only difference was in their magical abilities. Vampires derived their abilities and immortality from the blood of their victims. Such creatures were rejected by society. Vampires weren't easy to see, but if one of them had appeared right here, his throat would have been cut immediately. Interesting information. It would be great to fight him. This would help to quickly solve the local problem. But first it was worth offering peace. Looking at the student, the spirit understands that he is being a little cunning. He would have killed all the vampires, just like the spirit did in his past. Nevertheless, it is worth trying to talk to him. As a hero, he must judge for himself what evil is. He decides to postpone the trial of the vampire for now. Another guest came to visit them. What the hell? The big guy heard that they had rented the entire tavern where he wanted to relax today. And this bald guy is their commander, right? He was not mistaken, but Gustav did not like this kind of treatment. Despite the big guy's size, he could do some things too. And there is no need to look down on him. Otherwise, Gustav is ready to rise without warning. But instead, the big guy simply spits into his mug of beer. The guys had never seen anything like this. This is a challenge. Gustav was not the type to tolerate this. It looks like a fight is brewing. Soon they all find themselves on the street. The fight was one-on-one, and everyone else had to stay away. This dispute was only between two big guys. I wonder which one of them will win. Derek came here to start a fight from the start. He had quarreled with Commander Gustav countless times, and now the time has come to put an end to their dispute. Derek had two arguments behind his back for this. Ernest had a bad feeling. He knows the strength of his commander, but everything went wrong from the very beginning. It was as if his opponent knew in advance how it would all end. It was a battle of mercenaries of the highest level. The spirit advises Leo to look more closely and learn something. Derek attacks so quickly that the commander doesn't have time to react. Each of his blows could be fatal. Yes, the commander got it badly. He is lucky to be still alive. But his opponent had no intention of stopping. Now it's time to answer for it. But the argument in Gustav's hands was much greater, right? And heavier. This guy's aura attribute was water, and he had recently mastered a secret technique. This time he was ready to bring the commander to his knees. But to do this, he needed to break through his defense. After a powerful blow, a roar was heard in the distance. Leo was nearly knocked off his feet. When the dust cleared, it became possible to see something. To everyone's surprise, Gustav remained on his feet. He just looked down at his opponent. The enemy did not give up, hoping for revenge. This was just a warm-up. The commander was to see the main thing a little later. Derek's ability was still his greatest asset. With the help of demonic power, he could increase the power of each blow by tens of times. Gustav realized that the atmosphere had changed dramatically. His support team realized the same thing. This is no joke, Commander Gustav. Everything turned out to be much more serious than he expected. The same guy who had just recently been kneeling appeared above him. It was clear that a person was not capable of such jumps. With this power, he was ready to tear his opponent to pieces. What the hell is this? Devil! He actually received support from the Dark Force after his recent defeats. Gustav had to feel this power on his own skin. It's hard to believe, but he was able to cut through the commander's steel aura. Now Gustav's life was in Derek's hands. The boys couldn't believe their eyes. It seemed that Barbara wasn't the only one who was connected to the dark entity. There were others in the city who made a secret pact. It's a pity that Gustav didn't realize this 5 minutes ago. The guys were ready to tear the bastard to pieces, but this shouldn't have been done. Those they thought were people turned out to be monsters, and all these monsters were in league with Derek. What should we do? Should I rush into the attack, no matter what? Or should I still save the lives of my people? Fighting with such a deep wound on my knee became much more difficult. Derek demands that he beg for mercy if he wants to survive. Otherwise, he will have to finish what he started. This guy wasn't kidding. The spirit commands the disciple to immediately draw his sword and raise it above his head. The guy immediately carries out the order. The sword instantly illuminates the space surrounded by mutants. Leo remembered that the divine light could temper their ardor. Indeed, Derek cannot stand this light, just like other mutants. This move should have helped them buy some time. But they no longer needed this time. This sword held many secrets. Victory, predetermined even before the fight began, was one of them. There were far more vampires in the city than he expected. Or are they not vampires? The spirit explained that these creatures had taken a reagent created from the blood of a vampire. In a word, these monsters balanced on the edge between vampires and humans. What's not clear about this? The main thing is that Gustav is okay, although he was seriously injured in the fight with the monster. He needs to be cured as soon as possible and briefly explained about vampires. Instead of rest, new problems fell on their heads. Derek soon comes to his senses. He understands that this fight was lost pointlessly. All his men have been captured. I wonder who is so brave here. Or did his courage suddenly disappear? After that, there was a nice friendly conversation with this bastard away from prying eyes. During this conversation, he admitted that he was wrong. Meanwhile, Leo is in his room, trying to comprehend what he saw. Arnold's words about that lord still haunted my mind. The caravan's route lay through his city, which meant that a meeting with the lord was inevitable. It's unclear why everyone is so eager to get their hands on this black crystal. We must definitely talk about this with the commander tomorrow. I wish Barbara would come back soon so I could go to bed peacefully. The spirit doubts that his ward only wants to sleep, and that the double bed in this room was pure chance. No, that's not what we're talking about at all. He explains that he is waiting for her because he is worried about Barbara. And here she is. There was no need to worry because everything was fine with her. But it might get even better if he stops acting like an idiot. The girl didn't end up here by accident. You shouldn't be so surprised. Or rather, you can be surprised, but not too much. Today she managed to get hold of some very interesting information. Now Barbara is ready to announce that there is a vampire in town. Vampire. A real vampire has appeared in the city. What, not impressive? Hey, she's never seen such a rotten reaction before. When Arnold heard about this, his emotions were much brighter. This was exactly the reaction she expected to see today. It was simply impossible to surprise the guy with such news. The next day they gather together to discuss a plan of action. Whoever is behind this may be waiting for them in the next town. The number of vampires grew, and the Count took direct part in this. The commander suggests taking action before they launch an attack. There is no way to avoid the meeting anyway. It would be better if the thieves stole that box with the black crystal. In the end, life is more valuable than a trinket. There's nothing to be done. We'll have to work with what we have. They need to step into danger themselves. And for this purpose, the Union has excellent warriors. Commander Gustav is confident that all those responsible will receive the punishment they deserve. However, to do this, we need to hire more mercenaries, then supply them with silver bullets and holy water. This will make it easier to get rid of vampires. Well, their thoughts coincide, and then the hands come together. All that remains is to take a photo of them as a keepsake. At this point, Barbara asks for a minute. Leo doesn't mind at all. It would be better for them to step aside for a while. Suddenly, Barbara angrily declares that she tried her best to prepare a surprise for Leo. It was very difficult for her to obtain this valuable information. But he acts like he doesn't care. Mole's attack in the desert was not an accident. He had prepared it in advance. Most likely, he acted on the Count's clear instructions. This means that the Count already knows that the caravan is heading towards him. At least she was able to surprise him with this news. If you think about it, what is actually the most valuable cargo? Leo believes that this is the box with the black crystal, but Barbara is sure there is more to it than just the box. Perhaps Mole would have told about it if he had not died so soon. It turns out that now only the Count can shed light on this, but the Count does not want them to reach his lands. His guard is very different from Gustav's squad, and yet, there is a chance of success. Of course, if Leo is as skilled as ever. This scoundrel tried his best not to attract attention to himself. But we managed to learn something from the prisoners. When it turned out that we were talking about vampires, things took a completely different turn. The danger has increased, and now he will prepare for the meeting more carefully. The fight was inevitable, because the caravan was already on its way to it. You may have to use the bishop's necklace. Finally, Leo asks her for help. There is one place she must go immediately if Barbara is ready to go all the way. The moon in the sky today was the same as last night, but on Earth everything has changed. This ability made it possible to easily cover huge distances. Soon the Lord was already there. We had to wait a little longer for the butler, who was late again. Sebastian apologizes terribly for the slight delay. Everything is fine. In the veins of this representative of the vampire nobility flowed the blood of the noblest of them. You can stay here for 5 days and then get down to business. He was not used to handing over power to pathetic little people. Oh yes, his sins are great. But the Lord of Vampires has nothing left to lose in this damned life.